Hello, everybody, and welcome to Season 2 of the Stormkeep, episode number 33. We are doing a Stormcast tier list update because there has been a major game update with the new General's Handbook, and we are all pretty dang excited about it. And today I'm joined by...
Hey, it's Daniel.
Hey, it's Murgonk.
And Jack.
Before we start, let's give a quick shout out to our official sponsor here, the Kaiju Gaming Lounge, based in Orlando, Florida. They offer custom gaming tools. They even make some Stormkeep merch, including these fancy-looking 7 and 9-inch sticks if you like using Thunderstrike, Deep Strike units. And I think after seeing this tier list, you might want to use some. Then feel free to get your hands on some of those. You can use discount code STORMKEEP to get 15% off. So check them out, kaijugaminglounge.com. Let's look at the major changes in Age of Sigmar Season 2. There's a lot written here, but the short version is not really much has changed, right? It feels like the game is just going back to what we had before bounty hunters existed, and they've added new options for small heroes to do things, but I don't know if it's actually going to change the way the game played significantly. That's been my first impression. What do you guys think?
I think that the game is changing a lot, but not because of the changes, but because they're just removing the old changes, right? Last season was a huge shakeup. It was meta warping, right? Like the bounty hunters had an absolute meta warping effect, and I think a lot of armies that were affected by that, who had a lot of GVs, are going to get a lot stronger, and some of those are kind of scary.
Yep, game's still the same. The biggest change will be bounty hunters because it was effectively an anti-infantry meta for 6 months, and that is about to change. So a lot of the infantry that was previously oppressive, like Pink Horse, goes back to being oppressive. So yeah.
Yep, Pink Horrors, Hearthguard Berserkers, Mortet Guard, Bladegeist Revenants. Get ready for a whole bunch of these units. We are going to see some big units on the table soon.
Yep.
So let's go over the changes specifically. The first one is that there's 2 new unit types. The first unit type is called a Galatian Champion, which from this point forward, I'm not going to say Galatian Champion. I'm just going to call them champions. It's a lot easier to say. So a champion is any unit that has the hero keyword, less than 10 wounds, no mount, and unfortunately, not unique. And the reason you want to be a champion is because you get the Key to Victory ability, which means you can't be targeted by missile weapons if you're within 1 inch of any battle line unit. It's like a super hyped up version of Lookout Sir. You just can't be shot, 40k style. There are enhancements specifically for champion units, and they're really strong enhancements. The problem, of course, is that enhancements on champions is questionable, right? They're usually support heroes. They're not doing that much damage, but we'll get to them later. Half the tactics and grand strategies this season require using a champion, so 4 out of 8 of the tactics require it, 3 out of 6 of the grand strategies. So there's a lot of push to using these support heroes. And I think you might find them worthwhile as well. The second new unit type is a very familiar term for anyone who's been watching our show. It's called Infantry, which is a unit with less than 5 wounds, no mount, and is not a leader, behemoth, or artillery. You don't get a keyword, but you gain access to very powerful new battalions. There's the Sworn Bodyguards, the Sharpshooters, and the Veterans. The first one, Sworn Bodyguards, allows you to fight alongside a hero, including fighting together in the hero phase if the situation calls for it. There's the Sharpshooters, which allows you to get around this Key to Victory ability, so you can just shoot heroes normally like you did before. And then there's the Veterans, which allow you to fight in 2 ranks. So this is the big thing, the big change in this season is that we have this new fighting in 2 ranks ability, and we don't have a counter to it. So this is why we are predicting there's going to be big units on the table. There's 2 new heroic actions, and if there's a new mechanic where if you're going second in the round, a champion can use 2 heroic actions instead of 1. And, your first impression of that is, oh, great, so I can, heroic leadership and try to get a command point, which doesn't sound like much, right? But there's new heroic actions you can use. The first one is called Strike at the Opening, which allows the champion to just fight immediately, which is very cool. And then there's a second one, which can only be used after Strike at the Opening, which means you can only use it if you're going second in that round, and if it's your turn, right? So you can't use it at the top of the round in your opponent's turn. But after the champion fights, your Sworn Bodyguard can fight immediately. And this is really, really good with something like, a squad of 10 Protectors or 5 Retributors that can fight alongside a hero. Doing extra damage in the hero phase is very strong. There are downsides to this. You gain strike last, and you can't fight more than once per phase. So they've thought through a lot of interactions and made sure it's not totally broken. But this is a very strong ability if you're playing against a lot of like pinning type lists, things like Nurgle with their flies, they want to charge at you right away and pin you in your territory. Well, getting extra combat activations in the hero phase before you have a chance to move is very useful.
Actually, yeah. So despite it being the Galatian champion focus season, like we said previously, I think infantry, this is basically the infantry season, and any army that relies not only on infantry, but a bunch of foot heroes making that infantry better, that can't now be shot, I think are going to be incredibly good this season. And this mainly speaks on Night Hunt and factions like Fire Slayers. I know Paul mentioned that enhancements specifically for support heroes isn't typically what you want to do, but as we'll discuss, like with the aspect of the champion and some of the artifacts, especially around teleporting or making them revive or giving them a 5 ward, I think some of these actually might see play. I mean, for our faction, probably not, but some of these other factions could actually use more mobility and more survivability.
Yeah, I do think that this will, cause us to weigh some units differently. More so for other factions. I think that for Stormcast, if you were considering like a Knight Incanter, for example, you're like, oh, I could use it for the tech for stopping, some magic going on. I think you include them in the list. Like, you don't have to think about it as hard anymore. At the same time, I think the base game is still the same game, and be a broken record this season. Try to make sure that you've got your win conditions in first before you over tech into the season. That's going to be like one of my common things this season is try not to overemphasize the season too much.
Yeah, you don't want to completely ignore champions, because if the game does just evolve into a pin and win meta like it pretty much did every time every season, then this is a good option to use. And there are not many battle tactics that Stormcast can just reliably score easily. So I think we have to still bring a couple champions, and we were going to do that anyway, right? Like, we have our Lord Relictor, that's not going to change. Even when it gets nerfed up to 150 points, like, that's still fine. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Before we jump into tier lists, there's one more thing I wanted to mention here. It's the new Realm Command ability, which is called No Retreat, No Surrender. It's activated at the start of the combat phase, so before anything happens, you don't know which units your opponent's going to activate. You can only activate it on a unit that is within 3 inches of an enemy. It can't be a hero, it can't be a monster, and it can't be a unit that charged. But that doesn't mean it's just for infantry. Any unit that doesn't meet those criteria can get it. So, for example, a Stormstrike Chariot stuck in prolonged combat can benefit from it. That unit can't make pylon moves, but it does get +1 attack to all non-mount melee weapons. So, Fulminators can get an extra attack with their glaives, but not with the mounts. Retributors can get an extra attack if they're stuck in a prolonged combat. This is a very strong effect, +1 attack. Stronger on some units than on others. But the pile-in restriction makes it really, really awkward. Because if you, just given the way people fight in this game, typically, unless you have 2 30-man blocks hitting each other, the pile-in move is a very important part of the game. So that's a huge downside. I don't know how relevant this one will be to the game.
I think it mainly benefits infantry that already have the reach. I can see Lumineth Wardens, for instance, Mortec Guard, or at the very least, it'll make your opponent very iffy about charging a unit that they're not going to kill and they know they can hit them in the swing back. Like if we have, for instance, double reinforced protectors, or sorry, just like 10 protectors reinforced with a Mystic Shield and a Castellan's Light, they're already pretty survivable. They're essentially like a 2-up save ignoring 2 Rend. We could use this command and it'll make our opponent charge in such a way which might not be optimal for them getting as many attacks in.
Yeah, it just relies on it's super weird because
it's a bit of a gotcha, is what I'm saying. Like, you will need to be careful how you charge things, because if you don't kill them, you will simply give them an extra attack, and your opponent very well might be considering that as you charge them.
But it gets weird because the player who charged, it's their turn, they get to pick a unit to fight first. So it has to be a very defensive unit, like protectors with range that you mentioned. Like,
well, also think of it as multi-fighting, right, Paul? Like, think of it as like, what if a multi-charge happens? Like, let's say you're like a Night Hunt player, and you charge, my 10 Vindictors on the left side, my 5 Protectors on the right side. Well, I'm going to try to protect my Protectors with all the defense, but the Vindictors are now free for a command. So I could potentially use a CP there to issue the No Retreat, No Surrender and try to get value out of them.
Yeah, no, there's going to be situations where it comes in handy. It just, there's a lot of restrictions on it, and in my first few playtesting games, it didn't really come up as an option. I would usually rather use all-out defense or all-out attack. This would be like a good second one, right? Because it's very rare. It seems like it's going to be a rare situation where you get all the models in a unit in range to benefit from it. So it's a cost analysis. It's like, would I rather use all out attack to get +1 hit, or would I rather miss a bunch of attacks because my models can't get in range? And I don't know. I also just really like using pile-in for extra movement, basically, right? Like I'm used to playing slower armies like Stormcast and Fire Slayers, where every inch of movement in the game is super crucial. And if you can pull extra units into combat with a defensive unit like Protectors, then tie them down for next turn. That's super useful. So giving up the pile-in is a big deal for me. But we'll see. We'll see how it turns out. Miscellaneous changes. There's new point values. Some units got nerfed. Some units got buffed. But frankly, I don't think Stormcast deserved any nerfs. I don't think our army was in a point where anything had to go up. But I guess they disagreed, and maybe we'll see some changes in the battle scroll coming up. They did reduce a lot of point values across the board on a lot of units people have been wanting to use for a long time. Stuff like Evocators, spoilers, but Evocators are looking real good now. Slight point drop, and they can fight in 2 ranks. Yeah, I'm thinking Evocators are back. Section 1, Warscrolls. Looking at our ranking system, S tier is a unit that has a very high impact ability, or it is such a unique aspect of that unit that nothing else can replace it in the list that it's in. A tier units are strong and versatile. B tier units have a specific but still useful niche. C tier units are still situationally useful. And then D tier is where we start to think units aren't really viable for competitive play. They have significant flaws. Sometimes it's just they cost too much and there's another unit that does a similar thing. That's pretty common in Stormcast, given that we have like 70-something Warscrolls. You're going to find a lot of overlap in that. And then F tier is like, this unit's just irredeemably bad. It would take such a big point cost reduction for it to be playable that it's probably not going to happen before the next edition. So let's get into it. Looking at Redeemer units first, Vanquishers are the S tier of this. We need battle line. We need cheap battle line. And our battle line has a lot of utility. Being 5 models wide on 40 mil bases, they can cover a lot of space. If you're playing Hallowed Knights, all of these units can fight on death on a 4+, and then they explode with Blaze of Glory. So like compared to a lot of other units, a lot of other army screening units, ours actually are doing somewhat decent damage even when they're dying. And then if you're looking for a unit to fill that role, well, Vanquishers are the cheapest one. Therefore, they're the best. Stormcast armies got to squeeze points. We have expensive hammer units like Fulminators and Stormdrakes, and then we need the cheapest possible battle line to make up for those points. So, you could spend an extra 20 points per squad on Vindictors, but let's say those 60 points at the end of the list, you're like, well, that could be almost a unit of Aether Wings. It could be an Endless Spell. It could be the difference between using a Fulminator unit and a Concussor unit, and there is a big difference in using those units. So yeah, Vanquishers. Yeah. In addition to all that, they also have the Thunderstrike keyword. And they sometimes do good damage. I think, since we're going into an infantry meta, it's worth listing out the fact that these guys are 4 attacks apiece on 3s, 3s -1. That's not nothing, especially if you're fighting on death. That's not nothing. Like, it can help you trade up objectives and surprise people. There's definitely been scenarios in the past year where, with bounty hunters at least, but without bounty hunters, I think it's still going to be relevant, where, enemy chaff charges your Vanquishers, and you fight on death, you kill enough of them that you get to retain the objective even after that. So that's
what I was about to bring up. Like, the Vanquishers answer the questions. What if your chaff was very good at killing other chaff? And yeah, that's basically what it is.
Well, they were very good at it last season. They're just okay at it now. They're better than Liberators, and that's not saying much. The damage is not why you bring them. It's really just because they're super cheap. They also have the added bonus of being a Thunderstrike unit. So if you're playing a Lord Imperator and you need a unit that can drop out of reserve 7 inches away, there's ways to cheat this, right? You can gain extra inches, you can steal objectives that aren't, completely guarded. There's additional utility there just from having the Thunderstrike keyword.
Mm-hmm.
Sequitors are a surprise. We thought last season with the changes to the infantry stuff, being able to fight in 2 ranks, that might make Sequitors playable. Turns out they were unplayable still, just like Vindictors. They were still D tier unit. They were not the C tier that we thought they might be. But this season, given the drastic point cost, they went down 25 points, down to 120. They're kind of an interesting position. They're like an upgrade over Vanquishers, where if you have 10 points left over in a list, you can swap to Sequitors. They get a 5 upward in combat, or they can get exploding hit rolls of 6. And they just always do good damage with their 3 greatnesses in a squad of 5. The problem with Sequitors is that they're still not worth reinforcing, because as soon as you reinforce them, you're looking at 240 points, And you could just get a real damaging unit for that in a Stormcast army. You're at like 2 Fulminators or 240 points. And that's a much better use of your points than 10 Sequitors generally. So they still fall into this like this weird niche of just being a Redeemer unit, a minimum size Redeemer unit. Even if you bring a Stray as Soulbright and give him +1 save, it's like there's still just better choices for that. It's just kind of weird. What do you guys think about Sequitors this season?
They're a really interesting choice. I like that they're just playable, right? Like sometimes, all the time we're talking about our cutting edge, where if you watch the Halo video, it's like, oh, you're always trying to squeeze points. It's Vanquishers is the way to go. The truth is, all of our units are really expensive, and it's nice to have an option here that is in the middle where they belonged in the first place because they were 140 before.
145.
145.
140. Oh yeah. Oh, so ridiculous. I'm glad that they're playable and that they are an option. Especially sometimes maybe you don't own some of these or more of these bigger hammer units. It's still a good option to try out. C tier is our line for competitive play, so it's good to remember that. B tier is a decent spot for them. Are they gonna be at the top 8 at LVO? Probably not. But they're usable, and I think that's really important that our army is becoming much more usable than it used to be. That's going to be a running theme going through the tier list, I think.
Also, yeah, we're not evaluating every unit from like the uber competitive play standpoint. Sometimes it's just nice to be able to take units and know I'm not actively handicapping myself.
Yeah,
and I think like
I can do that all by myself.
I can take Sequitors to a casual beer and pretzels Warhammer game and feel good about them and not feel like, oh, I just took a shit unit because I wanted to have fun and not destroy my opponent.
Yeah, or just maybe you have some points left over and you're at 1990 and you really want to play some Sequitors, throw them in instead of Vanquishers. Maybe you're like, I'm not going to get the Triumph anyway.
Mm-hmm. For 10 points more than Vanquishers, like even fine for casual games, but for even looking at more competitive focused games, they have a real niche. 5-up board in combat makes them effectively 15 wounds, which is a lot harder to deal with than just 10 wounds. A lot of min-sized units in this game can do around the damage needed to kill 5 Vanquishers, but they wouldn't do the damage needed to kill 5 Sequitors. So it is actually an interesting little upgrade there.
Yeah, I definitely take into account when looking at my damage profiles. Am I able to do 10 wounds to like a 4-up with some basic things, and that kind of matters when we're trying to divvy out how damage goes. So it is important. It's kind of neat that Sequitors can kind of turn on that 5-up board and be tankier than you think they are, and sometimes you high roll that 5-up board and it feels really good.
Yep. Would you guys consider using a reinforced or double reinforced unit of these guys? And let's
no.
look at the dream setup.
No, I would consider reinforcing them like as an anvil, but like maybe like a Castellant and then Estrella, and then just have them be really tanky in combat, but not like seriously like double reinforce almost never. Like I don't think there's many units in our book that I would actively double reinforce ever.
Yeah, the Rend 1 was a lot more valid in 2nd edition. In 3rd edition, you're not doing any significant damage with Rend 1 and this volume of attacks. You need like Ideneth Reaver level of volume, or Wind Chargers. If you haven't played against Wind Chargers yet, get ready. They're coming. But yeah, their damage just ain't good enough. They're an interesting anvil, but then let's just talk about Vindictors next, since we're on that subject. If you want a double reinforced anvil, use Vindictors. They're really good at it. Having a 3+ base save compared to Sequitors for only 10 points more. They have all the benefits of Thunderstrike that Vanquishers have. The damage is not super great, but like if you just want an anvil unit, double reinforced 15 models, 30 wounds, stick them with a Gardas, that's a 5-up board, effectively 45 wounds now. A Castellant, that's a 2+ save, all out defense, 1+ save. Anything without Rend 2 will just bounce off them. And the fact that they have Thunderstrike means you can send this unit in from reserve and get a 7-inch charge. And then if it's a Sworn Bodyguard, you can fight first in the opponent's turn using some shenanigans that we'll talk about later. Vindictors look good. Turns out that having Bounty Hunters in the game was really all that was keeping them back. I still think 130 is a little expensive. I'd like to see them drop down to 120 like Sequitors. But then I don't know if Sequitors would ever see play. So what do you guys think about Vindictors in this season?
It's not that they changed, because they didn't change points at all. It's that everything, got more expensive or didn't move, and it kind of makes sense. Like we were hoping for a bit tighter of a points gap maybe, but or like Liberators to be where Vanquishers are. But it's neat that Vindictors have this niche of being able to do some mortal wounds and really like threaten something that's bigger. Like I think my favorite thing was having them during the monster meta. Like as a one-off screen, I would frequently take like just one unit. I think on Iolana Grande was probably my favorite place to put them, and it does allow them to tank a bit and stand up to something that it might surprise your opponent that they're able to, sometimes you will give them all out defense, which is kind of interesting. Like you would probably never give all out defense to Vanquishers, but you'd consider it on Vindictors depending on what profile is coming in. The game's a little more rendy than it used to be, but Vindictors are interesting for that, and the fact that they can kind of hit back. I've had them luckily somehow tank I think it was just a Mystic Shield. They tank like something like an Incarnate, and they actually took it out. Shout out to Carl, our sponsor, for taking out his Incarnate with Vindictors. Like it can surprise you at times, and they have a place. That being said, because actually I'll let Mergonk finish, and then I'll come back.
I'll basically say I really like that 5-point difference system that we had before this like data slate came out, battle scroll came out. I think like that 5 points really helped differentiate like our different Redeemer units. So like we dreamt up a thing where we had 110, 115, 120, 125, and I think that's where I would imagine Vindictors at. Mm-hmm. Especially since the Castellan and Relictor went up 5, I'm kind of sad Vindictors didn't come down, because that feels like even more of a tax on Vindictors, because those are the two heroes you do want with Vindictors, and as of course Gardas also went up, so that's how I feel about it. I feel like if those support heroes went up, Vindictors should have gone down, but yeah.
Paradin went down 5 points. You can drop him in.
Okay.
All I was gonna say, because I know I can hear Kybitson right now yelling at the screen. Liberators are still an interesting choice for the same reason of what I talked about, where Vindictors can sometimes tank. I think Vindictors have a bit of an upside to where they can put some damage out, and they have the options. It's not that Liberators are just straight up trash. Like we talked about, C is still a competitive pick, but Vindictors still have the option to do something like a Tar Pit style and do some mortals back. Where Liberators, their mortals are, it doesn't matter if you reinforce them or not. Reinforcing Liberators is probably one of the worst out of all of these units, actually. And that's the only reason why we'd probably put them at C, is that where else are you going to use them, right? Like they have a niche that's similar to Vindictors, but not as good as them in general, right? They're not as flexible, which is what keeps them at C in comparison.
Yeah, and compared to Sequitors, which cost the same amount, and then Sequitors can just turn on a 5+ ward, which is probably better than +1 to save rolls against most things, just given how deadly the game is, and how many mortal wounds are happening and things like that. Liberators certainly have a spot, right? Like if you just want them holding an objective and not getting shot, that's better than Vanquishers. How often is that worth 10 points though? And this is the squeeze, right? This is the first place we look when we're squeezing points in a list. Unless you have a good reason that you want to spend more points than Vanquishers, you should just use Vanquishers instead. And I'm personally of the opinion Liberators should be the exact same cost as Vanquishers. They should both be 110, and then Sequitors and Vindictors should be 120.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, moving on to our heavy hitters with heavy armor, the Paladins. Talking about Annihilators with shields first. They are still in a weird spot. They tried dropping their points down from 200 down to 180, and that was a nice start. But the problem is that when we're at 180, we start to directly compare them to one of our one of our internal favorite units, the Chariot. Right? They're kind of the same role of a pinning unit with higher threat range. The Annihilators have a super high threat range, but then they're only like 9 wounds. Like once they do get in there, they have a 2-up save, but 9 wounds goes fast, even with a 2+. So like, what are you pinning down that isn't going to just kill this unit? You could reinforce it, right? But then you're talking like 360 points, and you could just take Storm Drakes for that cost. There's no real place for this unit yet. It's not an objectively bad unit, so we can't read it that it's not competitive, because you will find slots in Grandhammer lists, and sometimes you think, yeah, I don't want to drop Grandhammers this turn. I want to drop something, and I want it to be somewhat impactful, but not like I don't want to hit the Nitro. So Shield Annihilators will see play. They're just not going to be super common, I don't think.
Honestly, I like that you mentioned that, because with the loss of Bounty Hunters, I am debating dropping Vanquishers from my Annihilator list now and replacing them once again like I used to with Shield Annihilators.
Yeah, it's just it's the reason you use them is because they're just cheaper grand hammers that do less damage, and not because of any unique aspect that they're tanky or anything, right? Like the durability is almost irrelevant on this unit, which is really odd to say.
It'll come in handy like every like once in a blue moon. Like you'll throw these at a flank, and your opponent will have to dedicate significant amount of resources that turn to delete them, and that's fine. But yeah, they're not. It's not great. It's just okay.
Yeah, I personally think that while chariots exist the way they do and the way the points are, which annihilators, I mean, they can't get too much cheaper without becoming way too good. I think chariots just do their job better in almost every single way. Like, there's very few occasions where the angle really matters. Like, and if I saved annihilators that long, like a chariot could have been running around and doing things. I think a chariot is just the better pick if you're considering a shield annihilator. Just take.
I mean, there's something to be said for dropping light mortal wounds on people and like not having to just play honest Warhammer running up to their face. The fact that you have three like drops like that makes your opponent really cagey about deployment. And like we did mention this like in our live stream, but Galatian champions are now going to be within an inch of their battle line units, which means stonks for annihilators in general.
Depends on the unit size basis, right? Like if being within 1 inch of like a big base is, you're not going to get within the 10-inch splash zone unless you're using the Lord Imperator for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's fine. Like they're an okay unit. I don't know how cheap this unit would have to be, because like eventually it'll get to a point where, let's say it's like, I don't know, 150, and then people just bring like 6 squads and don't even care about the 7-inch drop. They just drop 6 squads of these guys in front of the enemy army, and that's just not fun.
I'll say we've already talked about this. They don't need to be cheap. It's the Imperator that needs to be 150.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Imperator 100% needs to come down for this unit to be better.
You know what would really help this whole archetype here? If Stormcast units could avoid the reserve death rule starting on the 4th round. Like if we could play longer into round 4 and 5, that would go a long way. Because then we could bring 5 drops to the Imperator instead of hard capped at 3.
Be nice if we're the only faction that can do that, but they probably don't want that because that has some extremely stupid late game objective sniping potential.
That's fine. Think of how long you're playing the game down, like 200, 600, 800 points on round 1. Like that's probably fine.
Yeah, I mean, we don't necessarily wait for like Celestin Prime to get to round 3 to bring him down,
Yeah.
Even with an increased value, like a scaling value.
So let's talk about Grandhammers. We have knocked them down a tier here. Morgan, if you want to run us through it.
Right. So previously, I would say and I think Paul would have agreed, Grandhammers were completely S tier. Like their damage just was insane. We were an extremely elite meta, and Grandhammers simply excel at taking out elite targets. So that's just adding 2 and 2 together. This meta is a little bit different. With the return of big infantry hordes, with Grandhammers are extremely efficient damage, but ultimately they're somewhat low damage. And low in the sense that their max damage is 30. Any misses you do results in 3 lost damage. Anything your opponent saves will be 3 lost damage. And ultimately, the Annihilator list, what they really struggled into is just a mass of bodies. Like, it's cute that your Annihilator can do like 30 to 34 damage when it charges into something. But what if your opponent brings a unit of pink horrors that are 50 wounds? Or 60 zombies? Okay, cute. You just deleted 200 points worth of zombies. What do you do? And so in those metas, Annihilators tend to struggle because they don't have a lot of staying power. They sort of just punch something and they usually die the next turn. So being able to support them with something like a Horrorghast or shooting is going to be extremely critical. And they're just not that efficient at just purely killing infantry like they are at killing elite targets. And since we're heading into an infantry meta, they get knocked down here.
Yeah, there's also been some changes around them. All the support heroes that they liked using have gotten a little bit more expensive, and they're also it's just harder to play battle tactics that when you're playing an Annihilator list compared to other Stormcast lists because they don't support any battle tactics in particular. So it's just a little less efficient. Their damage profile isn't what you want right now, and it's still going to be massive overkill to drop 6 of them. There's always the risk that anytime you fail that 2+ charge, if you run the math, it's like having a 2+ when you have a 7-inch rerollable. If you fail that and you have a reinforced squad of 480 points of Grandhammers in the middle of the board, you just lost the game. Like, it's so brutal that reinforcing them is not worth it.
I mean, I've lost game off of losing a charge on 3 Annihilators. So yeah 6 losing is just game ending. Yeah.
So huge risk to run it anyway, except the way you do, and the way you do just isn't that efficient. Cool.
I've never been a huge Grandhammer player. I've done it a couple of times at like RTTs, but I totally agree with you.
It's definitely tougher for Annihilators this season, and it's more just the list composition that really seals the deal for me as far as bringing them down to A tier. It's pretty inflexible and not being able to adapt so easily, even though the list does include like some GCs and such. The inherent playstyle is also a little less conducive towards like our GCs doing the tactics, since Paladin is exactly someone you want to throw out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely a little tougher for Grand Hammers lately. So I think a lot of it has to do with the Imperative being too expensive, but also I think maybe Annihilators could be a little cheaper considering that they do have to take such a tax.
I mean, it's the tax that has to like go down. Like the unit output is fine for what it does. It just what it needs to work is just so incredibly expensive and doesn't offer us anything else except for that.
Yeah, because like I've always kind of justified Annihilators, especially with their attacks with like, oh well, usually I'm taking up a Relictor Translocation and like a Battle Mage cast, which isn't always going to happen. And then that's already a 270 point combo that I'm dedicating to this unit versus like 175, and it just does what it needs to do, and then I can also use my translocation elsewhere. That's
The thing is, this list got hit
still
in
not
a lot of different ways. Annihilators really relied on a lot of shooting, so they nerfed Thunderbolt Volley, and that hurt.
Yep.
Then they're raising points on Horrorghast, Relictor, the Lord Relictor. That really hurt. Hurting Storm Drakes and Chariots with points increases also hurt. So it's just like a constant stream of points increases to the thing. Like I don't even know why they raised points on Aether Wings, and we'll discuss Aether Wings when we get to them. But that was extremely silly.
Yeah, it's mostly the Aether Wings and the because the Relictor got kind of balanced out by the Imperative, but going down just 5 points, going up 5, it's whatever. But the Aether Wings is a big one. Thunderbolt Volley, that's a really big one. Not even be able to like even Fulminators going up 10 points. Like Fulminators were something that I considered as well as like for the kind of pinning slots. So it's rough.
One last thing I'll say about our evaluation of Grand Hammers, we still like them. They're still good. I think the for me, the straw that broke the camel's back is that they have all these cool infantry roles for this season, and Grand Hammers take advantage of exactly none of them. They can't do really well with the Sworn Bodyguard thing, just the way that they play with the 7-inch deep strike charges. There's not going to be a hero in range for that, because then you're just throwing away more points with them. It's really, really awkward to try to benefit from that. They don't need the veterans thing, so you can make an argument that you can go battle regiment with them, but you'll still want sharpshooters in that kind of list, right? So you're not going completely one drop. It's just really awkward and inefficient compared to how it used to be like a month ago. So putting them down just one tier, they're not dead by any means. I think we can move on to Retributors, which are looking better for all the exact opposite reasons of Grand Hammers. Mainly that they are taking really good advantage of the new Sworn Bodyguard rules. I really do consider these guys an excellent pick. Like these guys and maybe like a Castellant or a Knight Azeros with the Quicksilver Draught to be a Sworn Bodyguard unit that can just take a board space and your opponent can't charge into it because you get to fight them first. And the Retributors fighting first is pretty dang gross. Their damage is great. Like about the same amount of damage as 2 Fulminators charging. That's 5 Retributors. They're a lot cheaper, 30 points off from compared to Fulminators. And you can also fight them in a squad of 10. If you just want to do like absurdly high damage every single combat phase, you could do that. But once you hit that point, it's like just use the Fulminators instead, But I really do like them as a Sworn Bodyguard, and I think they're playable. I think they're actually so playable that you might even consider going Knights Excelsior just to make your list a little more efficient to get an extra battle line slot, and then that way the Retributors also make that hero that they're surrounding immune to shooting through Key to Victory.
Yeah, they seem like a really solid choice and a well-deserved B tier. It's so cool that something like one of these rules can really bring a unit out from. I mean, it was D tier before. A lot of points change is a big part of that, as well as the new rules. They pulled some stuff out of the dust. It's kind of what I was talking about earlier. Like overall, we have more toys to play with for sure, which is a really great improvement about the season.
Yep. Looking at protectors, I thought initially the Sworn Bodyguard rules would push them up from A tier into an S tier, but there's some awkwardness involved. The restrictions on, like, if you have to use a bigger unit of protectors to get the real damage and to help mitigate, bad rolls. If you roll a bunch of ones, they still just die. So you want to use a reinforced unit of protectors, and you think, great, because their 3-inch glaives are going to be awesome. They're going to be able to hit from this great position. But because the unit just takes up so much space, it's kind of awkward as a sworn bodyguard. Your opponent can hit you on certain flanks. They can get out of range of the hero with a Quicksilver Draught. So they're still excellent, right? Like, if you want a super durable block, you can't beat protectors, man. 2+ save all the time on 15 wounds. Reinforce that. Slap it with a Gardas. Your opponent is going to have 0 fun in that game if they engage you in melee. So super good, but of course, like all Paladin units, their 4-inch move is a huge liability. Once you're engaged somewhere, that's where you are for the rest of the game. It's going to take you, you have to translocate over a hero and then translocate the unit the next turn, or like a Tunnel Master into a translocate. They're so immobile, and it's such a tactical downside. It leaves the rest of your army exposed. You've dumped like all these points into this unit and all your resources into it. So like, if you just miss tagging 1 or 2 units, like if your opponent spreads out, there's awkwardness with using protectors.
Basically, you better pray your fight where you translocate them also happens to be like an objective where it matters.
Yeah, if this game was one objective in the middle of the board, protectors would be the best unit, and you wouldn't use anything else. You wouldn't even use shooting. You would just use more protectors. But
still runs on cash, don't we?
Yes. So if that's in your pack, then strongly consider using protectors. They do become battle line, and they do give you key to victory on your champions if you are running Knights Excelsior. Maybe there's some kind of like Indrasta Knights Excelsior list where you use Retributors as your like 2x5 and then a 10-man squad of protectors, and then she's just reviving all of them constantly, and you have like a Quicksilver Draught hero nearby to fight first with one of the squads. I think that could work. That could be a fun list if it wouldn't be a competitive list, because Indrasta still feels too expensive. But yeah, protectors are great. They've always been great. They're never not going to be great. It's hard to make a unit like that bad with seasonal rules. Unlike Decimators, which are oddly the only 5 like unit that ends in 5 in cost now, I think they were just forgotten. They just ignored it. That's awkward. Which means they effectively cost 220 points, unless you bring 2 squads of them, in which case you get a 5-point discount off that, or a 10-point discount off that. So, Decimators are not good. Their damage is worse than Retributors in most scenarios. Even when they're in their ideal scenario, Retributors are still doing equal damage, and Retributors are now cheaper. So just use Retributors. Decimators could see play if they went down to like 180, 190 points, maybe. They might be a situation.
Yeah, 200 would be okay. Like, if their thing was cheap as foot paladin with 15 wounds, then sure.
I don't think I'd use them at 200. Like, I'm talking usable, right? Like 180 for me, personally.
They really needed that -2 to bravery roll on them.
They need something. A lot of our Warscrolls need something. We don't have a lot of things on our Warscrolls. Evocators, they have a lot of things on their Warscroll, and they're good. Again, if you played Stormcast in 2nd edition, or you just played against Stormcast in 2nd edition, you know how good Evocators are, and I regret to inform you that they are back in the game, and they are just as good as they were before. The only thing they've lost in translation to this season is that like reroll save 1 shooting thing. Totally irrelevant. People usually forgot it existed. If you haven't seen Evocators in a while, or if you're new to the game, let me tell you what Evocators do. They do a lot of damage with their Grand Staves, and then they zap you with like somewhere 10 to 15 mortal wounds after they attack. It's pretty brutal. It is pretty nasty. They are super high damage unit. Yeah. They're also 30 wounds, only a 4-up save, or 30 wounds if you're reinforced. I probably wouldn't use this unit in squads of 5. I would only use it reinforced. They can also use Louch on, which they couldn't use in last edition. So you can just teleport them around if you just have a wizard in the back, cast Louch on, put all the Evocators on the boat, and then just send it forwards, and then you can steadfast march out of that. Like, they have such a high threat range, unlike all the other Paladin units. Yeah, they're definitely good. But why did I not put them in S tier? Because they require setup. They require other they require other dudes supporting them. Like, you need another wizard to cast Louch on. You probably want another wizard to cast Mystic Shield on them. They're not as durable as our other units, right? Previous edition, everything had a 4-up save. Now these guys having a 4-up save is like a liability compared to it. So yeah, they're going to die a lot. They're going to be pretty fragile, but if you can play around that, like if you can get used to just being a slightly less durable hammer unit, there is a lot to take advantage of with these guys. You just have to be very careful where you castle out Sean. That's all. That's what I'm going to say.
Do the Advocators have a 2-inch reach, or do they need the
Nope.
infantry
Nope.
battalion, right?
They need GB.
So that is going to be
2-inch
attached
reach
to. Okay, gotcha. Just making sure people are aware. It's going to be a battalion to play around, which we'll get into like a lot of the battalion stuff later. But just to be aware for this unit, to be this good, they do need that battalion. The mortals though can go from anywhere in the unit, which is I think probably one of the coolest things I hadn't noticed.
Yeah, that was the really disgusting thing you did with them was you just double tag things. So it's like they kill some whatever it's front, and then if there's something 3 inches behind, they'll kill that too. So it created a lot of as someone who played the 10 evocator list back in 2020. Like a lot of people don't like evocators. They've never have. And like the old anvils like fight twice also made them like pretty disgusting.
Yeah, fighting the hero phase with that unit is really good because they do that lightning arc zap for high mortal wounds. Even if one model's within 3 inches of your whole unit, all of the mortal wounds happen. And doing that in the hero phase and then being able to move, really, really useful. So there could be play where you bring a squad of 10 of these guys not as veterans, but as sworn bodyguards, just so that you can take advantage of that. Speaking of bodyguards, Praetors are terrible bodyguards, and they don't take advantage of the bodyguard rules. They're never battle line, which means you can never give key to victory to the hero that they would be supporting, which would be really, really good. Frankly, if that was just a Warscroll ability, I might even consider them just for that. Praetors are slow. They can't keep up with any heroes that would actually want to have their bodyguard effect. Both the hero and the Praetors have to deploy on the table, which is really bad for Scions of the Storm purposes because they're both slow. The only units that would really want this are stuff like, Karazai, who would just fly out way faster than they can. So you have to dedicate translocations into this unit, but then they have to stay within 3 inches of Karazai. So if he charges, he's going to be out of range. It's super awkward. Praetors are really, really bad. Don't know what point cost they'd have to be, and I don't know what would have to change with them to make them usable.
It would have to be battle line, like I said. You take a Lord, one Praetor battle line. That's it.
Yeah, it would need to be something that's not tied to a subfaction.
It doesn't. It feels like a tax. It feels like you're like wasting points. It shouldn't feel like that. It should feel like they should have like utility. Literally every other faction in this game has bodyguard battle line. There is no faction that doesn't, and I don't know why we are the exception to that rule.
What if Praetors were summoned for free with a holy command?
Nah, I don't know about that. I'm okay with just like battle line. Just like give them battle line and make them the ability to just guard any hero that's within 3.
Yeah, even tie it to a lord, like make it some kind of restriction. I don't know.
Yeah, it's so easy. Just like you have a lord in your army, congratulations. It's this unit's battle line. I don't know why they don't just do that.
Prosecutors with hammers are going back to their old role, which was just being a fast screen that can reliably absorb Unleash Hell. They can come in from reserve and then do a 3d6 charge, which on average should get you within the 9 inches you need. Their damage sucks. They take a lot of damage and then die very quickly. They're not a redeemer, so you can't revive them with something like Call for Aid. You don't get any fight on death if you're playing Hallowed Knights. They are just a fast screen that can absorb Unleash Hell. And you know what? Sometimes your list needs exactly that. Sometimes you're playing Grand Hammers and you're charging into a unit of Storm Drakes, and you want a unit of Prosecutors with Hammers to absorb that damage first. Sometimes you just need a fast objective unit that has a save instead of Aetherwings, who do not have a save. So they're pretty good at that too. And that's a fine niche. We had them in B tier last season because of Bounty Hunters. They were actually a surprisingly competent little Bounty Hunter unit that could do surprising amounts of damage. That's gone, so they're back to being exactly where they were before that. Vanguard Hunters. So you'd think Vanguard Hunters might look better. But they don't. they're pretty much exactly as good as they used to be. They just teleport to a table edge every turn. You can't use this if you're within 3 inches of an enemy. Their damage is poor. They're basically like Liberators with 2 pistols, and they're instead of a save. And frankly, I think I'd rather have the +1 save rather than having that weak pistol attack. They're only worth using if you are battle lined with Astral Templars. Outside of that, they're never an efficient use of points. And the fact that they're not a Redeemer means you can't revive them for Call for Aid. So even when you are playing that, they're just not as efficient as using a different unit that you could revive. Their gimmick of teleporting onto a table edge is actually kind of nice this season. There are a lot of objectives within table edge distance where you can teleport to it. It's super easy to screen out, though. If they could do it if they could do it out of a retreat, that would be really good. I would really like that unit because that means your opponent has dedicated resources onto one side of the board and you can just go to the other side. But the fact that they can't do that really limits their tactical value. So sometimes if you're playing Astral Templars, you can swap out your Redeemer unit for Vanguard Hunters. That's the niche for them.
Yep.
They did get a big point cut, right? Like 110 means that they're just straight up a swap from Vanquishers, which is nice.
It means if I'm playing Astral Templars, I'll consider them over a Vanquisher.
Yeah. How likely do you think it is that we will play Astral Templars?
Not
fairly likely.
Unlikely?
We'll discuss this when we get to Kerzai, but I'll tell you why later.
Okay.
Actually, I'll do it now. Why not? So, I think because of the new Gargant rampages, I think the way to play Kerzai is no longer Gardas. I think the way to play Kerzai is to play them in Astral Templars alongside Praetors. Now, this creates a problem because there are things you want to be translocating, like a screen for Kerzai if you can. And if you could do that with like a Vanguard Hunter unit for 110 same points as a Vanquisher, sure, I'll do that. Or if you want to snipe objectives.
Remember, it's not a translocate. It's on a table edge. And how Kerzai wants to do
so I'm saying, like, if you want to snipe
generally not
objectives while Kerzai plays, the game for you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good little job to have, I think.
But you could just drop a unit from Scions for that. So this is like post Scions repeatedly. You're getting value of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how valuable that is.
You can also pull out of a table edge. That's the thing. If your opponent decides to go one direction, you can just go the other. And just like, if they have dedicated chaff to some objective or something, you can potentially take that on.
Yeah, I could see it.
No, not a great niche, but it is something.
Hey,
yeah,
anything that gets us discussing Kerzai viability, I'm in favor of. Looking at Aether Wings, they were hit with a 5-point nerf, the most undeserving nerf of all time. I don't know how Aether Wings keep getting nerfed edition after edition, battle pass or battle scroll after battle scroll. They just keep getting nerfed. They just
40 keep
points
nerfing our shooting in small ways. It's like, take Thunderbolt Volley away, take Aether Wings away. Like what?
Yeah. Well, they're still exactly as good as they were before. Even 5 points more. It's awkward to bring 2 units of them now. It's an extra 10 points over what they used to be. But you're going to do it, and you're going to find the room somewhere else in your list. They can fit into any battalion as an infantry unit. So if you bring 2 squads of long strikes and an Aether Wing, that's a sharpshooter battalion.
That's pretty cute, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Gryph-hounds, 90 points is a significant cut. There might be a meta where they might want to use their warning cry and stop, like maybe you'll want a cheap screen that can bark at things that are in reserve. There's not, like, every book that comes out, there's less and less reserve units compared to second edition, so these guys actually just get less useful. 90 points, I don't know. I didn't want to put them in F, right? Like, they're not as bad as some of these other units. They have a purpose, it's just not a very good one.
PW is doing it wrong, man. We've talked about this before. Make it a unit of 3. Make it a unit of 3, and make it the same point cost as Aether Wings, and they'll see play.
Yep, agreed. Steelheart's Champions, 90 points for Redeemer is kind of interesting, but they're not battle line, unlike every other Redeemer. They are locked to Hammers of Sigmar, so they can't fight on death with Hollow Knights. They're bad. Just don't use them. Use Vanquishers. You want battle line anyway. Farstriders, same thing. Just use Vanguard Hunters. They're not worth your points. Xandir's Truthseekers got a pretty big point cut. They're not in the book, so if you're not familiar with what this unit does, you have a shooter in the unit that's like having 1.5 long strikes. You have a guy with a mace that's like having 1.5, I think, Grand Hammers, and then another one that's like another fighter. It has like a lantern that gives you +1 hit like an Azuros. There's problems with this unit. It's 5 wound model, so they're not infantry. They can't fill battalions for you. They're not battle line, which means they never activate Key to Victory. Their damage is actually worse than having 1.5 long strikes because they get bonuses. They're on 2s and 3s rather than 3s and 2s, which means when you get +1 hit from all out attack, it's not doing anything for you. So long strikes are just strictly better. The Azuros style +1 hit is pretty good, but this unit only moves 5 inches a turn. And one of the nice things about the Azuros is he's a 12-inch flying move. So he can reliably get where you need him to be to get the +1 hit. And then finally, they're also Hammers of Sigmar, which means you're not getting any benefit from having a Gardas ward, which actually might be okay on this unit because they're 15 wounds total. But no, they don't get that either. So they're still D. They're still competing with real hammer units. They're also competing with like support heroes. They're in a weird spot. I don't know. I kind of wish they stopped including these Warscrolls in our book and in our pitch battle profiles.
Yeah.
Ballistas, they got a 10-point cut. Is that enough? No.
Nope.
Would it be enough if Key to Victory didn't exist? Still no. But Key to Victory does exist, and Ballistas cannot be sharpshooters. So the only good thing that they could have done before was having a Rend 3 D6 shot. You get like 3 or 4 of those, and then you're reliably taking out these tiny support characters, while also having 9 wounds and a 4-up save. So they're surprisingly durable little artillery pieces. But since they can't be sharpshooters, it's like the one thing they could have been good at. Yeah, they're not good enough. What would you guys like to see done? Is it just like the reliability of the ballistas, or is it a point cost thing?
No, they just need like better damage model. Like look at the Iron Blaster, right? Or like the what's the other one? The Venari Shard Star Ballista.
Yeah.
Just need a better, more reliable. D6 is way too swingy. Make it like 2 plus D3 or like what, something like that.
Well, D3 plus 3 would be great. I'd love that.
I mean, the points would have to go up massively for that, but it is one shot compared to 2. So yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, it's probably fine if it was D3 plus 3.
I'm okay with 2 plus D3. I don't want 6. 6 damage is like the sweet spot. Kills a lot of things on impact, but especially since we can be on 2s and 2s with this with the Lord Ordinator. But 2 plus D3 is like, yeah, it feels fine. You'll need 2 ballistas to kill like a big meteor Galatian champion.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, unfortunately, still not good enough. Maybe next season. We'll keep an eye on them. Castigators. Dan, you and I have talked a lot about Castigators, right? Where exactly they're going to fit and what we think they're going to do. They're a super weird unit to describe. So unlike the direct comparison, of course, is Crossbow Judicators. Because a squad of 3 Castigators doesn't really do high impact damage. They are somewhat efficient, but you want to reinforce them. And you can't double reinforce them, so the max you get is 6 Castigators for 180 points. And at that exact value, you're competing with Crossbow Judicators, which are battle line, do a lot of damage, like they're a great unit. Same range and everything. What Castigators do better is they have Rend 2 on all their shots, and they can also get Empower, so they can wound on 2s. Unfortunately, they can't channel their weapons outside of the shooting phase, so if you're trying to use a Thunderbolt Volley with them, I don't know why you would, but you can. Or if you want to Unleash Hell, then you can't get the Rend 2 shots on there. So a squad of 6 is just not impactful enough, and you have to bring Evocators to give them +1 to wound to really make them efficient. And at that point, it's not really efficient anymore. So I think the only place we see them landing is like as a squad of 3. Like they're a cheap objective holder like Aetherwings, but they also just shoot stuff the whole time. Like a lot of times we're taking units like Vanquishers to just stick them on objectives and forget about them for the rest of the game. What if you could take a unit that continued doing damage while it was doing that role? And I think that's actually a niche that could see play this season.
Yeah, it's it's interesting to think about them as like half adjudicator unit. It is if they didn't have the random attacks, gosh, it'd be interesting because when you think about it, the Rend 2 is almost like doubling the shots, without because the Rend gets to push through some armor saves rather than trying to do it through weight of dice. So while it won't have, of course, the max damage, which is something we generally prefer is max damage, it's at least interesting, right? Like as a squad of 3, it brings them to C tier. It brings them up to enough to where they can actually be brought to the table. And I think Mergon put it best earlier. You're not actively handicapping yourself to fill a 90-point slot with a cheap shooter, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's some
I
play
quite like
here?
them in Evocator builds because they're for a crossbow unit it can wound on 2s with Empower.
They can. The limit there is you have to be on the table in the hero phase, and they're only 18-inch range. So like that's like a round 2, round 3 type thing, and we want to be as impactful.
Oh, why? Just translocate them.
Translocating 3 Castigators or 6?
Yeah, 6.
Just use crossbows instead. Just drop them into play.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just easier. Like that's the problem with this unit is like it has to get so like if they want it to be good, it has to get so cheap that it gets spammable. So this
Or,
is,
you know, you bring crossbows and you bring castigators.
yeah.
It's a Ren 2 unit. It's a Ren 2 crossbow, and then you have your normal crossbows. And since this thing can basically buff itself up if it wants to without a command point, against some targets, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah, no, they're fine as like a speed bump. I wish there was a way to double reinforce them. That might make it more interesting to get some empower action going in on them.
Hey, one castigator battle line for every sequitur in your army.
I'd be down with
Boom.
that.
That would make way too much sense. That sounds like an elf thing.
Is there any play for this unit as like a second or third sharpshooter? Because like Ren 2 sharpshooters are pretty nice, or they can go.
I mean, we just talked about Aether Wings and Long Strikes. If you have 20 points, upgrade your Aether Wing to a castigator if you really, really want to.
Yeah,
but is that
supporting fire?
Is that an upgrade?
yeah, right? Because sure, you're getting.
Oh, sorry, I meant to say. Sorry, hold on. I meant to say if you're not taking Thunderbolt Volley and splitting your Raptors.
Okay.
It's
I mean,
it's fine. I guess they're okay. They're C. They might see play.
Yeah.
Crossbow Adjudicators still really good. I actually consider dropping them a tier just because Slaves to Darkness exist now, and they can get 2+ saves very easily, and that's really the main weakness of Crossbow Adjudicators. Crossbows do the most damage of all our shooting units, even against 3+ saves.
Per point.
Except again, not even per point, just like raw damage. You get
At all.
double reinforced long strikes reinforced long strikes versus double reinforced crossbow Judes. The Judes do more.
Oh.
And you can make that comparison because long strikes would require bringing another battle line slot. So it's about the same point cost. Well, yeah, crossbow adjudicators just pump damage, except against 3+ saves. And with Slaves to Darkness in the game, and they're going to be a popular army because they're easy to play, very straightforward, very reliable.
Very easy to collect too. They're very elite, kind of like us.
Yep.
And they're very, very good.
Yep, very strong army as well. So crossbow adjudicators are not a good pick into that army, unless they start pivoting into more Ogroids and cultists, and then you bring like a squad of 10 crossbows and still feel good about that. You just shoot down the stuff that doesn't have the Mystic Shield on at that turn. And you can also see some play here with Krondys, shredding armor, Geminids, preventing all-out defense. You can see like a Lore Seeker casting a Purple Sun. There's a lot of play for crossbows besides just bringing them as battle line. Excellent unit all around, though. If you can take advantage of take advantage of this unit despite their 18-inch range, they're an excellent unit. If you like using long strikes, you probably won't like using this unit because it's a different mentality, but it is very, very good when you do it properly. I promise. Adjudicators with Skybolt bows are kind of the weird middle point between crossbow adjudicators and long strikes. Their 6-inch longer range really does come in handy when they're just sitting on an objective as a squad of 5, plinking damage onto things, kind of like castigators would. They're always battle line, so they can make your heroes immune to shooting, which is really, really good. They do slight amounts of mortal wounds, which is really just an accuracy thing. They're not like super high damage. They're inefficient at 200 points, but they're a safe pick. They're always going to do something for you in every single game. They're always going to get you some value. That's not really enough to get an E tier in our army. We need units that are hyper specialized in what they do because we don't have good rules. We just have units, so our units have to be as good as they can be. Next up, prosecutors with javelins. Sorry, do you have something to say?
Oh no, I was just saying that just covers it. I feel like Skybolt adjudicators just feel meh in comparison to the rest of our shooting.
Yeah, your suggestion to drop them to the same points as crossbow adjudicators would probably be nice.
I would I think I might go one step further and say that because I've played these competitively and they just don't like stack up to Raptors or crossbow adjudicators. I think this should be our cheapest shooting unit as a battle line.
I think you have to pay a lot to get the range. I think range should be expensive. A small change they could make here, and this isn't just like to make the unit stronger. It's just kind of an annoying thing. The special crossbow should get more wounds on hit rolls of 6.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like that's a very simple change that they could make. Make it D6 shots, and then hit rolls of 6 also cause mortals, and that would go a long way to fixing this unit.
So I see what you're saying, Paul. But, like, why are these 200 points and they are basically snakes who are...
Because of translocation.
And
Sorry, Signs of the
yeah.
Storm. Signs of the Storm.
We don't have a lot of abilities, but the 2 abilities that we have, this unit really benefits from. And frankly, I think it was costed when Thunderbolt Volley worked on reinforced units, and you can totally see like 600 points of these guys double tapping. Yeah,
yes,
that feels like 600 points.
Absolutely. That has been my issue from the very beginning with the Thunderbolt Volley change, was that our shooting units were obviously pointed with that rule as written, but it doesn't work that way anymore.
Yep. They still haven't gotten around to fixing everything, and I don't think we're gonna see our shooting go down in cost. Like the 3 shooting units that we primarily use, I don't think they're gonna go down because you don't want them spammable. Like, you don't want Stormcast doing more shooting damage in a list. If they're going to buff our army, it's going to come through changes to support heroes. We've already seen a lot of this. Like, the fact that they reduced Andrasta's points was like a huge deal, right? The fact that they're willing to do that, to be like, yeah, we just messed up on this one. She's too expensive, so let's tweak her down. That's a big deal. So I think we're going to see more of that, and then I think our melee hammers are going to get cheaper too, because I don't think anybody cares if Stormcast play all melee. If Stormcast spam melee, that's fine, because then they're not spamming shooting. So I think tweaking or shooting is a very, very dangerous game. Looking at prosecutors with javelins, they did go down 5 points, but frankly, I think they're just worse than the hammer prosecutors. Like, they have a 3+ save base, but then hammer prosecutors can just equip shields and have a +1 save, so it's like a liberator versus medictor situation. However, javelins just do pathetic damage. Like, absolutely pathetic damage, like 3-4 damage per shooting phase max. It's awful. So just use hammer prosecutors, right? It's you're not going to all-out defense this unit. Just pick the one that does more damage. Simple as that. Vanguard Raptors with Hurricane crossbows. They've seen a huge point drop, 30 points down to 200. Unfortunately, they solve a whole bunch of problems. They still compete with crossbow adjudicators, which are cheaper and battle line and can be double reinforced, and have a Ren 2 shooting attack built in there. Hurricane Raptors are our most efficient shooting against like 5+ and 6+ saves, but the game just doesn't really have as much of those anymore. We can reduce saves with Krondys and Geminids and Purple Sun and things like that, and then effectively bring a 3+ save to a 5+, but you're dumping so many points into that, and it's like, you still need to fill your battle line, and you still need melee hammers, and you still need support units. Hurricane Raptors just don't see it. I think they have to be cheaper than crossbow adjudicators to ever see play, because crossbow adjudicators just do it better. And I don't think crossbow adjudicators are worth nerfing. Games Workshop, if you're watching this, please don't nerf them. They are fine at 190. I promise. It's not a problem. This unit just needs something else.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of this. Unit needs utility. It needs to bring something special to the table, which, we often don't get special rules. We just kind of get, damage. And that's just not what this unit needs. It needs something. I think my favorite suggestion was have it be suppressing fire, because the whole thing it's about volume of fire. Have it do something simple, like if you shoot that unit, it can't issue commands in the following combat, right? Like, it's like a roar or something. Just some kind of utility that goes on.
Oh, what if it was like Geminids, where it shut off commands in that phase?
Yeah,
Wait.
It could literally do so many things, like shut off commands. Like it was like a Geminids, yeah. So they can't redeploy later. They can't, all at defense of the shooting phase. Just something to give it utility that matters, rather than just being a damage unit for the sake of damage, because we have plenty of those. And this is that kind of elite unit that could do something like that, right? This is supposed to be the Vanguard Raptors, right? This is the Navy SEALs, if you will.
All right. Long strikes. You know them, you love them, you hate them. They've got some significant changes this season. Like, they're not battle lines, so key to victory that's a big deal, right? Like, sometimes I might consider using a squad of 5 Judicators just to get extra coverage against some armies that want to snipe your heroes. Long strikes don't have that. They're not battle line. That's okay, though. They're still really good. Their 30-inch range is ideal for sharpshooters. Like, there's a hero on the other side of the table. It's gone if you need it to be. Really useful. Super high accuracy, relatively low max damage. This could actually really matter. This is actually why we kept crossbow adjudicators in S, because if we're entering an infantry meta where you have a bunch of like double reinforced units with 4+ saves, crossbow adjudicators do the damage that long strikes don't do. Long strikes do, they're capped, right? 12 damage per squad, per shooting phase, max. Even with the mortal wounds baked in, that doesn't increase the max damage, it just makes it more accurate. And 240 points for 12 damage a phase is not very good when you're dealing with 60 zombies or 100 Hearthguard. I swear we're going to see lists like that. It's going to be awful.
Yeah.
Yep. So they're really good at taking down key targets at the right time. The rest of your list needs to have the high max damage, right? You need stuff like Fulminators to support them, maybe some Evocators as well. So they're not just as slam jam as they used to be. They have to be positioned correctly in your lists. Like always, they're fragile. If you don't play them carefully, you're going to lose them, and then it's a lot of points gone. They're very easy to kill. You need Dispel Scrolls, you need screens, you need Translocation, you need a lot to make them work, and they are a big resource dump. So excellent unit. If you use them properly, you're going to have a great time.
Yeah. I've even found them to be good. Recently, I ran them as a min unit, just even with Thunderbolt Volley, and just as supporting fire, they're still very good.
Yeah, just a squad of 3, not like a 2x3, which is pretty typical.
Yeah, like if you're considering them even for just supporting fire, they're gonna do their job. We had a big conversation in our Discord. By the way, join our Discord if you want to join in on these awesome conversations. Really great people in there. Like they may not be as flashy as Fulminators. Same exact points. Fulminators. You see the damage chart, and your eyes just light up at how awesome it is that Fulminators can do the damage they do. But long strikes, they get to do that anywhere, help out anywhere, and that's without putting yourself in any kind of danger, holding an objective. They just do it all, and long strikes, they're going to be S tier. It just is what it is, and I hope they don't get touched
shooting. And this thing shoots things we don't want living.
Yeah,
and with Galatian champions becoming more and more important, the ability to just snipe out a key hero, and not have to dedicate melee to it is pretty good.
Agreed. Vigilors, they got problems, man. The damage is not great as a shooting unit. Their melee damage isn't worth putting them into combat. They're not worth an imperative to get them into combat. They're not battle line unless you bring an Adjudicator. Their +1 hit only activates if you actually hit things. There are loads of other
if you wound things.
Sorry, you have to damage things. Yeah. There's way more sources of +1 hit, so not even that useful even when you do get it off. 18-inch range, not good for sharpshooters. They have to be so cheap that they become spammable, like Reaver cheap.
Reavers are 170. They have to be cheaper than Reavers because they have 10 shots, whereas Reapers have 20.
Yeah, these guys literally do half the damage of Reavers. It's not good.
Yeah, they need to be 155, 150. Because then they would be the volume shooter that gives +1 for like a melee, like a support volume shooter that can also support melee charges against that target. But
I don't think that would even get them there because crossbow adjudicators are literally double the damage of Vigilors. Crossbow adjudicators are 22 damage.
One thing it lets you save its command point. That's what I'm saying. Like a volume shooter that supports melee charges in there.
They got to be real cheap, and then they'd kind of be like a castigator type situation where you bring one squad of them.
I'd bring a Vigilor in my Annihilator list just to give something +1 to hit because I'm afraid of Roar, right? But I'm not at 170. I don't think.
No, it's not worth it. Concussors. We ran the numbers, even with the new command ability, some kind of defensive concussor play. Still not worth using. 220 is not a significant point drop from Fulminators. Fulminators are so good, you want to use Fulminators instead. There are some things worth mentioning here that weren't that relevant in previous seasons, such as Dracoths can score battle tactics. We've been ignoring that mostly because the other battle tactics were so good. Not so much anymore.
Some of us haven't been ignoring it.
It's been relevant, but it's more relevant now than before.
It really is. Yeah. It really is.
Yeah. Dracoths in general aren't looking as hot as they could before because they can't fill infantry slots in battalions. So if you want to bring like a sharpshooter and a veteran, just slamming a two Fulminators in there kind of makes it awkward because then you start running out of points for units to fill those minimum battalion slots. Dracoths can only be battle line in Hammers of Sigmar, and that's the only way they can give you key to victory, which feels like you're missing out if you don't have it. But yeah, Concussors ain't it. Desolators ain't it. We're really just talking about Fulminators here, who took a 10-point nerf, undeserved nerf in my opinion. This unit is still the gold standard of damage. They still are reasonably fast. They do a bazillion damage on the charge. In previous seasons, I would say four of them in a squad can be overkill. But given that we're going into an infantry meta, you're going to have to kill 30 Bladegeist Revenants. I don't think anything can do it except Fulminators, reliably. So that amount of damage is really good utility. So Fulminators, S tier. They will stay S tier for a long time to come, I think.
Agreed.
Tempestors, on the other hand, we really like them here. We've considered them as this like jack of all trades unit, this kind of skirmishing shooter unit that then dives into melee to finish the job, and they're still good at that. But for all the stuff I talked about with Dracoths, them not being battle line unless you're playing Hammers of Sigmar, and since there's so many other tools, Hammers of Sigmar isn't really looking that hot right now. And we'll talk about that when we get to the Stormhost section. And that's really where Tempesters came in, is when you were playing Hammers of Sigmar, they were a battle line slot. That's not going to be as common in list building anymore. They can't be sharpshooters, which is actually, some nice utility that Stormcast can take advantage of that other armies can't. They can't even be in the battalion to help, fill it out. So they're just feeling a little awkward and a little out of place. If you're playing a standard game of Age of Sigmar, they're exactly as good as they were before. There's just a little bit better tools now. So we're dropping them from A tier to B tier. And losing Bounty Hunters kind of sucks, right? Like, Bounty Hunters was a big reason why Tempesters were considered so well, is because their melee damage was still good, even after shooting. So losing that is kind of a big deal. Looking at Dracolines, they have seen a monstrous point cut, going down 40 points per squad. Oh boy.
Like we recommended, baby. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
They were actually playable last season, I think, in Bounty Hunters. They were not efficient, but they were high impact as like a fast cavalry skirmishing unit that just took out screens and then contested objectives really well. This season, they've lost that damage output from Bounty Hunters, but they've just gotten so much cheaper. And now the value evaluation, let's say, is that they're the same cost as 2 Fulminators. Compared to them, they're 3 more wounds, -1 save, and plus 2-inch move. But they can also use Louch-On, which is really, really big, because the threat range on Dracolines using Louch-On is like basically the whole table, right? Because Louch-On goes 18 inches, then you move 12 inches, and then you have a rerollable charge. That's huge. The fact that they come with their own Celestial Blades means you don't have any awkwardness from bringing like a squad of 2 Fulminators and a Chariot and a squad of 5 Retributors, and all 3 of those units want Celestial Blades. These guys don't worry about that. They have their own version of it. They're an Unbind, which sometimes does something, not often, but it can sometimes, right? Especially if you're like on a piece of arcane terrain, it can come in handy. So Evocators overall are looking pretty good. What do you guys think about using a 6-man squad of Evocators?
Nah, not worth it. Too many eggs in one basket. It's 4-up save, so it gets taken out pretty easily. And to top it off, like, they have problems with reach. Like, I know you can run them in that stupid flower formation, but like getting everything into like a smaller unit is going to be a challenge.
Yeah, I'm most interested in actually running them in the same slot as I had kind of Fulminators in a dragon list. They complement the speed on dragons a lot better, and generally like those side units aren't getting shot as much, which is where the 4-up save like really matters the most. They're interesting because they're another source of mortal wounds, which was something I found very important in that army, is making sure my mortal wound output was keeping up.
And another Unbind.
Yes, and another Unbind. That was another good one. Even playing Storm Drakes, I like my ignore spells on a 4-up. Even then, sometimes you want to throw more dice at issues so that they can't be issues.
Sometimes you just want to unbind an endless spell, like Evocators will help in that.
Yeah, actually, that's a big one.
With Tzeentch rising to prominence in this season, and a lot of people are predicting that's to be the case anyway, an extra Unbind helps. It really does.
Even against LRL, it's like, okay, your guys aren't empowered anymore, It's good.
Like sometimes they'll be like, they'll get really cozy with casting something with their once per game, especially on a 9. Be like, oh, this is fine. Sometimes you do roll that good and it works out, and to give yourself the opportunity to win is really important.
Well, also they get empower Vanquishers if they really have to, or themselves. There's something of a self-sufficient unit. It's just that their survivability just put them way too overcosted at 280, and I think Games Workshop just hit the nail on the head. They should always have been the same cost as Fulminators.
Yeah, now all we need is for them to be battle line in a subfaction, and then we're cooking.
We're cooking. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Vanguard Paladors. I'm still not liking them, even with a 15-point cut. They still have all the same problems they had before. As a 3-man squad, they don't do enough damage. Unlike Evocators or Fulminators, Min squad just doesn't do enough, and they have all the same issues that a Dracoline squad has while they're reinforced. They do have that teleport, which is cool. But there's all kinds of limitations on it, right? Like you can't go within 1 inch of an objective or terrain, and more than 9 inches from models, and it just gets awkward. So I'm just, I want them to be good because the models are so cool, but they're just not.
Are they, like, the thing is, I really liked it when I think maybe this was true for all the Gryph-hounds. I think their beaks used to have more wounds. I think they used to have to do like 6 and I think if they had that, we could have seen some play because they do have like a lot of volume of attacks. They can actually like go toe to toe with like a lot of infantry units that are. But then again, the problem is lightly armored infantry units because they go up against like Slaves to Darkness, and with their -1 rend is just going to cut it.
Yeah, they're bouncing off knights. They're not doing anything there. I'd rather have a chariot in every situation than 3 Paladors.
Yeah.
Stormdrake Guard. We thought season 1 was going to be really impactful in terms of rules. We thought bounty hunters, infantry would be really really useful. Turns out only bounty hunters was really really useful. And in that case, the Stormdrake Guard kind of just ignored all the seasonal rules. They were good anti-infantry and they were just good. Period. And they ended up being S tier. We definitely underrated them. Mm-hmm. And I think it's easy to say that they're pretty much going to do the exact same thing this season. Yeah, they're expensive. If you bring Stormdrake Guard as your primary hammer, or even just as a support unit, that means you're not taking as many champions as you could, which means your battle tactics are going to suffer a bit. But then you remember that Draconith scores 2 battle tactics, so you don't really need that many champions if you're just scoring all the tactics anyway. We're still going to bring champions to those Stormdrake lists. We're going to bring a Lord Relictor, probably an Incantor, probably a Castellant. The fact that their inefficient damage isn't really the end of the world because they're just so high impact in everything they do. Their speed is high impact. Their durability is high impact. Their ignoring spells is really good. Roaring, flying, high coherency. Stormdrakes just do it all. And then they have a Mortal Wound Breath attack that sometimes just deletes a screen for you, which is wonderful. So yeah, they're an S tier unit. You kind of have to build into them now, it feels like. Dan, I think you're kind of the resident dragon expert here. Why don't you talk about them for a bit?
Yeah, I think that if you're going to play dragons, you have to invest and you have to be all in on the playstyle. Sure, you can fit like a unit or 2 here and there, but it's just not going to be as impactful. Like Stormstrike Chariots are a little easier to fit in just because you can probably fit in 1 for 170, and it feels a lot better than trying to fit in 340 points of something. I still think they do a great job if you do want to fit in, a mobile pinner and you have those extra slots. But being Stormcast, we don't necessarily have that. But anyways, back to the actual main dragons. There's so much. When you look at the Warscroll, you first look at it, the dragons seem to be an efficient 9 wounds each. So 2 model unit, 340 points, not fulminator damage. Pretty much, it's like, oh, why don't I just take fulminators? 100 points less, a little bit less wounds. It's the combination of everything. It's monster giving you roar, letting you get past a lot of things, letting you get past fire slayers. Fighting first against you, getting an effective rend off of that. It's the fly keyword, letting you position them wherever you need to, along with 3-inch coherency, which surprises a lot of people when they can see just the weird positioning you can do. The fact that they're oblong bases, which allows you to slide along units, and if you're in base-to-base contact with something, generally you're kind of stuck and you can kind of rotate around it. But having an oblong base along with a 3-inch reach on the fangs and claws is huge for being able to slide past a unit. So many times that I've slid past wardens so I can tap sentinels, get them into combat, and then now I'm hitting them with my Rend 3 attacks, and they're like, what just happened? You just you have a 6-inch threat range on your pile-in. So that's really interesting. The 3-inch coherency again helps with that. Fly keyword helping with that, making sure you can go where you need to and take up space. That's another thing I think that's underrated about them, is they just take up space. Yeah, the mortal wound output can be really nice. Sure, sometimes you'll roll bad, but that happens for every unit. Sometimes you just roll bad. So, all in all, Stormdrake Guard, we underrated them for sure last season. I underrated them for sure last season, and I am glad that I gave them another look. That and ignoring spells is so good. We talked about it earlier.
Yeah, that's
especially if Zinch is a thing.
That's
oh my gosh!
Seraphon's coming soon too, right? So, yep.
Yeah, oh gosh, Purple Sun comes by. I don't care. The big sad spell from Lumineth Realm Lords goes off. Okay, cool, fine, whatever. The bird casts Infernal Gateway on you. Okay, sure, whatever. You're ignoring half of these things, and it's just ridiculous.
And the thing is, this unit is such a high threat. We keep saying it's not efficient, and it's not. If you crunch the numbers, we have better units, but their impact is so high, and part of that is their impact is so high, your opponent has to dedicate resources to taking them out. And when they do that, they are stacked defensively with Gardas, with Castellan, with an Incantor, with the Spell Ignore. You dedicate all your resources into this unit, and it pays off. It's very, very useful.
Yeah, the efficiency isn't in the raw stats. It's definitely in the play style and in what it makes your opponent have to do to deal with them.
Yeah. The efficiency is in a unit like Stormstrike Chariots. I adore Chariots. They're so good. They got problems, right? They're not super high damage. They have to charge in order to do damage. They're not battle line. They can't fill infantry slots, but they are fast. They are durable, like really durable. 12 wounds on a 3+ save for 170 is fantastic. They don't lose any space until you take 12 wounds, and that's an understated thing in this game. Is, you know, you lose a couple liberators to shooting, your opponent can just slide past them in the charge phase. This unit takes a couple wounds, it doesn't matter. Until it's dead, it's still there, taking up space, potentially healing, still doing damage every single turn. It's working at full strength. When it's not charging, their damage is bad. So, like, if you're using them as a screen, they're not ideal for that purpose. But man, it is so satisfying to have like 2 or 3 of these guys on the table with Gardas, giving them a 5-up ward, making them effectively 18 wounds each. It's gross. I can see why their points went up rather than down 5 points. Not sure it was justified, but I can definitely see why.
Hey, it's because we talked too good about them. I mean, like we talked about Annihilators of Grandhammers. We did too good. Nobody's running them. They're like 2% of the Stormcast like list meta. But they didn't feel right adjusting that, apparently.
Well, you know, I
wonder why.
I hear the number 1 ranked player uses them, so they got to be doing something right.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. I heard he's going to run them until he dies or something.
Until he stops rolling freaking 7-ups.
Until he stops rolling 7s, which our dice may have something different to say about that. But yeah.
So chariots are
that
great.
Merch plug though.
Chariots are great. Buy our dice. If chariots are good, they're like the mortal wound charge is also really big. Even if you have like 1 or 2 of these guys, normally when we charge units in, we don't get to activate 2 units at a time, like some armies do with Fight First or Lumineth. So we're kind of limited to 1 unit fighting, and that's why something like Stormstrike Guard work really well, because we put all our eggs in that basket, and it's a good basket. Stormstrike Chariots are a nice like you throw the basket at the person, you punch them in the nose while they're trying to catch it. You know, like they're just that quick jab.
Quick jab with mortal wounds, and then they're -1 to hit. So it's not the best profile to be multi-charging, but it protect with the 3-up save at a -1 to hit on the charge. It's the perfect tool for multi-charging.
Yeah, I wish there was some way to reinforce this unit, then they could be a real hammer. That would be
awesome. Bro, that'd be so. No, I actually thought about it. It'd be way too oppressive.
Well, it'd be 340 points, right? So
I mean, but the thing is, like, that's the thing. Like, Stormdrake Guard aren't oppressive for that reason. Stormstrike Chariots probably would be, because they have higher wounds. Like, let's not forget that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But yeah, A tier. I think the only thing keeping them out of S tier is the fact that they can't be reinforced.
But no battle line, yeah.
And
they can't be battle line.
Yeah. But otherwise, they're an excellent unit. Taking a look at our heroes, starting with the Knights. First up, the Knight Arcanum has seen a big point drop from 135, where she was unplayable garbage, to 110, where she is now the cheapest Stormcast wizard. And now you might think, well, why not just use a Battle Mage, which is even cheaper and has a really good spell and +1 to cast all the time? Well, it's because sometimes you want a Stormcast wizard for holy commands, for casting Celestial Blades, and that's about it. That's the extent of what her value is.
He's the cheapest Comet caster for Comet's, the Airblaze Comet.
Cometfall?
That's not true, because you can give an Arcane Tome to a Knight Heraldor.
Oh, that's true.
So, yeah, her niche is not good. We're putting her in C tier because I think it's because I just want to appreciate that they are paying attention to the balancing issues with such a big book. Is like you have to carve out a niche, and short of changing Warscrolls, doing it with points is a way to go. So I want to appreciate the effort that they're putting into giving us some internal balancing. This one, I think 100 points. I think it could actually be 100 points, and it would be okay. Because she is competing with the Knight Incantor, only 10 points more, and I don't think the Knight Incantor needs to go up in points at all.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at, I think, the most improved hero in our book with the new champion rules is the Knight Azuros, who is a 12-inch flying champion, and I'm going to list the attacks here when I feel like they're relevant. He does do 10 damage at 3/3 -1, which is actually on the higher end for Stormcast fighting, so it's not bad. he is an excellent choice for a champion if you're looking for the Galatian Command Battalion. And if you want a full rundown on how that battalion works, you can check out our live stream that we did, I think a week or two ago, just breaking down all those rules. When he fights, a unit of 5 Retributors fights at the same time. He gives them all +1 hit, saving you a lot of command points, and that can't be roared. And then he has a very unique profile, being a fast champion that also gives +1 hit. He can take the Quicksilver Draught and once per game fight first. And he can fight first on your turn, which allows you to fight with him and the bodyguard and then your real hammer unit. So you could like double charge units, which we pretty much can't do otherwise, which is a very useful thing to do. Or you can fight first defensively on your opponent's turn. You get stuck into a combat, your opponent charges stuff into your squad, and then you activate the Quicksilver Draught and your sworn bodyguards, and they fight before your opponent has a chance to. And that's a very, very powerful ability. That's like a holy command level of power. It's really, really good. And the Knight Azuros, I think, is the best unit to take advantage of that with his combination of speed and melee support buffs. Unfortunately, though, there's still just heroes that we want to take more. And Stormcast are an army that wins the game through our hammer units, not through our screens, not through our support heroes. It's the hammer units that win the games. It's our Storm Drakes, it's our Long Strikes, it's our Fulminators, our Evocators. These are the units that are going to win you the game. Everything else is there just to support them. And there are units in our army that just do a better job supporting. You know, we need a Priest for translocation. We need a Knight Incantor to dispel things. We need a Battle Mage for mobility. We need a Castellan for +1 save. Sometimes you need an Imperatant for just the fact that you're using Grand Hammers. And Knight Azuros is like this 4th string, 5th string hero. So even though he has this really cool combo, he's not a first pick type unit. So he's good. He's an A-tier hero. He's just not quite up there with like the Lord Relictor or the Knight Incantor, which we'll talk about soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nitroconus is kind of a weird one because he works only with Storm Drakes. Like you don't use him unless you have Storm Drakes in your list. And you kind of have this scenario where you want multiple units of Storm Drakes and you want him to be your general. That way he makes them battle line and he basically saves you points off bringing 2 units of Vanquishers or whatever. But he also wants a unit of 4 Storm Drakes so that you can get max value out of the hero phase breath attack. So you kind of start like 6 dragons in a list, really, and then you can bring the Draconis, and then he's an okay fit. So like he's okay, he's not bad. There's nothing objectively bad about this guy. He does have Draconith and Monster, which are 2 really, really good keywords. Draconith for battle tactics and Monster, and Holy Command range and all that stuff. And then Monster for like being able to roar and stomp and smash to rubble, which comes in handy sometimes. So he has good keywords. He's just expensive. And because of that, he only works if you have like a squad of 4 and a squad of 2 Storm Drakes. So it's hard to give him anything higher than B, but he's also not like bad. Just because he's super niche doesn't make him bad.
Mm-hmm. I especially like underrated him, I think, last season a little bit. He's interesting because literally he's inefficient, right? 300 points is just not like you should never bring. No, not never, but you shouldn't really consider Nitroconus in any kind of list where you want to be somewhat efficient without bringing at least 4 Storm Drakes. Honestly, even 6, could be a requirement. It's mostly at least the 4. You want to be taking advantage of that battle line, right? And him opening up, the tactics, being a Draconith himself is really good. His native Ren 3 can be very surprising. If you've got like a tougher target, I do use him as a bit of like a, he's a can opener. So I do send him in there. The fact that he can complete the This One's Mine.
Yes.
That one's still in the book, isn't it?
Yes,
it is.
Yeah, so that one has come up this past weekend. I had a GT, and that came up in 2 games out of my 5, and he performed, right. Like he's really important to have. He's a great Arcane Tome carrier with Scintillating Trail, really great use of that. It's really just down to he's really inefficient, right? Like his profile does not make sense for 300 points. He's 11 wounds. Gosh, yeah,
it's
too much.
Almost another unit of Storm Drakes. That's the problem.
Yeah. Yes.
Yep.
Yes. And
that's
unlocking the Draconith keyword for battle tactics and whatnot really doesn't come into play because you're going to be using your Storm Drakes for that kind of stuff.
Well, it can matter. I'll say it can. Because you're gonna
Is
want to charge
is
him
it
in with
theoretically
stuff.
possible? Yes, it is theoretically possible.
I think
It's good to have flexibility. One of the things he brings is a lot of flexibility. The fact that you can hero phase shoot some drakes to free them up is really important.
Yes.
Because sometimes you can do that and then get your movement phase. Oftentimes with our shooting, we pop Thunderbolt Volley fairly early. Oftentimes with our shooting, this one is one where I save it for a midpoint in the game. I don't like to pop this early unless it's like a big alpha strike. I mean, even then, like basically once I'm already in combat, that's when I want to be using this.
Yes.
And it's big. It does swing games. It's like a second chance at a breath as well. Sometimes, you don't get freed up, but when you go to shoot, then you roll a little better, and it feels like a reroll on that. If Nitroconus was any cheaper, like he could lose 50 points and be okay still. Like, if it was any cheaper, he'd be A tier. And if, oh gosh. I don't even know what else he'd have to bring. He just needs to be cheaper.
There's two things he could do. One, he could take Master of the Celestial Menagerie on himself. Like if that was an option, just so he could be -1 to be wounded, that would go a long way. Because he just gets clubbed.
I don't think I'd ever pick it.
Probably not.
Yeah.
But like it would be a nice option. And two,
it would be a nice option.
The second thing I'd really like to see, if that extra Storm Drake you can bring for 170, if you bring a Nitroconus, if that could be battle line, that would really help him out.
Yes, 100%. That would make, and it would make a lot of sense, like purchasing power wise, right? Like if that was battle line, because if you're bringing him and you own, like, let's say you bought 2 boxes, right? So you made a Nitroconus because he's cool, he's got the flaming sword, and you've got a set of 2 Storm Drakes. Now you're feeling a little sad, right? Even if you've got a 3rd box, you've really got to invest all the way to the 4th box, right? Where you're running a 6 dragon Nitroconus. I always say 7 dragon list, and that's really where he shines. And that's not always the place we're going to play Storm Drakes. Even though Storm Drakes are S tier, you would think the Nitroconus would be A tier, right under them at the very least. It's the fact that even when you're taking 4 Storm Drakes, sometimes you're not even using him as your general, and you're running something like Dueling Dragons, that style, and that's still good. So like this, if 6 dragons was the main way to play him, he'd be A tier, and if he was cheaper, he'd be A tier. But neither of those are true, so he's B tier.
Right. His point increase never made any sense, ever.
No.
And the fact that it
not at all.
hasn't been corrected is a disservice to this amazing model that is really cool.
I would love to be able to play him as just the upgrade to a Lord Celcint on Dragoth. Like that would be so awesome if he was the next like step, right?
Yes.
But we just don't get that here. Gosh, he's so inefficient.
Next up, the Knight Heraldor, still F tier, is still the cheapest hero. It is a champion. He has a totem. You can take advantage of the new aspect of the alpha. Don't think it's worth putting on him. If you're going to take a 100-point champion unit, take the Knight Zephyros instead. There's still also issues with the Thunderblast ability. Like it is a consistent source of mortal wounds every single turn if you're playing on a table that has any decent amount of terrain. But there's problems with it, right? It requires terrain wholly within 18. So if you have like a big piece of terrain, you might not get the whole thing within 18, especially if you drop this guy into play more than 9 inches or translocate him or something. And the Thunderblast can still fail. You have to roll a 2+ on it, which is really, really sad. So Knight Heraldor continues to be a wound in my heart because he is my favorite model, straight up. Best Stormcast unit. So, sad. Knight Incantor. Mm-hmm. He's now more relevant than he was before in the previous season. There's a lot more magic armies than there were before. There's always going to be that one crucial spell you want to cancel every single game. A Lumineth player that doesn't get off the Key and Power on their 30 Sentinels, or the Speed of Hish on their Wind Chargers to get in range to heal on shoot you, or Slaves to Darkness casting even just a Mystic Shield on their big squad of Varangard. That can be the difference between winning a game and losing one. There is always a spell the Knight Incantor wants to stop. It's almost like after the Lord Relictor, this is the second hero in most lists. Unless you got like a Lord Imperaton or a Castellan, you have a specific plan. This is like the second string support hero that you're generally bringing. It's fantastic. And sometimes he casts a spell too. So there's also that, right? Like he's a regular Unbind. He's just a cheap Stormcast wizard with a Dispel Scroll. You can't really ask for more.
Mm-hmm.
Knight Judicator is weird. He is a champion that deals damage, which is different than how we usually think of champions. They're usually just support heroes. This guy actually does like 6 damage pretty reliably from 30 inches away, and he can't be shot back if he's standing near battle line units. The problems are, of course, that the 6 damage that he would do are really good against support heroes, which he can't shoot because he can't be a sharpshooter. He does have the Gaze of Sigmar, which activates on a 4+ to deal some mortal wounds, but like on its own, it's not reliable enough to do anything. So he's kind of in a weird spot. I don't think this B rating is even warranted. Thinking about it now again, he's probably more like a C tier. But he feels better than all the stuff we have in C tier. So it's worth maybe keeping him up here. I will also mention the 2 Gryph-hounds that he spawns are a fantastic tactical piece. Stormcast are not an army that has lots of cheap disposable units. Like even our cheap screens that we consider disposable, they're not literally throwaway. You have to use them properly. But these 2 Gryph-hounds, you throw them away. You score an objective with it, then they die, and you never care about that. They zone out deep strikes and teleports. They stop units from moving within 3 inches of them. They stop from dropping in. Like, they're just a really useful piece. And it kind of makes me wish that our Castellan and Veritant spawned that dog. I loved having that extra unit on the table so much in 2nd edition. I hope we go back to that. Yeah. I really do. Knight Questor. He is one of the cheapest Stormcast champions. Knight Relictor. One of the cheapest Stormcast priests. He is the cheapest Stormcast priest. And that's a good niche to have. Because we need a priest. And even if all that priest does is translocation, that's worth 120 points. Even if that's only a 9-inch range translocation, even if it doesn't have +1 to chant with a Lord Relictor, even if he does less damage and doesn't have any prayers and doesn't have the Lord keyword so that you can issue holy commands and cast spells further, the Knight Relictor is just straight up a useful unit to have. And the 30-point difference between the Knight and the Lord becomes more relevant this season than it did before, because we've seen big nerfs on relatively big nerfs on a lot of things. Like Aether Wings going up by 5, Chariots going up by 5, Gardas going up 20. You kind of start looking for room in your lists, and the Knight Relictor might be that spot, because the trade-off of losing a command trait, not really a big deal. Like, we're going to take High Priest anyway. I will say, though, every time I run the Knight Relictor instead of the Lord Relictor, I miss having all the stuff the Lord Relictor has instead. So, he is, efficient. He's going to be a squeeze every now and then, but it sucks. It's not a good niche. I wish they would redesign his Warscroll.
Poor damage. You're still hitting him with that meme.
Yeah, that mace, dude. 3 attacks, 2 damage apiece. Whew. Watch out.
Gosh, not even as good as the Castellan.
No. The Azeros hits harder than this guy, which is astounding. The Knight Venator, a lot of people have asked us about this on the Discord server. Where does the Knight Venator fall? 35 points is where he falls, and that's a big drop, right? 35 points, that's almost as big as Dracoline's going down. He is a 12-inch flying champion, and like the Knight Judicator, he's a champion that does damage from 30 inches away. So in addition to just being a champion and scoring tactics, he's a fast one, like the Azeros, which is good, and he's contributing damage directly, whereas the Azeros would contribute damage indirectly through a +1 hit aura. Or not an aura, but an effect. He actually does have the same max damage as the Knight Judicator, which we generally consider the Knight Judicator to be a good damaging unit. Not great, but good. The Knight Venator is a lot less accurate. He also can't be a sharpshooter, but once per game he can get around that restriction by just pinging something with D6 mortal wounds. So I don't know if there's going to be room for the Knight Venator to see play even in a season where he can score battle tactics, and there's value in that. But it's a step in the right direction, and I want to appreciate that they were willing to do such a drastic point cut. This guy should have never been 175. It does, they're just correcting a mistake, I feel like, but credit where credit's due. This is a step in the right direction. Knight Vexilor. With the Meteor banner, I think that's really the one we're considering here. I'm not sure how useful the Teleport banner is. Teleport banner seems very redundant ever since they changed Thunderbolt Volley, so you can't double tap a reinforced unit of crossbows. But the Meteor banner kind of seems interesting now. If people are going to be bringing more small heroes, the Meteor banner really punishes those small heroes. Just 2 or 3 of those banners, and the small heroes are all gone in a big area out of reserve, which is pretty cool. Unfortunately, if we're fighting against Gargants and reinforced units, D3 mortal wounds for 120 points once per game is not very useful. And then he kind of just sits around doing next to nothing. So would you use one Knight Vexilor? Maybe. as a totem. You can give him Aspect of the Alpha, get a big range on that, buff up 3 different units, or rally 3 different units. I am not seeing it. I don't know. I got to think more about it. Maybe with the teleport banner, there might be some shenanigans. But the Meteor banner, I'm not seeing it in an infantry meta. Same with the Knight Vexillor with the Apotheosis banner. That's just an F tier unit. Like, he could be 100 points and I still wouldn't use him. It's just not worth it. The way his revive works is that the heals, D3 from each unit. You can pick the same unit multiple times, but D3 can just be 1 on a unit of Liberators, and then you just don't heal anything, and you don't revive anything. Yeah, he's just bad. Just needs a completely different ability. Give him Andrasta's ability to revive a model per turn. Make him like 180. I would play that. Play that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, that'd be a lot more interesting than Andrasta's design. Just tragic. Yep.
Knight Zephyros. So, again, like the Knight Questor and the Knight Heraldor, she's only 100 points. Unlike those two, she's actually useful. She teleports every turn, even if she's in combat, with no dice roll required. And when you give her Stubborn as a Rhinox enhancement, she counts as 10 models on an objective. So if there's an objective that's open, she's on it. If there's an objective that has 1 model toe in, she's on it and she's taking it. Her damage sucks, her shooting sucks, her melee sucks. You can give her an Arcane Tome to give her some extra utility, to have like a teleporting wizard. That's actually pretty useful because a lot of times you'll fall out of range of Holy Commands and fall out of range of Mystic Shield and Celestial Blaze and things like that, and she can just keep up. She is a weird flex pick at the end of a list, right? 100 points is sometimes awkward, right? It's like, do you want to pick a Knight Zephyros and Aether Wings, or do you want to take a Chariot? And I think that just depends on how many other champions you have in your army already. Maybe B might be overselling it, though. What do you guys think?
I have used her exactly as you have described, and she feels fine. Like, I think it's doable. If for no other reason than my opponent had to dedicate more than 100 points of resources to go kill her so that she's not running around stealing objectives every turn.
Do you think there's some play with like a Luckstone guaranteeing a charge with Stubborn as a Rhinox in order to get onto an objective?
I think that is going to really depend on your battle pack. One of the things that I am disappointed with in the new GHB is the number of battle plans that have a small number of objectives, and in that case, I think that might have some play. Because there are a fewer number of objectives, that means that there is a higher concentration of enemy models on those objectives, making getting onto the objectives with her teleport much more difficult. In the battle plans where you have, so like in the one with the 5 across the diagonal, she is an absolute headache because you can't leave anything open because she'll just teleport to it. But on the battle plans where it's 3, that teleport becomes almost unusable after like turn 1 when everyone's in position. And so then, sure. Do I think it's good? No.
I kind of like her teleport ability working with Call for Aid, being that she can just teleport anywhere, and then when a Vanquisher unit or whatever dies, you just revive it wherever she is. That's pretty cheeky, but it's still more than 9 inches from enemies, so anywhere that she could teleport, that's where she'd be reviving units anyway. The problem with that Luckstone play I described is she has to survive the combat phase, and with 5 wounds on a 3-up save, she's not going to do that.
No.
And no damage, so it's not like she's going to cut down even more than like a couple models in chaff. She just teleports, and I think really if you want to use something like this, you got to give her the Arcane Tome. That's really the only way to make a valid case for her. With Flaming Weapon, she's okay damage, right? Like, that's not the worst thing in the world. The problem is you can't, if you could Flaming Weapon and then use heroic actions, that there might be some play for her to fight in the hero phase and stuff like that, but you can't do that because casting spells is after heroic actions, so you can't even do that, unfortunately. But I think she's okay. She's a nice tactical piece.
Yeah. I think she'll see a bit more play as an ally for GC rules. I think she's an interesting order ally at 100 points.
Yeah, people are going to see a lot of this in Order armies, I think. Change anything, because he actually doesn't really have any synergy with the army. There's nothing like you need a Lord Aquilord to do anything in this list. He's also not a champion, which is actually going to be a big deal for Stormcast, because our book tactics are not the best unless you're running very specific amounts of dragons against very specific lists. So not being a champion is kind of a big cost these days. I don't think you can afford to run many. You can maybe get away with one, and it's definitely not going to be the Lord Aquilor. 170 points, he's still bad. Maybe if he could issue free commands to Vanguard Raptors, he'd be okay, but he can't do that because Vanguard Raptors don't have the Vanguard keyword for some indescribable reason. So F. I don't think there's anything else to say about him. Lord Arcanum, foot hero, went down 15 points, but all the spells that he actually wanted to cast went up by about that much. Purple Sun cost 20 points more than it did at the start of last season. Ravenak's Jaws went up 10 points. All these other spells went up 10 points here and there. Kind of offsets what the Lord Arcanum was doing. So we started looking at what other spells can he cast that are kind of interesting. Maybe like an Aether Void Pendulum. You could, give him Tunnel Master and then translocate him onto one of the sides of the enemy army. Cast a Pendulum through it and get some extra units caught in because of the extra range. I don't know how good that strategy is. Lord Arcanum on foot, probably not going to see too much play still. Still just a niche unit in our army. Lord Arcanum on Dracoline. Again, this is one of those non-champion heroes that we have. He's still a one-spell wizard with +0 to cast for 180 points. His only saving grace is he has this Pack Alpha ability, which gives Dracolines +1 to their claw attacks. But that's not really worth using unless you have at least 6 Dracolines. And it's going to be 2 squads of 3 Dracolines because single squad of 6 can't fight Reinforce, which is one of the problems we talked about earlier. So he's just too expensive in not just opportunity cost and battalions, but his points are too high. He doesn't do enough. He's not very good. And the mount traits still make up for it, I don't think. Arcanum on Griffcharger. He had a pretty cool niche last season, being able to translocate forwards and then cast some endless spells that were actually good, and then teleport back every single turn. He still does exactly that, and he still has his D3, D6 healing spell depending on the cast. But the problem is that he's not a champion anymore, and those slots are coveted. 170 points for that effect is hard to find in a lot of lists. And I think people are going to start favoring the Knight Zephyros with an Arcane Tome instead for that exact purpose. He does get the mount trait, which is nice. The Scintillating Trail can be really good to give enemies -1 to unbind you. It's like having a +1 cast, but it costs 70 points more. And that's like a whole unit of Aether Wings. So I don't think he's going to make the cut. Still playable. He's not unplayable by any means. It's just hard to find room for him. The Lord Arcanum on Toralon is also not a champion, but he is a monster, which is a very useful keyword in a lot of Stormcast lists that don't use Storm Drakes. Having just a flying monster that can keep up with your guys, give everything around him +1 hit, and then charge in and roar things to support your damage is pretty useful. Is it worth 250 points? I don't know. Is Comet Trail an aura effect that is consistent and you have to stay within range of him? Or is it a pulse and the units can leave? I also don't know. They've refused to clarify it, so we will keep shrugging. I guess we don't know what's going on with that. Lord Arcanum on Toralon in previous seasons worked best with multiple units of shooting. So you'd have 2 units of long strikes, you'd have a couple Knight Judicators, a block of Tempesters, and some crossbows, and he would give them all +1 hit if you positioned correctly, or at least most of them, and then you'd use, Aether Wings would give the long strikes +1 hit, and you could issue all-out attack onto some crossbows or Tempesters or something. And that worked pretty well in Season 1 because Tempesters had bounty hunters, or had access to bounty hunters, which gave them extra melee damage against specific targets, and I don't think it's going to work this season very well because shooting is inherently inefficient compared to melee. The Lord Arcanum being such an expensive piece, he's basically taking the spot of just what could be more melee damage. And I don't think the all-shooting list is going to work out that well this season. What do you guys think about that concept in general? Because that's really where the Toralon fits, unless we found some other use for him that you guys haven't told me about yet.
I agree with everything you've said.
Yeah. It's going to be rough. Like even, we have to take sharpshooters. That's already kind of eating into our drops, and shooting list wants to be able to, be able to react to all that. I'm glad that he got cheaper because GW is seeing hey, 35 points. That's a hefty discount, right? But it's still just not enough, and especially with GC being something a little more important. It's not, all defining, but it just makes him that much worse, unfortunately.
Yep, it's unfortunate. Still playable, right? Not an unplayable models. It is C tier, not D tier. Lord Castellant is like so close to getting up to S tier. So close, but he's not quite there yet, right? He's like second string hero. We bring him after we consider the Relictor. He might be considered before the Incanter, but usually after that as well. But Lord Castellan is very simple. He gives you +1 save that stacks with every other source of +1 save. And depending on your understanding, your comprehension of the rule, it might stack with itself. So you could bring 2 Lord Castellans and buff the same unit twice, depending on your interpretation. Not going to get into that. I'm just going to assume it only works once. He has some interesting things going for him. Besides that, he is an 8-wound champion, which is really good if you're sitting him on an objective with Stubborn as a Rhinox to count as 10 models, and your opponent's trying to shoot him off. Having 8 wounds instead of 5 or 6, like most of our heroes, actually does help. His melee damage is okay, so if you're using a heroic action with him to attack in the hero phase, that could work. He can work as a decent sworn bodyguard type hero, so you take advantage of that. He's really good with any reinforced unit. You have 4 Storm Drakes, 15 Vindictors, 10 Protectors, 4 Dracots, 10 Evocators even, I might pair him with. Just something that already has a really good save. He takes it to the next level. And he's kind of the hidden allegiance ability of Stormcast, is being able to do this with our units. We get to, +3 to saves on 3+ units. So we just ignore Ren 2. And that is pretty dang cool. And you can't do that without a Lord Castellan. So just for that reason, he gets an A tier. And he's so close to being S tier. Not quite, though.
Yeah, it is. I mean, he's one of my go-tos because I play the Drake list a lot, and he's really great. The totem comes in handy a lot just because he's not the general sometimes in those lists. And gosh, even the extra basics, because his Gryph-hound is bigger than the other Gryph-hounds. And I think Met told me once that there's literally a lore reason for that he's bigger than like the Lord Imperator Gryph-hounds, for example. But yeah, no, that even that allows him to tiptoe on objectives and still reach out. Like, there's just a lot of little things about the Castellan that he's a workhorse. He just gets his job done. He does it well. You can't stop the +1 to save. Like with Mystic Shield, he's always going to be there for you. Great guy.
Oh yeah, it's not even a prayer +1 save. It's just always guaranteed, no dice roll required. You just need a hero phase, and you have to be in range in the hero phase. And now that's less of a concern because he can tunnel master himself to keep up with whatever unit is being translocated forward, for example. That was always one of the downsides of using this unit, is you get 1 turn out of him, and then he needs to be teleported up, and then you're vulnerable in that 1 turn. That's gone. That's not a concern anymore.
Yeah, he already had a big range with the 18-inch Holy Within for the Lantern, so it just makes him that much better. Yeah, great unit. 8 wounds it comes in handy. A lot of people think he's like a little 6-wound guy, and it's like, nah, dude, he's got the extra size Gryph-hound.
I still wish he was 6 wounds and the Gryph-hound was a separate unit, but take what you can get, I suppose.
Oh yeah, I mean, if the Gryph-hound was a separate unit, that would actually be useful for other purposes, for sure.
Yeah. Lord Celestin, he is a champion. He is one of our harder hitting champions with 10 damage at 3s, rend 1, and doing mortal wounds on hit rolls of 6. But that's it. That's all he does. He issues a command. Who cares? Doesn't matter. All he does is fight and issue all out attack. He can do it on shooting units, I believe as well. Like, it's not just in the combat phase, but no, we can do a lot better, and we need to do a lot better this season. We need to be as lean as possible and as useful as possible with our support heroes.
Yeah, needs a rework.
Yeah.
Yep.
Lord Celestin
He's needed a rework since the book came out.
They just gutted him, and he wasn't good to begin with. Lord Celestin on Dracoth had this interesting niche of using like a Quicksilver Draught in order to fight first, or a Luckstone in order to charge in from reserve. And he can still do those things, but the problem is he's not a champion, so it's harder to justify room for him in a list. Quicksilver Draught can now be used better on other heroes like Drakesworn Templars, or a Knight Azuros can use it a lot better. His Luckstone charge is okay, but it's not going to do the significant damage needed to punch anything off of an objective and then capture it, because he only counts as 2 models. Yeah, it's kind of just like a Lord Celestin. Right now, all he does is fight and issue AOA. So, not really terribly useful.
Next season, though, after all this GC stuff goes away, I could see him being very interesting. Now that he's 190, that makes him an interesting missile.
Yep. Just, hey, that thing over there, this is a mini Celestin Prime who's going to guarantee charge with a Luckstone, and he's going to kill whatever that thing that you've left exposed. Lord Exorcist, 25-point drop down to 150. He is a champion. He does do 8 damage in the hero phase and combat phase, but he's also a 1-spell wizard with +0 for 150 points. His signature spell could be good in theory if you had ways to debuff bravery, but the way the game is set up right now, there's just too much stuff that's going to ignore it. So yeah. Ironically, he has an ability that's really good against death armies, but then his spell is terrible against death armies. So I don't know what exactly his niche is supposed to be. Even if his effect was 10 inches instead of 9, it would be a lot better. Being able to shut off all revives within 10 inches would be very, very good, because you could just drop him into play wherever you're fighting, and then the Night Haunt player, for example, wouldn't be able to use their resurrect. You wouldn't be able to rally back stuff even if they pull models out of 3 inches. Like little things like this that could swing the game. If he was, 120, 130 points, and that ability was 10 inches and more usable, that's actually a niche that we would take. We would actually take that.
Yeah, maybe use against Sylvaneth, against, even basic Chaos rallying. Like, there's situations where he would be good, but it's just way too much to pay.
Mm-hmm. Lord Imperator. So we talked about Grand Hammers going down a tier and why, and this pretty much just lives and dies with the Grand Hammers. There are other strategies that can employ Lord Imperator, for example, dropping 15 Vindictors in on your opponent. That's necessary to have a Lord Imperator. But, aside from that, he kind of just lives and dies with Grand Hammers. Shield Annihilators aren't good enough, Vigilors aren't good enough, Vanquishers aren't good enough. It's really the Grand Hammer combo that works for this guy. So if Grand Hammers are going down a tier, for all the same reasons, the Lord Imperator goes down a tier as well. His ability to just issue a command point for free is nice, but I don't think I would pay...
why you bring him.
Yeah, I don't think I'd ever pay points for command points in the game. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if all he did was this thing and he was like 100 points, I probably wouldn't bring him. Our support slots need to be doing more for us than that. Lord Ordinator took a 20-point hit in addition to all the point reductions on ballistas, but that's still not enough to make him playable, I don't think. He's staying in the D tier. His +1 hit aura is only as useful as the war machines he's supporting, and Celestar ballistas aren't very good, so that's a rough sell. Lumineth ballistas are good. We can ally them, bring those instead. They don't even need the +1 hit, so Lord Ordinator doesn't help there. They just hit on 2s all the time, which is fantastic. Yeah, he is one of our harder hitting melee heroes, but that's about all you can say about him as a champion. Mm-hmm. Lord Relictor, still S, even with a 5-point nerf. It turns out he's even better than he was before, because we still need Translocate. We will probably be taking High Priest a lot more often now than we were before in the last season, where Master Magic was a serious consideration. I think High Priest has just shot up to being the default again, given the way the game's going to go. He is a champion, which is great. He is a totem, so even if he's not the general, he can still take advantage of things like Aspect to the Alpha. And the most important thing that's happened this season is the new enhancements. He can either take Stubborn as a Rhinox to count as 10 models on an objective, so he can just translocate himself and boom, there you go. You just 10 models on that objective. Or he can Tunnel Master to keep up with whatever unit you just teleported. So same problem that we were describing before with the Lord Castellan not being able to keep up with this supporting unit. Lord Relictor and shooting units kind of work the same way. You'll translocate up a unit of 6 long strikes or 10 or 15 crossbow adjudicators, and then the Lord Relictor the next turn has to translocate himself, or he has to hope that he can run in range. But this just lets you take bigger plays across the table, this Tunnel Master combo. So there's that. There's also the 3+ Revive enhancement that you can take as well, which we'll talk about. All of these are useful in the Lord Relictor. He was already doing a lot of work, and he's going to keep working. He's not getting any breaks. There's even some play that we've been talking about with this Tunnel Master thing of running 2 Lord Relictors, which was always something we thought about doing. It seems expensive. I know that's a 300-point combo, but what you can do is you can translocate 1 Relictor forward, and this Relictor would have an Arcane Tome and Divine Light, and he would cast the Geminids of Ulgish to debuff a bunch of enemies, and then he would also chant Divine Light, and then that guy would just Tunnel Master back into safety. So all of your shooting is now, your opponent can't use all-out defense, and you have rerolling 1s, which is a very rare effect in this game, really maxing out the efficiency of our shooting units. So that's a fun little combo that you can look forward to. Lord Veritan has gotten a significant points cut in the sense that he's now cheaper than the Lord Relictor instead of more expensive for some reason. He is an 8-wound champion, kind of lackluster melee damage, right? Like the Hound 4 attacks don't matter. The only niche I see for the Lord Veritan this season is when you have a Knight Relictor instead of a Lord Relictor, And we talked about why you would want a Knight Relictor instead of a Lord Relictor sometimes. But when you have a Knight and you have 30 points, but not, or sorry, you have 20 points, but not 30, then the Lord Veritant can sometimes be slotted in because there is a significant advantage of having the Lord keyword and having the Totem keyword. Whereas the Knight Relictor has almost nothing on his War Scroll, this guy actually has some things. They're not very useful things. They're not like, oh man, got to get a Lord Relictor, or sorry, a Lord Veritant. But it's enough that if you have 20 points, he sees play. And that's enough to get a C.
Yeah. I mean, Lord keyword not having it on the Knight Relictor felt really... I've only played it once in a tournament. And it just does feel bad. Like, when you're not at 18 inches for both, it's not just, to chant, right? It's not just translocation. It's Celestial Blades, too. So there's that. I think
Holy Commands,
Thundershock as well. Yeah, Thundershock. Oh, gosh. Yeah. 18 inches matters a lot.
It matters, yeah. So sometimes you have 20 points left over and you can upgrade a hero that way. And that's okay. That's not a terrible thing. Drakesworn Templar. So, I like the Drakesworn Templar. You guys don't seem to like it as much as I like it. I will absolutely agree with every single point you guys are about to make. It has a 4+ save. It has poor melee damage. All of these things are true. However, it's a cheap Star Drake, and the Star Drake has so much good stuff on its War Scroll. It has a +1 cast for you, a -1 cast for your opponent. Cavernous Jaws instantly killing stuff like Pink Horrors or Unit Champions, even sometimes smaller heroes. And that's before you roll any attacks. So if you kill the Unit Champion, it can't issue commands on itself. Like it's extra security against things like Fire Slayers, where you can just roar them, and if a roar fails, you can try to just eat the Carl in the unit, and then they can't issue commands on themselves. It's really, really useful. The fact that he's 100 points cheaper, and 100 points is the exact right amount to make the choice between a Lord Celestant on Star Drake or a Drakesworn be a Lord Celestant or a Drakesworn and a Battle Mage. And that Battle Mage can give you, Wild Form or Mystic Shield or -1 hit from Faw's Protection, and that's a more interesting choice, especially if you start considering the Drakesworn Templar as a support piece for bringing Master of the Celestial Menagerie command trait to give himself -1 to wound and, let's say, Karazai -1 to wound. And then he can pick up the Light of the Young Stars mount trait to give an enemy -1 hit while you're also roaring it with that Karazai. So all of these things I think add up, and I think the Drakesworn Templar has some play. It does have a 4+ save, and it sucks. It sucks that it has a 4+ save, but maybe you can sort of get around it if you take like Quicksilver Draught and you can fight first with him, and you can eat a bunch of stuff before they attack you. There's possibilities here.
Yeah, I could see it. I do like that you brought up that 100 points is a Battle Mage, because the buff isn't just for Stormcast. It isn't Stormcast keyworded. It is just Wizard. So that Battle Mage will be on a +2 for Wild Form, for example. So that could be really nice.
Mm-hmm. How many armies do you think would pay 400 points for a Star Drake in their army? For Stormcast, it's a different consideration, right? Like Celestin Prime is not good in our army, but he's good in other armies. But how about a +1 -1 cast or a big monster body?
like straight out. Playing Soulblight Gravelords, and the monsters that they have access to, sort of this point value, it's a no-brainer. But in Stormcast, don't talk to me until he's 375. 400's still too much.
It does
Should
feel
be
like
350. Just 400. Just I feel like 18.
Yeah, I mean that's what I want, Murgok, but I didn't want to be greedy. Like 350.
Yeah, it's like 4-up saves are just like in this meta not good. Like if you want to see how bad 4-up saves are, go drag the whatever the name is that named Iron Jaws Warcrusher. That's been there like for 2 years now, and nobody plays him. And they even dropped his points 40 or 50 points, and still nobody's gonna play him. Just 4-up saves for something that big doesn't work unless they come with wards or something like what Marathi has, or some form of huge magical protection that they can give themselves.
Yeah, I mean
that's the problem. Like you're gonna spend points and abilities trying to make him tankier so he doesn't immediately die.
Yep.
And he's not and his synergy isn't good enough to justify 400 for a 4-up save. I think like maybe 350 I'd take him maybe.
Well, my argument isn't making him more durable. It's that you're making Karazai more durable for the most efficient way possible.
Mm-hmm.
Karazai is an interesting hammer piece this season, because if people are playing really large units, 30 blade guys, 15 Hearthguard, things like that, Karazai being a super durable, hero monster that can roar and finest hour, heroic leadership through shooting and mortal wounds from spells, get a 5-up ward from Gardas, get -1 to hit with Foz Protection, -1 to wound with Menagerie, -1 to hit with Light of the Young Stars. Like, I think there's play there. I think Karazai can actually see competitive play, and I think it relies on the Drakesworn Templar. I think the Lord Celestin and Star Drake's too expensive.
I don't know, but sure.
It's rough.
Yeah.
Either way.
We'll see. I'll be playtesting it, and we'll see. Could be wrong. He could still be D, and that's okay. I'll take the L on that one if that's the case. What about the Lord Celestin on Star Drake, though? Would you guys play a Lord Celestin this season? 500 points?
Nope.
No. It's just eating too much of the budget. And more than ever on the increase on points for some of our key things that we're going to need this season, we're just getting chipped down, and it feels like, new books are coming out, and we're like, hey man, we used to be that good.
Yeah. To be fair, the Star Drake was never that good. It's never been what people.
The Star Drake was B tier before. Just saying,
it was.
It was B tier, 100%. But it's just we're getting hit and hit. So it's.
Yeah, I feel like they keep hitting us with points increases. Like, people are going to talk about how much they decreased, but the thing is, like, we're a 50% army right now, win rate wise, right? So you can't nerf what works and then also like buff things that weren't working previously, because we only might have gained 20 to 30 points in most of our lists, but we're very elite, so that matters a lot to us. Gaining 40 points in our list matters way more to us than it does to like Beasts of Chaos or something.
I have a theory that this new Matt Rose guy, who's doing a great job from what I can tell, but I think they're experimenting with our points to see just how much point changes will affect internal balance versus external balance, and just using it as like a data sample. They're trying to gather data, they're trying to figure out how to make this stuff work. They haven't really done this kind of analysis before, at least not publicly. So it could be the case that they're just experimenting with things, and they're not that concerned if our win rate drops from 50 to 45.
Yeah, honestly, like, I agree with their like hammer changes, like all our hammer units that whatever took points hikes, whatever, that's fine. I think where the points need to go down is definitely our heroes. Most of our heroes just do like one thing, and I don't think they're worth their cost for that.
What they should do with an army like this is balance the hammers against each other from an internal perspective and an external perspective, and then everything else should be pointed relative to that, right? Well, like our support heroes, our screens, our chaff, everything everything should just be relative to that for an external purpose.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the issue that we're seeing is that they're like, okay, what are people taking the time? Lord Relictors, Fulminators, and it's because those things were the best things in our book. But making the stuff that doesn't function cheaper doesn't make them get included in a list from a competitive standpoint.
Yeah, it's like if you nerf Nurgle flies enough, sure, Nurgle players will stop using them, but that's just going to make Nurgle terrible because all they have is the flies. Like, it's probably
and it's a bad experience for your consumer base, right? Yeah. Like, it's a bad thing. I honestly think that the reason they haven't touched Stormdrake Guard is because they've been nerfed so many times that we freaking riot if they nerf them again.
What would we do? Stop buying models? I don't think so.
I mean, there's only so much we can do.
So the way I see it is, like, I think they should have maybe waited on the increases. Like, I think they just like went ham on a lot of our heroes and like units like Aetherwings. I think the correct course would have been to then, like, just with everything else, just drop them -5s wherever they could, and like. It's an interesting meta. Well, Fulminators didn't have to go up 10. Like, nobody was out there with 60% win rates using Fulminators. Right. But what if you drop Evocators on Drac Alliance to do 30 as well? Then that creates an interesting meta now. Like, what do you use?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is our hammers should be the balancing point for this army. Because that's how Stormcast will win. It's not through our heroes, it's not through our screens, it's through trading hammers efficiently and leveraging board position and score properly.
Yeah, it's like, but Lord Relictor feels pretty terrible for 150. Like, I mean, if we didn't have Arcane Tome, that would feel awful. Like, for spending 150 just for that. Yep. Like, there's 120-point priests in this game now, so it's like, ugh.
There's 100-point wizards that have +1 to cast that we use in a lot of lists.
Yeah, it's just, ugh.
The things that they value, and I'm sure they have like some spreadsheet that, input all stats, and then it spits out a point value. It's like, oh, an extra 2 wounds over another hero, that's 10 points. But these things ultimately don't matter to what the unit's trying to do, right? It's like you're being given. I'm going to use a terrible example. It's like you have World of Warcraft vanilla, and you have all these terrible talents everywhere, and people pick the best ones. And then instead of like changing the other talents to be useful and good, you're like, no. We're not just going to make Lacerate good. We're going to nerf all of marksmanship instead. You know what I mean? It's like, let's take down the stuff that is working to improve diversity, but we're just ignoring the fact that the reason it's working is because everything else sucks.
Yeah.
Anywho, Estrella Soulbright. She's unique, which none of these characters can be champions, even if they have the wound requirement. Because they are unique, they cannot be champions. So just not going to mention that for the rest of this review. She has an interesting place right now because Sacrosanct units are actually worth using, right? That's always what we said with her, is that we just don't know what Sacrosanct units they're going to be. Sequitors could be playable. You get a squad of 10 or 15, and then you can slap her on that to give them a +1 save. Only if you're playing Hammers of Sigmar, mind you, which means you can't play with Gardas and you can't use the Hallowed Knights to fight on death, which is really unfortunate. That +1 save does stack with Warding Lantern, so you could create some kind of like 10 Evocator block with a Lord Castellan, Estrella, and now they're effectively a 2+ save in combat. That's pretty neat. But given the fact that she's not a champion, it's hard to find slots for her, and that she's only Hammers of Sigmar, and the units you kind of want to be buffing anyway aren't used best in Hammers of Sigmar, is kind of a bummer. I can't really see a list using her yet. The fact that she's a wizard is a bonus on top of that, frankly. Like, I don't even care that she's a +0 wizard. Like, she's basically a Lord Castellan for Sacrosanct on a mount. That's how we play her. The fact that she's a wizard is a bonus. So I'm not seeing a place for her quite yet. How about you guys?
Yeah.
I sort of see it. Like, if you kind of want to like save stacks some evocators around, like Dracoline evocators, maybe with like a Mystic Shield and her runner alongside them. It's not the worst thing in the world, but probably not what we're going to be doing.
Hate that it reinforces the only in combat thing, which is something of a issue for Sequitors in that they can only get defensive in combat. I wish that it was all the time.
Yeah, it was just like just like a command phase. Sorry, hero phase applied buff. Maybe that would have been better.
Yeah.
Frankly,
give it to them all the time.
I'm not convinced that she would be playable if she wasn't locked to Hammers of Sigmar. I still don't think she'd be good enough.
No, probably
it's a Sacrosanct buff. I could see it maybe like Hallowed Knights, Astral Templars. Yeah, if you could take Sequitors and Astral Templars with Estrella Soulbright, I'd like that.
Yeah, or Hallowed Knights, the fight on death.
It's more usable, and that's a start. Aventus Firestrike. Again, not a champion. It's relevant because he's 270 points of not champion, which is 2 other slots that could be champions. He does have 2 spellcasts, which is like having 2 support heroes in our army, but he doesn't learn any more spells, so he's casting Mystic Shield and whatever spell you learn, which is fine. Honestly, in our army, that's fine because we want Mystic Shield and whatever spell we learn. We want 2 or 3 spells per list, so that's not bad. The problem is a unit like this, you want flexibility. You pay this many points for a support thing, and it's not flexible. That sucks. If he could learn every spell in the book, that would be great. That would be a really, really, really good niche for him as a cheap like toolbox. Whatever you need, pull it out at the time you need it. He still has all the same problems of a regular Toralon being low damage. He does have flying and roar, which is good, but unlike a Toralon, he can't take mount traits, he can't take enhancements, and he's more expensive. So yeah, he's going down to D tier. We can't find a use for him. Just use a regular Toralon instead, even in the list that you would use Aventus in.
Yep.
Stormfire's Cursebreakers. I've held out for a long time that they are better than they appear. Having a Knight Incantor and 2 Evocators previously, for less than the price of a Knight Incantor and 2 Evocators, now is this pretty much the same cost as a Knight Incantor and 2 Evocators. They are not champions because they're not unique. They do have a Dispel Scroll, but it's like, just use the Knight Incantor at this point. You need that champion keyword for battle tactics. The Knight Incantor is going to go further than this. 2 Evocators are also not terribly useful because you have to put them into a battalion, which is going to make it harder to do a battle regiment, for example. They are a cheap infantry unit, so you could stick them in that if you wanted to. They are locked to Hammers of Sigmar, which is unfortunate, so they can't get a ward from Gardas or anything. Just I don't know. Feels too expensive.
Yeah.
Like maybe 170. I'd play this, like paying 50 points over a regular Knight Incantor to get a tiny little, disposable hammer unit.
Like bodyguard.
Yeah.
Celestin Prime. He's not a champion. He's still not good enough for Stormcast armies, I don't think. He's like super situational. It's like you have to have a very particular purpose for him. Usually that's going to be dropping the meter every turn in a Comet Fall type list where you're just trying to do as many mortal wounds in an area as you can. The guaranteed 12-inch charge from reserve with 15 damage or so on turn 2, that's always a threat. And I just don't think it's ever worth 330 points for us. That's always the struggle with this unit, is that if that's all he does, like we can just scions other things into play. We have better strategies. We have better units that we can employ. He's never going to be unplayably bad in this army because that guaranteed 12-inch charge is really good. It's just never good enough, unfortunately.
Now at +5 points just to kick us while we're down. I mean, obviously it's a nerf for ally Celestin Prime, but
And that's what I said. That's what it is. He's being more used as an ally. So it's like everyone who's taking him as an ally suddenly has a 5-point increase now. Congrats.
it's almost like he should have some kind of bonus for being in a Stormcast army, or have Galmaraz do something.
Well, talk about it till the cows come home. But yeah, like he needs to have something on his Warscroll that says if he's part of Stormcast Allegiance, he gets this. Otherwise, he doesn't.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Agreed.
Galmaraz needs to be better than rock taped onto stick. It's just what it is.
A ghost stick, yeah.
Or
guys.
random ghost guy.
I'm telling you, I've said it before, I'll say it again. GW, if you're watching this, whoever wrote the Slaves book, write the next Stormcast book.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Gardas Steel Soul. He's really good. A 20-point nerf is not enough to hold this guy back. I think he might actually be a little bit worse because, like, the more you build lists, the more you think, okay, I need a lot more damage. I need damage, and I still need a certain amount of champions in my list for battle tactics and just general support stuff, because those multiple hammer units you want to run, they need specific support. They want Lord Castellans to survive, they want Knight Cantors to stop spells and buff them, and they want a Lord Relictor to translocate them around. And Gardas is like, he's like a third or fourth thing, but he also defines other lists entirely, right? Like he's so good and versatile, probably to the detriment of this army, to be honest, at this point. That 5-up ward is everything I think is balanced around having a 5-up ward in this book. I think we're at that point, right? Like you can't make anything like. You can't make anything stronger because hey, it has a 5-up ward, right?
I think he really comes into his own, obviously, with dragons. I'm usually using him there, and it's actually ironically everything you said is correct, right? We usually want like Relictors, Castellans, Knight Incantors, but you don't really need that with dragons, right? Dragons ignore spells, dragons have speed, all that stuff. So I think that's why he works best in that list. But it does suck that it feels like everything else is getting taxed because he can make other things just so good. And so it's always like, what can I give up to run Gardas? What can I give up to, I need to have something that makes things battle line. And the only thing we can really do is dragons that are efficient, right? We can't make anything else battle line that's relevant.
Not in his list.
It kind of sucks.
Yeah. If Gardas was 300 points and everything else in our book took like a 10-15% cut, I think we'd be looking a lot better.
Oh, dude, I'd be totally okay with that. I'd take that trade-off. That's fine.
I would still play Gardas sometimes too.
And I would still play Gardas, yeah. Oh man,
but he's so expensive, and the rest of our book is so expensive. I don't know.
I hate that they hit him with a +20 when they brought him down exactly a year ago. When they brought him down 10, and now we're up 20. They should have just done 10 back up, because literally when that came out, I remember you guys
10,
were like,
10 would have been fine.
Why did they do this?
Yeah.
I don't like. I think it's just like they nerfed him because the Stormdrake Guard lists, unfortunately.
Yeah, that 10 points is exactly enough to take things out.
It's the Stormdrake, like they're paying for the sins of Stormdrake Guard, and they realize they can't nerf Stormdrake Guard even more.
Yep, I'm starting to have a love-hate relationship with Gardas. He's so good that I hate it. It's
honestly, like, it's like if they nerfed him, they'd have to give us something else back. Like,
They wouldn't.
I almost want to say, like, with how good shooting's gotten in the game, like, we could get old Thunderbolt Volley back and still be fine.
Agreed.
Yeah. So, Gardas, S tier, for better or for worse. Gabriel, still F. A free rerollable charge isn't worth it, and you have to play Hammers of Sigmar. Nope. Make it a +1 charge aura, and we're in business. That's all you need to do to this guy. Get rid of the free command, make it a +1 to charge aura, and he will see play.
I really wish that these free commands allowed you to issue the same command twice.
They really overvalued the free command thing when they were designing 3rd edition. Because that's kind of our thing. We have it throughout the book a lot. It's not as good as anyone thinks.
No.
Commands on their own, like you need one in shooting and you need one in defense, and then you need one, maybe 2 in your opponent's turn to do the same. After that, it's pretty marginal, right? Like the +1 hit, +1 save is really, really good. After that, it falls off. Being able to, use a Lord Imperator to rally a unit, it's like, okay, that's cool. For Stormcast, it's not. Sometimes you rally back Drakes and it wins in the game, but like the free command is not very good.
Using our Stormkeep dice, by the way, huh?
For that same reason, Lord Bastion Carthalis, I was saying last season he was kind of circling the drain on B and probably mid-C. This season, 300 points is a huge amount of points to ask for this guy. 220 maybe. That's, I think, the highest I'd go for him.
Yeah.
The fact that he can't redeploy units in and out of Scions, which would be really cool. His damage is not very good. Anything that he would actually be able to kill and heal off of will just kill him, right? Like, infantry is going to murder this guy because they just roll so many more dice than he can handle. He's not that durable. And then if he gets, like, stuck fighting a monster, he just dies. Like, he just can't tank monsters properly.
Yeah, he needed to come down with Andrasta. 300 is not right taken. Not when Andrasta is 280. If he was like 260, like we discussed, yeah. Now that Andrasta's come down, he can come down to like 260 and be fine.
If you want a beat stick unit like you think Bastion's going to be, just ally in a Light of Eltharion. Same thing.
Yep.
He won't be GC just like Bastion, but he'll at least be a beat stick instead of this weird amalgamation of things. Just like Andrastra. Unique, don't have an identity. Gosh.
And with Light of Eltharion, it's like he's always hitting on 2s. He's a proper duelist, so he can actually like dish out some damage to like more elite units. It's perfect. He has a higher damage ceiling because he has exploding hits. I think Immortal Wounds in addition.
Rend 3 even? He has better Rend?
Better Rend can't be modified. Better movement. I think he has a Dragon Breath shooting attack, like straight up like Stormblade Guard Breath.
Yep.
Yeah.
I found this out the other day. He doesn't miss on 2s like dragons do.
Yeah. He has a better Stormblade Guard Breath. It's the same range too. It's literally like I think the same range.
Guys, he has.
No, I think it's 18 actually. It's 18.
No, but effective because what I'm doing is adding his movement to his shooting.
Oh, fair.
Stormblade Guard shooting. Yeah. So effective. They're both 24 inches.
Yeah. You're right.
Yeah, Bastion, I'm sorry, just you're too expensive, and frankly, 220 is where I would put it, but probably not. Probably even cheaper. He's not that good. Neve Blacktalon. She's a Zephyros, but costs 10 points more. Has to be Hammers of Sigmar. Is not a champion. Can't take enhancements. Yeah, just use a Knight Zephyros.
Yep.
What does she get?
So I'll make a case for her. She might be D slightly because she has more attacks than a Knight Zephyros. I think she comes with 8 over 5, and she gets D3 additional attacks when she charges.
6.
Sure, 8 over 6, and then she gets D3 additional when she charges. You could battle mage her, and like if your opponent leaves like a small amount of space out, you can snipe out like a weak GC with her.
Are you sure she gets D3? That sounds like a 2nd edition rule.
No, I'm pretty sure.
All right, I'm gonna double check this real quick.
Yeah,
let me put it up.
Book handy. Doesn't really matter.
Yep. 8 attacks, add D3 to the attack's characteristic if it made a charge move.
So best case scenario, she's doing the damage of an Azeros.
Yes. Plus she has some shooting, some light shooting. So she could take out a GC, potentially. Like a weak GC. Like if it's a 5-up save GC, she could take it out.
You just have to find a space for her to land, make a 9-inch charge, shoot stuff through Lookout Sir, I guess. And she's not a sharpshooter, so she better not be standing near a battle line unit. And then make all your attacks on 2s and 3s while using a command point to do that, and hope they don't make any saves because she's only rent 1.
I mean,
she's F, man. I think she's F. I don't think there's a niche case for her.
Yeah, if her rend or damage went up when she attacked a hero, like a proper assassin unit, yeah. maybe.
Yeah.
Well, and that's her lore, right? Like, isn't she supposed to be Sigmar's like wetworks girl?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
It's-
give her something when she fights a hero or monster.
Yeah, it's so sad. Even even Skaven have an assassin named hero who can teleport outside of 6 inches. Like, why
Yep.
didn't she do that? Like that, even just that would make her
Yeah.
more interesting because she's a package, right? She's her own little package, so you don't have to worry about it. It just doesn't make sense.
They
she
didn't
doesn't
give
off
it
the
much
vibe.
thought. They were just like, we're coming out
No.
with a Thunderstrike Neve soon. Forget about
But
it.
yeah, they
How
made
long
an
have
a Zephyros profile.
We've been predicting that for how long now? It still hasn't happened.
I thought it happened
Look.
with the animated thing came out, but that's taking like an age on its own. So no, who
And I
knows?
think she's Thunderstrike in the Magic card, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean,
Interesting.
I think it's coming for sure.
We'll see. 3.5. 3.5. 3.5.
Yeah, 3.5.
Okay, Vandus. He's a little bit better because Redeemers are actually looking playable. Big squad of Vindictors. You could say just bring more Vindictors, but if you're trying to max out the attacks from a single squad of Vindictors while you're trying to pin your opponent, then dropping a Vandus in next to them actually ends up adding 15 attacks to that. So that's a combo. I don't know how good that combo is, but it is a combo. And then maybe just dropping Gardas might be better to give him a 5-up ward and a fight on death because you're playing Hallowed Knights instead of Hammers of Sigmar. So, yeah, Vandus, I don't know. Why is it only one unit? Why isn't it every unit in range?
Makes absolutely no sense.
Especially if it's restricted to Redeemers, because Redeemers aren't all that great.
Especially if it's restricted to Hammers of Sigmar Redeemers.
Sigmar Redeemers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Come on, guys.
Yeah, they're not even the Redeemer subfaction. Yeah, it's weird.
It's like points won't even fix this, right? It's just an issue of rules, I think.
Also, I don't know why they didn't upgrade his rend.
He's rend 1. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, it's weird. But honestly, he should be probably lower than the Arcanum on Dracoline even. Like maybe like Astrea points, like 170. 170,
Yeah, he's the
160.
same price as the regular Lord Celestin on Dracoth, and that's not correct.
Yeah, no. He should be like 160, 170. Maybe then I could see a Redeemer list with him because he's cheap enough to where he's like, if I'm building a Redeemer list and I consider Gardas or Vandus and I see Gardas at 170, I'm taking Gardas. I'm not taking Vandus. Vandus would have to be 10 points lower than Gardas for me to even consider him.
Yeah, because it's swapping over the whole subfaction. Losing Fight on Death in a Redeemer list is pretty big.
Yeah.
Not that Redeemer lists are very good or anything, but it is a big part of that list. Andrasta still can't issue holy commands. Her revivability is better in an infantry meta, right? Especially if we start playing 5-man squads of Retributors more because we're trying to combo them with the Knight Azuros and Quicksilver Draught, or any champion in Quicksilver Draught. But she's looking better. 280 is still out of reach, right? Like that's 2 support heroes worth. And for battle tactics reasons, I don't think she's going to be tearing up tables or anything. If you could fit Andrasta and Gardas in the same list, that looks even better because they're both like doubling down on their durability, the 50% more effective wounds than you revive one every turn. There's like a critical number of defense you have to reach in order for it to be effective. If you still just die, then it's not useful. But her damage is not great. She can't heroic leadership in combat. Adding 10 wounds to the brackets of a Gargant really makes no difference almost. So there's just a lot of problems with Andrasta. She's very obviously designed for the starter box and not for the game itself.
Yeah. It's just... Oh, gosh. Who like designs these and goes like, hey, let's split and do literally opposite. Like, she wants to go forward, but she wants to stay back. That's
what I'm saying.
It's honestly a shame.
It's
a
a
shame.
mess of things. Need defined roles and then make them good at the role and then tweak the points after that. You know what I mean? Don't give like Jack of all trades units almost never work. Tempestors, I think, are the only one.
Yeah.
It also feels like she has abilities where it's like they wrote something, they were like, no, that's too much fun. Dial it back. Like I feel like Prime Huntress, it's useless, completely useless. I don't know where it matters that a giant or whatever, a monster is like 10 wounds less, counts as 10 wounds less, because brackets in 3rd edition don't matter. Really don't matter.
It mattered at the beginning of 3rd edition when all of the other monsters in the game, with the exception of the Maw Crusher, had 2nd edition damage tables, and 10 wounds would basically put almost anything on its bottom bracket. Like that was.
And now it's like second bracket.
Yeah, right. Make second bracket, and
but only
most
in
of
combat.
the brackets only in combat.
Yeah.
Most of the brackets aren't that punishing anymore.
No.
It's not great.
Should have just been hitting on twos and cannot take monstrous rampages at all. That's it.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the big dragons. Karazai, we gave him a B tier last season because we thought there would be an infantry meta. Now we are pretty sure there's going to be an infantry meta, and gosh, I hope we are right. Because I'm going to keep Karazai at B because I think he's a solid hammer unit. His damage against non-infantry is also really good, which I think is the distinction between him and Krondus. Krondus has good spells, so he's basically like a support package wrapped up with a good hammer, while Karazai is all hammer. He is just all gas, no brakes. You bring support heroes to support Karazai, while Krondus is there supporting other units, right? Totally different concepts in heroes. And I think Karazai actually does a lot of damage. The fact that he's -1 attack makes him super tanky in a way that nothing else in our, like, enemy units are -1 attack against him. Makes him tanky in a way that nothing else in our army can be tanky. We are looking at, 2 or 3 attack infantry units. We're looking at like anything with slaves getting +1 attack from Khorne. Well, that's just negated, right? So they're back to like 2 attacks apiece per model, which is really not that scary in comparison. If you can give him a 5-up board with Gardas, you can give him Foss Protection with a Battle Mage for -1 hit, give him Celestial Menagerie for -1 to wound, he can roar things to deny another -1 hit, you Castellan to Mystic Shield, you just stack every freaking number buff you can find on this guy, and then let him just rip and tear. I think that's a viable list. If not viable, at least it's fun.
Yeah. Even this season, the way the battle plans is a lot more conducive towards the skirmishy thing.
Yes.
Like the mid board. I think it's still been that way if you've been playing Comp Sigmar, but even now in general, even if you're not playing competitive, more than now it's gonna, or more than before, it was gonna be more skirmishy, more mid board focused. And Karazai lives there. That's where he wants to be. If shooting gets a little bit of a defocus, I don't think it really will. It's gonna help a lot. He does hate seeing Iron Blasters across the table, but he can find a tower.
I don't think so.
He can get all those stacks.
He's going to be -1 hit if you have Foss Protection, and he can be a 0+
I
save,
think Foss Protection. Yeah, 100%. You have to take Foss Protection with him. Like Foss Protection Castellan package is fine. I think in his list you don't even take a Relictor. You might if you're using Praetors, but I think you like take Gardas and you use like Foss Protect or Battle Mage Castellan package. I think that's the play with him, and I just go for the mid board. Maybe even support him with like some Drakes, even if you make him general or something. That could be interesting, right? Like Gardas.
You know what
Drake's
makes Stormdrake's battle line? A Drake's-born Templar.
That's what I'm saying. Okay, well, all right, yeah, okay. I see what you did there. I see what you did there.
Karazai makes in battle line. So the issue I see with that concept is if you take the Drake's-born Templar or the Knight Draconis, who's 300 points,
but he's not a cheaper way, so he can't take it.
Oh, that's right. Shit. Okay.
Yeah, that's the issue. That's oh my gosh, so it makes no sense.
If you take the Drake's-born Templar, you are looking at a 2-drop list, and you want to go first.
It'll be more than 2.
Yeah, I think
you could fit him into it. You could do a battle regiment with.
Well, you need support heroes. Yeah.
Yeah, but so you could get 2 support heroes. So we get the Gardas or Castellan.
I get your point. Yeah, at least 2.
We're on some big copium. Yeah.
But that's fine. In this season, that's fine because I think a lot of people are going to be taking veterans. A lot of people are going to be taking the Galatian Command for the anti-pin mechanic, and some lists are definitely going to be taking sharpshooters. Right?
Well,
2 drops is not bad.
Yeah. No, it's not. It's absolutely not. It's good. You guys mentioned the Iron Blaster list, right? Well, the Iron Blaster list at minimum is a 3-drop list.
Yep,
that's true.
So if you're a 2-drop, you have the ability to go first.
So let's look at Karazai compared to our other, because we're talking reinforced hammers here. We're talking 4 Fulminators, 4 Storm Drakes, 10 Protectors, things like that, 10 Evocators. He's a little bit more expensive than most of our hammers at that point level, but he's also cheaper than Storm Drakes, right? Unlike all of those units, he can find a Stour once per game. He can heroic leadership every turn. He has ridiculously higher defense, not wounds, but defense. The -1 attack thing is huge. It's really, really big. It shouldn't be understated. He also has 2 Galmaraz equipped at the start of the battle. If he kills anything, they're going to scale up in damage. And then he has his tail attack, which just obliterates infantry.
Yeah.
His damage is good. His defenses are built in are good and can be stacked to be like the best defenses possible. Like you can't get more defensive than this. The only thing that would kill him is like high amounts of mortal wounds, so you just drop a Gardas next to him to help. So like, not the most competitive list, but it's going to be okay.
All right, I'm not saying that 3 Stormdrake Guard, Gardas, Battle Mage, Castellan, and Karazai fit at 2,000 points exactly, but I may be taking this to a club night.
3 Stormdrake Guard? How are you getting the third one?
3 Stormdrake Guard.
3 units, okay.
Yeah, 3 Stormdrake Guard units. Oh, yeah, no. Karazai as the general, just to make that work. Castellan, Battle Mage, Gardas.
I think you want to run Drakesworn for the -1 to wound. It's pretty fun.
Maybe,
You're just -1 all the time. Stuff is wounding you on 4s and 5s now. You're having a great time. So that's my argument to Karazai.
Yeah.
I hope you guys try him out because he looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Krondus, on the other hand, has a much better support package, right? But unlike Karazai, if Krondus gets stuck fighting anything that's not infantry, he just like Magikarps. Like he just flaps around and does really nothing, and then usually just dies to higher end attacks. Because when you bring Krondus, you don't bring the huge support package that you bring for Karazai. You bring other units to combo off Krondus' abilities. You bring stuff like Crossbow Adjudicators, Tempesters, even Dracolines I think would be pretty decent with that. And that's what Krondus does. So he's a support hero that's not a champion, but he is Draconith, which can score a couple of those tactics that we talked about. He's a really interesting kind of support hero because he's a damaging support hero that also is a +3 cast Mystic Shield and that Atavic Tempest spell, which is insanely good. So I'm definitely going to be experimenting with Krondus lists, if nothing else. I don't know if he's going to be as good as Karazai would be, though. Here's our full Stormcast tier list summary. We will have a video breaking just this slide down. If you want like a 20-minute summary, you'll get it. Everything we just talked about is summarized on these slides here. Moving on, our endless spells, which we are no longer including in the tier list summary, you'll notice. Because I feel like it's kind of weird to rate endless spells as if they were a unit. I know they do compete with units because they cost points, but it's kind of like a different thing entirely. It's kind of hard to compare an Everblaze Comet to Castigators, for example. There's just too much going on. But let's go through them, because they have received some point changes, and it's worth talking about. Celestian Vortex is now only 40 points instead of 20, and it still has all the same problems on its Warscroll it had before, where the damage is unreliable. You're rolling 12 dice and you're fishing for 6s to deal a mortal wound. The range on the spell is too low to reliably stay near shooting units that it would possibly affect, because the units can just move away before shooting. You don't even have to dispel this thing. It's not a big enough threat that your opponent will even want to dispel it and waste a cast on it, unless it's like a free dispel from a unit like Dracolines or something. And yeah, 40 points, that goes a long way in a Stormcast list. So I don't see the Vortex seeing play this season. Deus Arcanum, kind of the same problem, right? Is like, which hero really wants to cast it? You have to give up a spell cast in order to use it, and then the 30 points you spend on it can really go a long way. That's the difference between a Knight Relictor and a Lord Relictor. So would you rather have a Knight Relictor and a Deus Arcanum, or would you rather have a Lord Relictor? The answer is always you'd rather have a Lord Relictor. The Everblaze Comet is the most expensive spell in the game, tied with Purple Sun, and I don't know why. It's just a D3 Mortal Wound Blast. We can bring a Knight Vexillor to do that once per game, and then we don't even have to dispel it and then recast it. There's no dice rolls involved. So, like, what would you guys put the Everblaze Comet at, like, its true value? Because obviously 90 points isn't it.
Probably 60 or 70.
Yeah, I think 50 or below is probably too cheap. So I think 60, 65, something like that.
Yeah. And at that point, it would be an easy C tier just because it goes into Comet Fall.
Yeah.
I think I'd play it at 50. I don't think I'd do 60 though.
Yeah, I want to say 50.
I could see play at 60. Like, I think of it as like over 50. I see as like an active inclusion. Like, if Horrorghast is going to be 70 and it's such a good spell for us, at 60, I think Comet could be a spell because we can really use it to put pressure on some support heroes early on.
Yeah. Paul, I'm right there with you. I want to say 50. I'm just afraid that 50 might be too good.
There's always the reliability problems with it as well, right? Like you wouldn't just put this in like a random Stormdrake list, you know, because you want that Mystic Shield instead, or even an Azurite Halo now kind of looks tempting just for doing damage. Yeah, we'll see, but it's not there yet. I'm not sold on the Everblaze comment. And let's look at the other endless spells. We don't have to spend too much time on these. Pendulum is looking a little more easy to slot into the list at 30 points. 30 points is that range in your list when you might be able to slot in a spell. And this one doing D3 mortal wounds on a 2+ to everything in a line is kind of interesting. If I had to guess, probably like a C tier this season. Like, it's not objectively bad, and it's pointed right. 30 points is where I put something like that. I just don't see myself using it that often. Maybe like translocate a Zephyros with an Arcane Tome. She casts the Pendulum, cuts through the enemy army, and then she teleports onto an objective. That's about the best case I can think of.
Yeah,
it's just situational damage.
Yeah.
Burning Head is basically the Pendulum, but you have to cast it every turn. So your opponent doesn't even have a chance to waste the spells on it, which is actually nice. Being able to force your opponent to waste cast is like unbinding a spell, right? The Burning Head used to be pretty decent at 20 points because it's like, yeah, I got 20 points. Why not? Take a Burning Head. It's like a hand grenade I can throw once in a while, right? But at 30, now it's competing with like other spells. And before it wasn't competing with anything. So yeah, I think it gets knocked down a tier. We're not going to use it as much. And we weren't using it much to begin with. Maybe like a Lord Arcanum was casting it into stuff, but now it's harder to do that. Cogs were decent for our army. At 40 points, being able to re-roll 3 or 4 spells with the Stormcast army, that was about right for a 40 point. The nerf to 70 points in the previous battle scroll has I think it's killed it in our list. I don't think it's going to see much play. There's still like Dracolines, Evocators, Krondys, Star Drakes. There's still casting stuff going on in our army, so I can't give it a D tier. But yeah, it's pretty much competitively not going to be seeing much play.
Yeah, Tzeentch and Lumineth Ruin are fun.
Yeah. Emerald Life Swarm. If it wasn't D3, if it was guaranteed, 2 to 3, it would be decent. But the fact that it can fail on our 2 wound and 3 wound models is just awful. It feels so bad. And using it to heal something like a Chariot or a Star Drake, it's like, yeah, maybe. That's why it's a D. Otherwise, it's not playable. Geminids, still really good. 50 points is harder to find in lists, especially because there's a lot of stuff that you want to shoot that can just ignore the mortal wound from it and disable the effect entirely. Like if you play against a Slaves of Darkness army and you're trying to disable all out defense on a unit of Knights or Chosen or some other thing that has a 5+ ward against mortals, or Night Haunt, for example, they can just ignore it randomly on a 6, then it just doesn't do anything. So because there's more stuff like that in the game than there was before, and it's more points, it has all the same problems and benefits it had before, but now it's just harder to use, and it's less useful in more matchups. So taking it down a tier from A to B. Horrorghast, same kind of problem. Looking back at it, I think it probably should be an A still. Like, it feels like the best endless spell to cast because the thing it does, nothing else does, which is like obliterate hordes because they can't use Inspiring Presence. So we put like a bunch of long strike shots into it, or Grand Hammers or Fulminators, and then the Horrorghast kind of floats over and makes everything else run away. Like, it's that last piece of damage that you need. But man, 70 points is rough. It is hard to find 70 points and a spell to cast in our lists.
Yeah, it would have to be like we said, it's like they basically made it so it has to be an active choice to take this spell.
Mm-hmm. And that's not a good place to be. I liked it more when it was passive. You could just take it and you have it as an option.
Battle Mage, S tier. It's probably one of the best wizards we have, and especially because Wildworm combos extremely well with Translocate and Steadfast March. It's essentially adding mobility to an army that is otherwise slow, and we want our hammer units to get where they want to go, and Battle Mage helps you get them where they want to go, which is really, really good. As a secondary consideration, Foss Protection is also extremely good. As we discussed before, one of our main hammer units can be Karazai or Stormbreak Guard. Unfortunately, Ogre Mod Tribes arrived with a +1 to hit on some -3 Ren D3 +3 damage weapons. And being able to turn that back to a 4 to hit is extremely, extremely good. And in general, just being in combat with a -1 to hit, forcing people to use a command point just so they can hit you normally on their normal Warscroll stats is also just like a good thing to have. The +1 to cast actually does matter because A lot of their it means like a lot of their spells on their war scroll will go off on 4s and 5s, and they are always most often they're not wholly within, they're within, so you can backline them out of range and still cast your spells. They're also really good for casting your endless spells because they'll get +1 to cast while we're in Gur, especially if you take the Wildform Mage. So there's that.
Yeah, Slan Starmaster was a good ally choice before the points nerf. But now that he's 290 points and it's been FAQ that he can't cast Stormcast endless spells, aka the Comet, he is way less useful for us. He still is a 3-cast wizard with +1 to cast, generates command points. He does what he says. He's just not as efficient and not as useful in Stormcast at this time.
All right, the Rune Lord currently is an interesting choice because he's got a +2 to unbind and dispel. That's always been a good unit for us. I do think that there's been a bit less of a need to have a consistent unbind like that. I think we've found that even with the Incanter, sometimes we might not even take the Incanter in some cases. And the Incanter, it's mostly that one pivotal spell in one turn that can really turn a game. And then from there, we can generally, sometimes you get good unbinds going off. Sure, it can help out that he's a priest, and that helps a bit. Curse can be pretty good for us, actually, in some cases. So that can be helpful.
He can't have
otherwise,
curse.
Oh, he can't? Oh, that's
If
right.
he's an ally, he can't.
Yeah, he's an ally. Sorry
If
about
you
that.
play
Stormkeep.
yeah.
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 Yep, got that noted down. If you're in Stormkeep, he can go ahead and do that, and he makes a really interesting choice in Stormkeep as well.
Yeah.
But I think the Rune Lord, he's usable. Like B tier is not bad at all. But I think he has a little less important. I mean, he's good because of he's a GC, so that's also something to take into consideration, and he's cheap.
Yeah,
do we still think that he's a B given the fact that they have FAQ'd it now where he doesn't get to get additional unbinds and apply his +2 to them?
I think it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, there's an interesting discussion there between him and the Knight Incantor, like you were touching on, Dan, where the Incantor stops one spell guaranteed, but this guy's going to probably stop more spells than that throughout the course of a game. When we were using this guy more, frankly, was before the FAQ, which clarified he couldn't get more unbind, so that was nice. But even a +2 to unbind is not as nice as guaranteed. But when spells were weaker, and at the start of the previous season, spells were generally weaker. We didn't have Lumineth, we didn't have Tzeentch with new battle tomes in the meta, and they weren't like wreaking havoc with their spells like they are now. Like a total eclipse going off and then not having a total eclipse happen completely changes the game. And you can get even just getting rid of that once per game is worth more than having a +2 to get rid of it all the time, because the guaranteed works against techless. Forcing him to use one spell is also really good. But the guarantee works against any amount of bonuses, any amount of rerolls, whereas this +2 can just become irrelevant. Against some armies, I'd rather have the +2. If you're playing against like Slaves to Darkness, they don't have a lot of casting bonuses. Like they've got that 3d6 cast, but they might just miscast and kill themselves. But some armies don't have really good casting bonuses. Like if you're playing against Stormcast, I'd rather have a Rune Lord who's going to try to get a +2 every single turn. Whereas if you're playing against Tzeentch or Seraphon or Lumineth, you want to cancel that spell. That exact spell, that's the one you want to cancel, and it's gone. And that reliability is a lot more useful. Skink Starseer still has a -1 save spell, which has an 18-inch range. It does have a 7-up cast, which is kind of rough. He doesn't have any bonuses to cast. You need to play Seraphon Allegiance to get that. He does also generate a command point every turn on 4+. If you bring Cogs, maybe this guy's a little more reliable. I think we've got enough -1 save spells between Krondys and Purple Sun that the Skink Starseer is kind of not making the cut, especially when we look at the next guy who was recently added to our ability to take him, because previously we did not have Lumineth as allies.
No, we did not. So the Venari Lore Seeker, this guy is a wizard, a Lumineth wizard, so he gets Deep Thinkers, giving him a once per game cast on a 9 automatically. But he's a deep striking Galatian champion that has a built-in Stubborn as a Rhinox. So he counts as 10 models on the objective he's standing on. And because we're running him as an ally, and we probably won't be running Blade Lords with him, he gets +1 to save. It's very good.
Yeah, so you can put him down after deployment. If he's on an objective, he counts as 10 models on that objective. So you can just steal objectives at the start of the game. automatically gaining control of that.
And do cunning maneuver.
And score cunning maneuver, yep. You can also automatically cast a purple sun while you're there, because you auto cast a spell at a 9. And even though your opponent can dispel that or can unbind it, I think that's still a reliable enough tactic to be worth 250 points you need for a Lore Seeker and a purple sun. I think that is a fantastic combo. So Venari Lore Seeker, worst case scenario, you don't do any of that. You just deploy him in your army, and once per battle, you auto cast like a Mystic Shield or something. Like after the purple sun's gone, that's all he's casting, right? And that's still good enough because Stormcast love Mystic Shield that much.
Yes, we do.
And then there's the fact that his damage is also somewhat decent, right?
It's not bad.
43 at 2s, 3s, rend 1. If you're doing hero face fighting, right? Like you can make him the Galatian champion in your bodyguard battalion. Deep strike in some protectors or retributors around him after you finish this purple sun mechanic. And when people come to fight you, well, you can't shoot him because he's got the key to victory ability. And then they have to get through the retributors, which will fight in the hero phase if they don't kill him. So there's play here. There's definitely a lot of play for this guy. Kronspine. Jack, I think you had the most experience with the Kronspine last season.
Kronspine has always been a very, very good unit since its introduction. It did take a pretty decent hit with its 80 points increase. It has struggled often to find a place in Stormcast lists. For the most part, we were taking Kronspine specifically to counter the fact that we were seeing Kronspine. In the current meta, we are likely going to see a significant fewer number of Kronspines on the table. It's still really good. It does what it says, but I think that people are going to be pivoting to not bringing it and bringing a lot more of their infantry models, just because this thing isn't going to be able to score a lot of battle tactics, and it struggles against really effective large units of infantry, which is what we are predicting the meta is going to pivot into.
Yeah, it doesn't quite do enough damage to kill these big defensive blocks that we're talking about. But at the same time, it doesn't die to those blocks either, right? Like, you can tie down stuff for guaranteed 2 turns with this thing, maybe 3 if you even end the spell or kill a monster.
Sure.
That's an interesting niche for this unit to have.
Yeah, not necessarily. I think it can actually die to. I'll bring this story up again. I've killed Carl's Kronspine just from Vindictors, which was kind of interesting.
Oh, sure.
It just depends. Like sometimes you can roll really bad, and then you just
it doesn't die in 1 turn.
Kind of messed up. I mean, no, it won't die in 1 turn, but sometimes it won't get through some things. And the other thing is that a really good pinning unit, like for example a Chariot, can just hold it down, and then you've got 480 points tied down. It can't even retreat.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting play in a battle regiment Stormcast list that's trying to just pin everything down. If you're playing, for example, 15 Vindictors, this is a nice slot for the monster slot in the battle regiment. If you're playing I guess you can't bring allies, but let's say you bring like a whole bunch of crossbow adjudicators, drop them down. This guy charges in, pins a whole bunch of stuff down. He's not going to survive 2 rounds of combat, but he will guaranteed survive 1, and sometimes 2, and then sometimes 3. And if he ever gets to a monster, you're going to really be happy you brought him. He's also a monster himself, so he's adding that roar that your list might be lacking. If I have a choice between 2 Stormdrake Guard or the Kronspine, I'm going to maybe try to find the extra 140 points to bring the Kronspine instead. The fact that he gives +1 to a bonded hero to cast, he's got that reroll run charge aura. There's a lot going on that's on this Warscroll that's really, really good. Probably not good enough to replace regular hammers, but he's a nice supporting type hammer.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Kronspine is still as good as he was last season. His Warscroll hasn't changed. His role in an army hasn't changed. It's just from the standpoint of Stormcast, he doesn't often have a place that isn't being taken up by something else that we want that does more in our list.
I'm quite glad he's going to be less common overall, though. I was tired of playing against him.
I'm sick of seeing him.
Playing against it, yeah. Tree Lord. It is a 260 point, 14 wound, 3 up save monster. That's pretty valuable on its own, even if it is super slow. But it has this really cool rampage where on a 3+, it makes an enemy unit fight last. And that is going to be very, very interesting in the upcoming meta where everything's fighting in the middle of the board, and strike first, strike last are super rare, unlike second edition. Also, he has another ability where if he fights and hits things with his attack, any enemy that's hit, and he has 5 attacks that
Just
hit on
hits.
3s, just hit, they can't pile in. So you combo these things where you make them strike last and they can't pile in. That's a very potent combination of abilities. Being able to split your attacks and put like 3 and 2 into priority targets, pretty interesting tech piece for only 230 points.
Yeah.
No, he's super slow.
Okay.
It's hard to make him work. But I think there's play for him as an ally. The Anointed on Frostheart Phoenix, and I guess we can just talk about the regular Phoenix too, because it's 100 points cheaper and takes up a behemoth slot instead of a leader slot, which is really good. -1 wound aura. Enemy units within 9 inches of -1 to wounds. And when you have the hero on this guy, he's a hero monster with a 4-up save, 4-up ward that gets +1 to save whenever you cast a spell around him. He's just a super tanky boy. If you can give him an Arcane Tome with Flaming Weapon in a Stormkeep list, he becomes a higher damage tanky boy. But it's super durable. I really like that effect. And if we're going into this everybody brawling in the middle over centralized objectives kind of playstyle, then more units are going to be within 9 inches, and that -1 wound is really going to add up. This is a good way to add more durability onto our hammer units, like Fulminators or Protectors or even Stormdrakes. Maybe you might be able to find points for this guy.
So you were talking about taking a Drakesworn Templar and giving it Master of the Celestial Menagerie in the Karazai list for -1 to wound.
Yeah.
Would you take this instead?
I would consider it. It's also a monster. What I like about the Drakesworn Templar is that it's 18 wounds instead of 12 like this guy. I believe it's 12 just for the regular Frostheart Phoenix. But you have to kind of keep them together. Whereas what I like about the Drakesworn is that Celestial Menagerie works anywhere on the field, no matter what.
Yeah.
He's also got other utility being a Stormcast hero. He can take the Quicksilver Draught. He can take a mount trait for Light of the Young Stars to get another -1 hit on top of Roar, denying all out attack.
Or Scintillating Trail and, make that the +1/-1 stack.
Yep, he can go Arcane Tome instead and be a super support piece. Give himself Flaming Weapon's probably not good enough on the Drakesworn, but he could cast Mystic Shield himself to save yourself 100 points on a support hero. So there's play. The Anointed on Frostheart Phoenix, I think, fits into other things. Like if you're trying to specific... I really see him working well with Dracoths, because Dracoths and this guy are about the same speed, and Dracoths want more defense.
Yeah. I haven't...
Yeah, him and
really
Dracoths would be interesting in the Stormkeep list. Just need that command trait to come in.
Yeah, Morgonk, remember that when we were first doing lists back at the start of 3rd edition, we had a Dracoth Blizzard list that included this guy and a Stormkeep?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that might be coming back.
Now might be the time.
My only concern with
your
is
board.
I don't currently own a Frostheart Phoenix, and I'm worried that the Dawnbringer Crusades are gonna squat it.
Dude, just buy the Elf Phoenix kit, man.
I think it's mostly the human models that are going to get the squat, right?
No, Dark Elves. I don't think the rumor was Dark Elves are seeing some squats too, but I don't think. Yeah, I think they said Phoenix Temple is going to be fine.
Hope so. Hope so. They got a whole city named after them, so it'll be weird if they just disappeared.
Yeah, the Phoenician.
The Skaven just ate them. They're just gone.
They've done it before. They can do it again.
Okay, part 2. Is that long enough for part 1? Part 2 is talking about the Stormcast Allegiance. We use the same ranking system that we use when we're talking about Warscrolls, where S tier is a high impact, unique aspect that defines a list, going all the way down to F tier, which is it's too niche and not worth using. Starting off with our Stormhosts, there hasn't been significant changes here based on from our previous season, but I think there's some notable ones. Namely, Hammers of Sigmar is looking a little bit less appealing. I think we're going to be leaning into Hallowed Knights more than we were before. Our hammer units need defense, and Gardas is an excellent source of defense. What's going to keep Hammers of Sigmar afloat, obviously, is Battle Line Dracoths. The efficiency that comes from not having to bring a 3rd unit of Redeemers because you can bring a unit of Dracoths instead. The option to just bring all Dracoths, if you were so inclined, you can double reinforce. If you want, for example, a squad of 6 Tempesters, you can't do that outside of Hammers of Sigmar. I can say definitively, none of the special characters are what make Hammers of Sigmar good. The ability 6-up ward is... You might forget it exists sometimes, frankly. Because you have to be wholly within 12 inches of an objective, and sometimes you're not quite wholly within 12 because our bases are so big. It's really just the Dracoths. That's always what it is. Making them battle line also unlocks Key to Victory, so if your heroes are standing near Dracoths, they're immune to shooting. So it's all good. So why are they A tier instead of S tier? Well, because I think we're going to be leaning into our other Stormhosts more this season. I think Hallowed Knights is, just going to be the runaway Stormhost because Gardas is going to be too good to pass up. I think Knights Excelsior is looking pretty good, making Paladins battle line, and we're looking at a more brawly type meta where Retributors actually might see play, Protectors being double reinforced might see play. There's all kinds of options on the table, and I think Hammers of Sigmar is looking just a little bit worse than all of those.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hallowed Knights, it's the Gardas faction. That's it. Like, you get a 5-up board, and you're playing an 18-30 point list. And you have to stay within range of your ward stick. So, yeah. The fighting on death is also sometimes relevant if you're playing a heavy Redeemer list. It can add up, if you have a squad of 15 Vindictors, then fighting on death is nice little, reflective damage that adds up, combined with Blaze of Glory especially. But Hallowed Knights is overall just too good. It is too good for this game.
No, it's just putting us on the same level as other people. Like that is the Stormcast allegiance ability,
Yeah, we can use Hallowed Knights. That's our allegiance. Celestial Vindicators. So even though we're talking about using reinforced hammers and Celestial Vindicators like some reinforced melee hammers, the fact that there's no battle line choices means you're not unlocking any extra utility through Key to Victory. The exploding hit 6 would have been nice if it lasted until your next charge phase or whatever. But the fact that it lasts until your hero phase and it goes away before you can use it as a sworn bodyguard, yeah, I'm not seeing it. Celestial Vindicators is looking a little bit worse. The fact that only one unit can get this per turn when now we actually might be fighting with multiple units at the same time with Quicksilver Draught as an option, it's just a little bit worse than it was before.
Plus, you have to charge, so it only really goes off on your turn.
It does last until your hero phase. So if you're fighting defensively, you keep the exploding hit 6 effect. It's not unplayable by any means, right? Like, if you want to have max damage fulminators, you'll want Divine Light, you'll want Blessed Weapons, but that's a 300 point addition to that unit. So you could cut 150 of that by going just Celestial Vindicators. So there is room for this. I think you just got to put the right pieces together. I think this actually might be the Stormhost to pick when you try that Dracoth Blizzard thing that we were talking about. Because we will want max damage fulminators. I'm telling you guys, the stuff that we're about to hit in the middle of the field, we will want the exploding 6s on our fulminators. Anvil's the Heldenhammer. Still bad. Still random. Still weak. We have no bravery debuffs. There's no battle line choices. We're still paying for the sins of 2nd edition. Knights Excelsior. I'm kind of on the border on this one with Grandhammers not being an S tier unit. This feels like it drops out of S down to A. I'm going to keep it as S for now, just because I feel like Battle Line Paladin is just more useful in general. It's not just Grandhammers now. It's also Protectors and Retributors being more valuable. So I think it's S tier, exactly the same reason as Hammers of Sigmar. It's just the sheer efficiency of running these units and not having to pay more battle line tax is nice. The option to double reinforce could come in handy. Do you want to play 15 Retributors and kill literally everything in the game in one combat activation? You can do that. You will do the most damage. Celestial Warbringers. They still don't have any battle line choices. You can't even do anything like reroll the Star Soul Maces. You're just rerolling standard attacks, standard wound rolls, standard save rolls. Just lackluster all around. Not a very strong. Not as bad as Anvils, but not that bad. Tempest Lords was seeing a little bit more play last season because battle line prosecutors were an interesting choice for bounty hunters. Obviously, the way the meta evolved, that didn't turn out to be as relevant as we thought. Now, battle line prosecutors are just like a fast screen that can, in a pinch, make your heroes immune to shooting. And that's kind of cool. Like, you're getting extra value out of your prosecutors. Instead of using Redeemer units, you can just use prosecutors instead, absorb Unleash Hell, and have more mobility across the battlefield. I think the main unit that wanted to take advantage of the charge bonus was Stormdrakes, and the Stormdrakes really want the Gardas Ward Aura instead of a reroll charge, because they reroll their own charge now. So, not a very useful ability. And then rounding it out is Astral Templars, somewhere between Hammers of Sigmar and Celestial Vindicators and Tempest Lords. Astral Templars sit in this niche where, well, I'm not getting any battle line choices, really, because, I mean, Hunters are okay, but can't revive them with Call for Aid, so it's not like you're going Astral Templars to take the Hunters instead of Vanquishers. And Paladors aren't really that good. But the ability to ignore all rampages, not all, I should say, just the ones that pick, right? Because there's some that get around it still. But being able to ignore most rampages is a very useful ability. Being able to always all-out defense is a useful ability on Stormdrakes, on Fulminators, on Karazai. You can avoid all these Gargant flips, all these like suplexes and chokeholds that they're doing. You can just ignore them all. So it has play. I don't think we're going to see as many monsters this meta as we did at the start of 3rd edition. I think the infantry thing is just going to obliterate them. Monsters don't do enough damage to compete with infantry. Just the raw number of wounds you need to kill them is not going to do it. There could be some exceptions, and it's still playable at a B tier. Let's look at our command traits. This will be fast because they all suck. Shock and Awe sucks. Staunch Defender sucks. Envoy of the Heavens sucks. Master of the Celestial Menagerie, which is hard to say when you're speaking quickly. It's situationally useful. If you're taking like a Drake Sworn or Star Drake in general, you can take that, and that's about the only time you use it. If you want to know why these suck, look at our other reviews. We've covered them repeatedly. Battle Lust is not very good. I think that's a reroll run and charge. Not very useful for a general trait. Skilled Leader, I'm taking it down from D to F because I thought maybe there might eventually be some place for it, but turns out Stormcast are like the army that generates all the command points and uses them for free. So absolutely not worthwhile. We could just bring allies that generate command points. We don't need this trait ever. There's never a case for this. High Priest and Master of Magic were swapping their places this season because as much as we've been talking about how much there is more magic in general, and we want to dispel that magic, +0 rerollable unbinds are not good enough. +0 rerollable dispels are good, and the spells are all getting nerfed across the board. Whereas we need Translocate more than ever. We have a lot of uses for it, and the Lord Relictor is a champion, so you want to make sure you score battle tactics using Translocate.
And importantly, the Incantor is also a champion, which makes Master of Magic even less useful.
Yeah, the Incantor is going to see a lot more play this season, being able to stop that one spell all the time. Devalues being able to re-roll Unbinding. If we had more spells that we wanted to cast, Master of Magic could be better. We're not that concerned with our spells. Like, we want them. We want that Mystic Shield. We want that Wild Form. The best case scenario is we cast these things out of Unbinding range, and then we just never rely on them for the rest of the game.
Plus, Night Relictors are playable now, and you want that 3 up to be rerollable if possible.
That's right, yeah. If you ever use a Night Relictor, you want to re-roll that Translocate. Artifacts. Blade of Heroes sucks. Hammer of Might sucks. Fang of Dracothian sucks. I hope YouTube is not filtering sucks. As a Drake Scale Armor, it's a little interesting, but there's just too much damage one stuff. There's too many mortal wounds. There's too many D3, D6. If this at least worked on the D3, D6 stuff, there could be a better case for it. C might be even overselling it, but just sometimes you will take it on like a Star Drake. Maybe.
Yeah.
Mirror Shield is really marginalized by Key to Victory, so we're knocking it down a tier. The fact that Mirror Shield does work against sharpshooters, so if you really, really don't want your heroes to die against Lumineth, cool. Frankly, if Lumineth are shooting our heroes, we're going to win that game because, that's not the unit you want to shoot. You don't want to shoot Stormcast heroes. The way you beat Stormcast is by killing our hammer units. So maybe on a Knight Draconis, avoid him getting shot off the board before you can double breath. Maybe on a Star Drake, if you want to have like a super durable tanky unit that just can't be shot, right? If the meta does just change into all shooting, having a super tanky anti-melee, anti-shooting unit on an objective is not bad. Won't be able to outnumber units, unfortunately, but it's an option. The Amulet of Silvered Sigmarite is not good. F tier. Quicksilver Draught is jumping up 2 spots in our rankings here because of the incredible synergy with Sworn Bodyguards. Being able to fight in the hero phase is one thing, but being able to fight defensively in the opponent's turn using a Quicksilver Draught and a Sworn Bodyguard is a very strong ability. You can force your opponent into a no-win scenario where if they charge you, they die, and if they don't charge you, they lose the game, which doesn't give them any good options. So very, very useful, and I think that's enough to give it an A tier, higher than a Mirror Shield. Luckstone, you can still get a guaranteed 12-inch charge out of reserves. I think that's the best case for it. And how useful is that? I don't know. It's not that good. Maybe like getting a hero in guaranteed and then being able to activate Sworn Bodyguards? I guess. But why would you do that if you don't have the Quicksilver Draught? You're not fighting first. You're just fighting with a hero. And that's how useful is that?
Not very useful.
Not very useful.
Obsidian Amulet, not very good. It's okay, but it's not very good. I would probably never pick it. Universal artifacts, they're all terrible except for the Arcane Tome, which is the best artifact in the game. The first and usually the only artifact you will pick in a Stormcast list. I think the second one now is going to be the Quicksilver Draught. Sometimes the Draught will replace the Tome if you already have enough wizards or if you're running a specific combo. But the Arcane Tome is just really good. You're going to use it in most Stormcast lists.
GW, if you're watching, it's not that all these S and A tier things need to be nerfed. It's that everything that's an F, just rework it. Universal, Stormcast, just please fix.
They're all too weak. Everything else is too weak. That's the problem here.
Yep.
GW, if you're listening to this, please remove Arcane Tome from the Universal Enhancements and make it a Stormcast.
That's enough of Ragon for one.
Anyways.
No, make it a Stormcast only enhancement. Move it into our book.
No, I like it in other armies, man. I like it.
I think it's good to have. We'll get into
No.
Everything else needs to be better though, for sure. Like there's no reason why there's useless things.
If you want me to stop taking Arcane Tome, give me an artifact that makes me a priest.
No, that will kill priests in our book. We'll never use another priest again.
We'll actually literally never use a priest. Nitroconist priest, man.
Yeah,
I'm telling you.
That's it. Nitroconist high priest.
Let's go.
Okay, let's look at the new enhancements in Season 2, because these are actually good. There's an F tier one, but that's only because we play Stormcast. But these are all solid. These are good choices. If the rest of the artifacts were this good, there'd be a lot of good choices to make. The first one here is the Tusk Helm, where after your hero charges, you basically make a chariot charge, where you roll dice equal to the number of your charge roll, and then each 4-up is a mortal wound. So this can spike super high, and what I like about it and why I'm giving it an A tier is that Stormcast heroes don't usually do damage. They do other things. And then if they're not doing those things, like for example, if you're not translocating that turn, or if you failed your spell, you do nothing else with that unit. That's 100-something points just sitting there doing nothing. Whereas if you give that hero a Tusk Helm, they're contributing damage into a charge, which is very useful. It's useful to break out of pinning situations, because our support heroes normally do nothing against that. Damage is utility in this game, so the Tusk Helm is a good artifact. I quite like it. It kind of makes me build a whole list around just charging things to death. Shield Annihilators, Chariots, just charge mortal wounds for days. That's what I want to do.
I've always liked that kind of thing, just because charge mortals are like a pseudo fight first. And sometimes you don't have Quicksilver Draught, so you're just, your hero's going in and doing something.
Yeah, I like it in a castle, like just adding extra damage via mortal wounds by charging in like a Knight Incanter or some hero that is, not that useful otherwise in that match.
Yeah, because the damage doesn't, like, the base hero doesn't matter. The artifact does the same thing no matter what hero you pick. So you can use it on like a 4-wound Skink Star Priest. Suddenly can just be charging in and dealing a bunch of mortal wounds. It's nice. Night Flyer Cloak. It lets you put a unit in reserve and drop it into play within 1 inch of a battle line unit. So there's extra restrictions on it. For other armies, this is going to be amazing. You can keep your super key important support hero off the table, so not even sharpshooters can get at them, and you can put them pretty much anywhere you want them to be when you want them to be there. That's very strong. For Stormcast, we have Signs of the Storm that does that without using an enhancement. So F, terrible. We will never use this. Griff Feather Charm. This is like the 3rd time we've seen this artifact in this game. Every time we've seen it, it's been too good, right? Like when it was -1 hit and +1 move.
This might be good. This might be the one.
This is the one where it's finally balanced, because it's just Amulet of Destiny, but only for champions. And it turns out what made Amulet of Destiny good was that it went on 18 wound Maw Crushes, not that it goes on a 9 wound whatever support hero. Not that significant.
Turns out, yeah. They could have just done this instead of nerfing Amulet of Destiny. Wow.
Yeah. So, Griff Feather Charm is good, but the question is, when do Stormcast want a tougher champion? Like, when is that valuable to us to have a tough champion?
When am I going to spend my artifact enhancement on this? Never.
Especially if this was a command trait, or if this was an aspect of the champion, I would probably take it, but not as an artifact. Like, as an artifact, I think Tusk Helm wins out every time.
I don't think I'd even
for a secondary artifact.
I don't think I'd take it as an aspect, because we have the Gardas aura. Like, most of our support heroes will be within that Gardas aura just by accident. So,
yeah.
Not every list has
I can make it I've been playing non-Gardas lists. So.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Not every list is Gardas.
And if you need to protect your hero, use a Mirror Shield, right?
Yep.
I guess this helps against spells and stuff like that. Like, it's fine. It's not bad by any means.
Sometimes matters. Sure,
Sometimes,
that's why it's
yeah.
it's niche, right?
That's right.
Like it matters sometimes.
It's not a bad artifact. It's just
No.
not great.
It would just be D or F if it was bad, you know?
I kind of wish they added 3 more enhancements, and these artifacts or whatever could be taken in addition to, so almost like they were a second unique enhancement, right? But the fact that they compete with every other artifact that already exists, I don't think they're quite good enough. I like the Tusk Helm, I like it a lot, but that's it. The other two are just kind of mad.
Well, we're basically getting that with the aspects.
Yeah, I was hoping we'd have more.
More.
Just more.
More choices.
Yeah, I like choices. So let's talk about the aspects. So the aspects of the champion are a unique enhancement that you just get one of. It's like having a holy command or having a spell, like not a spell enhancement. It's not a good one. Just like having an artifact, a second type of artifact.
Bond, you know, they're just extra.
It's an extra thing that every army gets. So if you don't have a champion, you can't take advantage of these. And if you want to take multiples, you can use them as your enhancements from a Warlord Battalion. So let's go over them. First up is Tunnel Master, which allows you to just translocate that unit for free. It's teleported in at the end of the movement phase, right? It's not as good as translocate, which is in the hero phase, but having a free teleport is really, really good for everyone all the time. That's really, really strong. How Stormcast are going to use this is questionable, because we have if we just want a teleporting hero, we have that in the Zephyros and the Lord Arcanum. If you want to translocate a hero specifically, you could just do that. So when does this come in handy? Well, it's when you want to translocate something and Tunnel Master it, or when you want to translocate and then Tunnel Master back, right? This gives additional utility to units like that. So you can send up a Priest. The Priest can Divine Light to reroll 1s, cast the Geminids or some other spell, and then Tunnel Master back to safety. You can use this on a Lord Castellan, who can keep up with a unit of Storm Drakes or Fulminators or something that's going to run way out of his reach. You can use this just to steal an objective that's been left open, and you can score a battle tactic off that. So there is play for this, even though we do have Translocate. This is not like the Night Flare Cloak, where there's just different trade-offs at this point.
And if you're watching this video and you haven't seen the full version of these, this is once per game.
Yes. Yeah, this is just a once per battle effect. I believe all of these are once per battle. No, Rhinox is every turn, but everything else is once per battle.
Once per battle, yep.
What have you guys found any other combos for Tunnel Master that you can think of?
Not really.
Just cool, yeah.
Yeah, I'm at the point. So, like, when I look at this, I look at, okay, if I want a Tunnel Master, why not just take the Knight Zephyros?
Yeah,
that's
you have to find another. Yeah. You have to find a use for Tunnel Master on other heroes, and that immediately knocks it out of any potential S or A tier for this thing.
Yes.
So yeah, situational, but it could be useful. Fueled by Gurish Rage, when your hero dies, you get like a 3+ revive, and then you ignore all the other damage. So you are, I mean, you're not guaranteed it's a 3+, but you survive any amount of damage. It's like the old Cycle of the Storm before they eroded it. This does help against magic in combat, unlike a Mirror Shield. So that's, if you have a Knight Azuros that you're trying to get into combat and you're worried about, you want to activate the Quicksilver Draw to activate a Swarm Bodyguard, this can help keep them alive against like a D6 Mortal Wound spell or a Sharpshooter or something like that. So it is useful. I'm quite liking it. Even just being able to keep a support hero alive because your opponent was silly enough to try to kill your heroes, just being able to deny that is still somewhat useful. Sometimes people will overvalue your heroes if you're putting defensive things on them. They'll be like, oh, that guy's got Fueled by Gurish Rage. I know he's important to you now because you're trying to do that. So they might actually try to kill him, like double bluffing, yeah, it's okay. I like it. Stubborn as a Rhinox, I think, is going to be the default for a lot of Stormcast lists because we don't have a lot of bodies on the table, and being able to just count a support hero as 10 models will really help us in these like really tight, fit as many models as you can on the objective as possible scenarios. And it's also really useful with stuff like Translocate on a Priest. That Priest can just count as 10 models himself, or a Knight Zephyros, teleports onto an objective, captures it if it's, if there's enough space for it, because sometimes people do leave space on objectives. They just tap their toe in. They don't just sit in the middle of it always. So I like it, especially against Gargants, which I think we're definitely going to struggle to outnumber them on objectives. Being able to just tap a toe in on a support hero and count as 10 more models is going to go a long way in that matchup.
It matters.
Yep.
And Leadership of the Alpha, you can, once per battle, issue redeploy, rally, all out attack, or all out defense on 3 units in that phase, just like a war boss would from Iron Jaws. And that's pretty good, right? Being able to all out attack 3 different shooting units, all out attack 3 different melee units, all out defense 2 different shooting units. Like if you have, for example, you're running 8 Storm Drakes 2x4, you can all out defense both of them once per combat phase, and that's really good. That's about all I have to say about it. No, that's not true. A triple redeploy, I think, is really good. Sometimes, like, an opponent's coming from an unexpected angle, and what you want to do is shimmy units, 1 left, 1 right, and then, you can't do that because you can only redeploy 1, and sometimes you roll like a 1 or 2. Being able to triple redeploy can actually just swing the game for you because it cuts off that crucial piece of space. And finally, I'm going to mention Stormcast. Probably not going to benefit from triple rally, but if you have something like Slaves to Darkness or Fire Slayers, they are going to love that triple rally because they get huge bonuses to rally. Daughters of Cain as well. Oh boy.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, the new seasonal enhancements, kind of a mixed bag for us. I think we're just going to take the most efficient route. We're going to go with probably Rhinox, maybe sometimes take a Tusk Helm, sometimes take Tunnel Master. That's probably going to be the loadout for us. Looking at our spells, Lightning Blast has proven more reliable than it has than we thought. Like, just being able to ping something for D3 mortal wounds when you're not doing anything else that turn, always useful. It's better than literally doing nothing. So it's actually a decent pick sometimes to take on like a Knight Incantor sitting in the back.
Yep, it was my pick for my Knight Incantor for an entire year.
Yep.
Yeah, doesn't care about Knight or Lord.
Yeah.
Nope. Translocate her into position, or him, because mine's a female, and then she just sits there in the opponent's territory in the back corner and just pings something for D3 mortal wounds.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's nice. And you can cast it out on binding ranges, which is cool.
Yeah, it's great.
The Azurite Halo, I think we're talking a little bit more about this one than we have been previously. In previous metas, there haven't been high attack values, and Bounty Hunters obviously killed that in the previous season. But this season, we're looking at units that have like 60, 70, 80 attacks, and every save roll of 6 against that will turn into a mortal wound against them. And we just look at how much damage that as a single spellcast is doing. That's a lot of mortal wounds. If you're just going to throw units away, like, you have 5 Vanquishers as a screen, and they're going to get charged, and they're going to die against an enemy hammer unit, something like Chaos Knights with Corn Mark, and they have a bunch of attacks. Well, why not just do more mortal wounds to that unit? Mystic Shield won't save you, so you might as well just explode even harder, right? Combine Azurite Halo with Blaze of Glory and with Only the Faithful, and you actually might be able to kill a knight or 2 on the way down. So you can put it on something disposable, or put it on something super tough, like 6 Tempesters, or 4 Storm Drakes, or 10 Protectors, and it's just adding damage every time your opponent attacks you. And because you have to attack in combat if you're in range, you can actually force your opponent to do damage to themselves. The problem with it is that Celestial Blades is generally better because you control when the damage happens and how it happens. Mystic Shield is generally better. Thundershock is, I would say, generally better. So this is like the 4th spell you would cast in a list, unless you have a very specific purpose for it. It's not like a general, like, oh, I'm playing Stormcast, this is my guy who casts Azurite Halo. It's pretty niche, I would say.
Agreed.
Next one, though, is Celestial Blades. That one's not niche. This one's
No,
pretty much good in every list. It's S tier for a reason. It's pretty much our go-to because, well, it's +1 to wound, and these effects are pretty rare. Other than like Sacrosanct being able to do so to themselves, like Evocators, for example, can empower themselves. It's a really important spell for us. Fulminators are a staple for us. This makes Fulminators wound on 2s. All out attack, 2s and 2s. It's the most consistency you can get, and really important. It's alright on Storm Drakes, it's alright on a lot of our other units, and that's why it's S tier. It's pretty much your go-to.
Agreed.
Yeah, you know what I've been appreciating about Celestial Blades lately? It works on mount attacks too.
Yep.
Yes, it does.
And that's not something I thought I would care about, but it turns out that
lately, yeah,
it does.
Chain Lightning, though, a little more situational. Lightning Blast just has so much more utility. Chain Lightning is, I mean, it's just so much shorter range, random, damage, whether it's going to arc or not. It's D tier. It works in a little more casual games, but it's not really something we'd take competitively. Unlike Thundershock, I really like Thundershock. It's a good B. It's not the first thing you go for like Blades, but it can be a good secondary thing if you're playing a more defensive style where you're like, okay, I have plenty of damage. I have another wizard. It's -1 to wound for opponents. Just like how Celestial Blades is super important because it's +1 to wound for us, -1 to wound can be really huge into some opponents who rely on wounding on 3s. Going from 3s to 4s on wounds feels really bad.
It's
And
tough.
yeah, no, this is a really good spell. It can be random because you do have to roll the 4-up, and that can feel kind of bad too, which is another reason why it's a B tier. Honestly, if it just did what
It's
it said
a
on the
3-up.
I mean,
box,
3-up.
or 3-up, yeah, 3-up. Sorry. If it just did what it said on the box without having to roll for it, this would honestly be S tier in my opinion.
Yes, it would.
It would need a
'Cause-
much higher cast value.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Oh, that's for sure. Yeah.
Because it works on
Unlike-
shooting too. It's great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it works on shooting, it works on everything. But for us, sometimes it's about keeping your units alive so they can keep doing damage. Just like we talked about earlier, shooting our heroes is a mistake. Killing our hammers is the play. So anything that can help out with that is really good.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike the next spell, which, when you read it, seems like it would be really great. Stopping an enemy pile-in move with the Starfall spell seems like a great effect on your opponent's turn. Because it only works on our turn, it can fail on a 3-up. Its utility against monsters and heroes and single model units is very lacking. We've really liked this spell for a long time, and it's just not doing what we want it to.
We want to like it, but it's
You really want to.
yeah.
I don't know why it can't last till the opponent's end of opponent's turn. Show your next hero face, pretty much.
My favorite use of it is to get past things like zombies that have a 6-inch pile-in or Sisters of Slaughter that have a 6-inch pile-in. That will you pretty much they'll riposte you. You can't really stop it unless you have this, right? But it's just so hard to cast. The range is relatively short. It still fails even if all those things get put together. There's just too many conditions. And now the fact that even if you stop pile-in, you can still activate the new command ability to get +1 attack. It's like, oh, okay, well you've made that decision easier for me. So potentially not even a defensive bonus because your opponent will just activate bonus attacks. So yeah, hard to use, hard to justify bringing it on a wizard. It would be like your 5th wizard spell. Like, this is a spell Krondys would sometimes cast if Krondys learned every spell in the book. That's where this would fall in. Looking at the universal spells, Flaming Weapon, we're going to use it less. Previously we would have like an Arcane Tome with Nitroconus or with a Frostheart Phoenix and Stormkeep. Not really going to see a lot of play. The fact that you can't use it before heroic actions and then being able to fight with the heroic action, that would have been cool, but can't do that. So knocking it down a tier, seeing less play. Levitate, sometimes you want Flying Fulminators. But man, is it hard to cast that spell.
Yeah, it is.
So probably not worth picking. Ghost Mist, no, you don't want to block your own line of sight, and we have better ways of dealing with enemy line of sight. Prayers, all our prayers are staying exactly as good as they were before. Divine Light, rerolling hit rolls of 1 against everything, really good. We want to take down that key unit once per turn. Translocation, essential, can't play without it pretty much. Really hard to justify playing without it. Blessed Weapons is also really good. There's some shooting units now that actually work with it and are worth using, like Castigators can scale with Blessed Weapons. I don't think it's worth using Castigators in that way, but it is worth pointing out. We primarily want to use this on our melee hammers, like Protectors. Stormdrake Guard might get some benefit out of it, even though they're not super high attackers. It is still a nice boost to them. Fulminators, I think, are the gold standard for this. Having them with Exploding Sixes is just absurd. And I think we will need absurd damage, so keep Blessed Weapons in mind. In terms of Universal Prayers, Guidance, not reliable enough. A command point isn't worth as much because we generate so many in so many ways. Heal is interesting. I don't think I would use it because if you want to heal, you can just use Lord Relictor's heal. He has a heal on his Warscroll. And then Curse. Curse has some issues. So we get this question a lot in our Discord server. Have you guys considered Curse? We have. The problem with it is it's only a 9-inch range. and there's no way to get within 9 inches in a single turn reliably. You have to walk into that and start your hero phase within 9 inches of an enemy. So even if you do that, we have a lot of effects that already work off hit rolls of 6. We have things like exploding crossbows. We have long strikes already doing mortal wounds on 6s. We've got things that don't roll to hit, like Star Soul maces. So Curse is not as valuable for Stormcast as it would be for other armies. We are just not that super high volume army that will take advantage of it like Idoneth or even Slaves of Darkness. Mount traits. Etheric Swiftness. Everything's staying the same for mount traits because, frankly, we're not going to be using mounted heroes as much as we were before. Even when we do use them, all of these are relatively the same weight as they used to be. There's no real change here. You're going to see less mounted heroes in general, so everything we've said about mount traits is better than before. Do you guys have anything in particular you want to point out with these?
Nope.
I mean, yeah, it's just Scintillating Trail is just really good, man. That's all I gotta say.
Light of the Young Stars is okay. Like, I'm going to try it with Drake's One Templar Karazai, and I think that's where it ends.
I like that it gets around monster immunities. That can matter sometimes.
Yep. If you play the one guy at the tournament with Astral Templars.
Yeah, but it boggles my mind with the way that we have seen other armies get new monstrous rampages that specifically say that these are monstrous rampages. The fact that these haven't, this is in place of, is bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
I expect it to get FAQ'd every time an FAQ comes out, but because they never FAQ our book with anything useful and like no useful information, it just doesn't happen.
From a design standpoint, I get it, but like in terms of usability, it's better this way, right?
It is absolutely better this way. It just doesn't make any real sense now that we've seen the design philosophy of 3rd edition as a whole.
Yeah.
I guess I was expecting to see a lot more units that ignore monstrous rampages. I was like, oh, okay, this might matter because technically it doesn't count as one.
Right.
But that hasn't happened. Yeah, that hasn't happened. So it's like, what's the point of this? Like, is it just for fighting Astral Templar mirrors or something? Like,
yeah, it's super bizarre.
There's a couple units that can't be picked for a rampage, but I don't think you want to use stuff like this on.
Yeah. No. This would have been more. It's less interesting because Roar already stops all out attack, and that's basically what you're doing is trading all out attack for this. I don't know if it would have been more interesting if it was like a -1 to save ability, but that could probably get too strong.
You want to know another weird thing about our mount traits? I think we might be the only faction, the only army in the game that doesn't have a sub-faction that lets you pick multiple mount traits. Like, I think Beastclaw can do that, Fire Slayers can do that. Instead of one, you get multiples. Like, we're the only ones with mount traits that can't just pick 3 instead of 1.
I don't think Orcs have that.
Orcs don't have that either.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah, they have mount traits. They don't have that.
Do orcs have a monster? So the whole thing, though, with like Beastclaw as an example, is that sub-faction is all about taking an ass ton, so a ton of Stonehorns and Thundertusks, right? Whereas you're not
when we
taking
spam monsters, they're not heroes, though.
Sure, but if you think about the Achillean Leviathan, why does that get a mount trait if it's not a hero?
Yeah.
By that logic, there should be a Stormdrake Guard mount trait.
Can I get Thunderous Presence on my Stormdrake Guard, please?
All right, hear me out. We're going to remove Hero from Drake's One Templar and make him battle line in a sub-faction.
Ooh.
For real?
Yeah. No, I'd be down for that. That would make sense.
Tempest Lord.
He still needs a point cut.
Yeah, he would if he loses Hero. All right, moving on to our holy commands. Call for Aid is really good. I think it actually might be the default for a lot of lists because Thunderbolt Volley Volley is really good. It's actually so good that I think 3 Long Strike Raptors are going to slot into a lot of lists. Even if you don't run 6 Long Strikes, you're going to run 3. But anytime you're not running Thunderbolt Volley, you are going to run Call for Aid because being able to just add 120 points to your list is really good. And the fact that you can revive them near any Stormcast hero is also really good. You can position heroes on opposite sides, so whatever flank they come on, you can revive on the other one to shore up a weakness or steal objectives from an opponent. I had an awesome game against an Ironjawz player who charged in with his pigs, killed my screen, and I resurrected them on the other side where he was just toe in on an objective, and I was able to take it from him and deny him a whole bunch of victory points. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
So, Call for Aid's really good.
Steadfast though, I had such high hopes for this. It was really cool ironically, when Incarnate was cheaper because you could reroll runs, and unfortunately with this you can't auto 6. I wish this run in charge was better. Unfortunately, the cannot shoot part makes it not as great. Even on Dracots, like on Dragons, it feels kind of bad, but even on Dracots, like it's nice to have those mortals come in.
I mean, it's nice, but it's like if I'm using Fulminators, that's not why I'm using Fulminators.
Right.
It's like I'm okay with that. It hurts on like Tempesters, sure.
Yeah.
Because I'm not using them as aggressively always.
The issue, and we have said this on the channel multiple times, the issue with this command trait, or with this holy command, is that it's issued in the movement phase instead of the charge phase. That's the issue with it.
Yeah, that never should have been the case. It would have been okay to trade off the fact
It should have been like the Melusi Iron Scale one.
Yeah. Because if it was in the charge phase, you couldn't reroll charges. That's fine. Well, at least without another ability, which, Dracolines can, I guess Dragons can.
I'd be okay with being able to run 6 with this, as long as it's not a mounted unit. Like, our units shouldn't be like 18-inch move and then charge, right? Like, that's too much movement for Stormcast. We don't need that. But if we have like...
Oh yeah, you're saying if it was on foot.
If it was infantry, if only infantry could use it.
Totally. If you look at sort of the narrative connotations of the thing, the steadfast march, cavalry units don't march.
Yeah.
Right? Like, infantry units march.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I don't know when they were planning 3rd edition and writing this battle tome if they had the cavalry infantry distinctions in mind. Seems like that was developed later on. So 3.5.
Yeah, I hope they take that into account because, like, man, I hate that our foot units have to pay for the cavalry. It's like with translocation. Translocation should have 100% stayed for paladins, even if it was like literally keyword paladins. That would have been all right.
Well, now that we have infantry, like translocating if you could translocate infantry that wasn't reinforced and it could move, I don't think that would break the game at all. I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah,
that'd be great. Sending in 5 retributors and not have to get that battle mage tax.
Yeah. It's just these classification of unit types are going to need to be codified into the core game before we can see any of these changes get any traction.
Yep. Before we go too far off the rails, let's keep on with our tier list here. I think there is still play for Steadfast March, and I think it's with Evocators, either Dracolines or 10-man squad of foot Evocators. I think the extra breach is going to be nice for them because you can use it after using Louch on, so you can run in charge off the boat, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, it can help.
The Thunderbolt Volley, we talked about this. It's good. I think really the only case for it now, where we're going, is 3 long strikes. I don't think 5 crossbows is good enough. It just doesn't feel punchy enough without the +1 hit. They swing way too much. Yeah, I think 3 long strikes is the way to use this ability. I don't think Castigators are good enough. I don't think crossbows are good enough. Skybolts aren't good enough. It really feels bad that this is still S tier, right? Like, it's just so lackluster compared to what it used to be, but it still is very good. Being able to do hero phase damage is really good. Think of it like a spell that your opponent can't stop to let you shoot instantly with long strikes.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. Unleash Thy Hatred with 10 Protectors or 10 Retributors, pretty good. Especially because you can combo with the Quicksilver Draught to fight with, hey, let's say 10 Protectors and 10 Retributors. You can fight with both. Go crazy. Have a lot of damage. And you still get to
pile in.
Yeah. So, good command. Using this offensively. Defensively, you can use the new Realm command. It's much harder to use and get more value out of it. But, yeah, there you go. Final Thunderstrike, still terrible. Don't use it. Section 3, talking about match play. We did not include this section with our original Stormcast review, so we have a different ranking system for this, obviously because there's no opportunity cost. You just have all the battle tactics, so there's no sense in saying, well, this one's better than this one, and you should use this in your list, because you can just use all of them all the time. It just depends on how you... Like, the battle tactics we have kind of determine how you build your list. You should think about the battle tactics when you do that. So we use a different system here. S tier is you will reliably score this in every game, and scaling that down all the way down to F tier where it's just too niche and it's just not going to be scored. You're not doing that. Let's look at the Universal Grand strategies for Season 2. Tame the Land was left over from the previous season, which requires you to control, not contest, control specifically, and all objectives wholly outside your territory. Sometimes this is literally impossible because to be wholly outside your territory means it can't be on the edge of your territory. And there are some battle plans where there are only objectives on the edge of your territory, if I recall correctly. So this could literally be impossible depending on what you're playing on. Because of that... Sorry?
I was saying I don't remember for this season if that's the case.
Yeah, well, either way, having to control all of them means if you don't have the bottom of round 5 or whenever the game's about to end, your opponent can just deny this fairly easily, right? Even if it's not going to win them the game, being able to deny a grand strategy is really bad for your score overall. So there's a lot of things I don't like about this grand strategy. The next two here kind of work in tandem. They're sort of opposites, whether you want to play defensively or aggressively. Defend what's ours, you have to have no enemy units wholly within your territory. Wholly within, which is nice, right? They can toe in, and that's not enough. But again, this depends on the size of the territory. I also don't like the fact that your opponent can just sneak a unit in at the end of the game to deny it, and there's a lot of like flying, fast, sneaky units that can do this. It's quite annoying. But if you're playing a castle list, and Stormcast love to play castles, this is pretty much what we're trying to do anyway. We're trying to just slowly attrition burn through the enemy army and capture more objectives than they have over 5 rounds. The counter side to that is take what's theirs, which is to have more friendly units wholly within opponent's territory. And again, this is dependent on territory size, but this favors aggressive tactics. And it's also worth noting that it doesn't have to be your starting army units. So if you summon anything, if you add in a unit of Redeemers through Call for Aid, or if you have a summoning army, you could just take what's theirs with your summoned units. So of these two, it kind of depends on your play style. If you like a more aggressive style, then take what's there is good. If you like more defensive, then defend what's ours is there. Looking at the new ones for the season, Stake a Claim requires 3 or more champions wholly within enemy territory, which means you need 3 or more champions in your list, and they need to survive the battle and finish the game in enemy territory, which frankly I think is still easier to do than Tame the Land. Just with Stormcast with our lower body counts, the fact
Higher
that we'll probably bring 3 to 4 champions in many lists, it's okay. It's not great. Hard to do, usually, I'd say. Survivor's Instinct. Your general is a champion, and the general is contesting an objective wholly outside your territory at the end of the game. So if your general is a Lord Relictor, and you translocate it onto an MG objective, there you go. You got it.
Or not empty.
Yep. You only need to contest. You don't have to control it, right? But the point is you need space to land there. This is one of those ones, again, it's kind of easy for your opponent to just kill your general if you're trying to do this, or just not make it possible for you to get onto them. So C tier, it's kind of niche. My favorite one, my go-to for this season so far in my play testing has been the Day is Ours, because the way Stormcast want to play is we bring champions and we have sharpshooters. We can kill your champions. So if the game is going to hinge on a grand strategy, this one seems like the easiest one to do. You have more champions than your opponent, and this is only counting the starting army, so any Tzeentch summoning, Nurgle summoning doesn't work on this. And because we have such excellent sharpshooters, I think we can pivot. You know, it's not always the right call to just blast enemy heroes from top of round 1, but because we have the option, I think this is probably our go-to grand strategy. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I like that this is basically an auto win against Gargants.
Yes.
They're like never going to be able to shoot your little guy.
I mean, if I win, I'll get my grand strategy, or if I just keep my champion in a corner, you can't get to him.
Yeah, I'm liking this one. I think this is going to be my default pick for many, many lists. And then our terrible, terrible strategies. And let's go over why they're terrible, because I think it's worth mentioning. Draconith Defiance. Only heroes on the battlefield left are Draconith, Stardrake, and Dracoth, which means you can't bring any other heroes, right? Because your opponent could just not kill them. Which means you're not bringing any champions, which means you're not scoring a lot of the battle tactics. You also have to kill every enemy hero, because this is just heroes, period, not friendly or enemy. So this is really bad. Maybe if you're running an Oops All Dragons list, maybe. But
it would be so hard.
The fact that dragons can't shoot heroes anymore is really bad. If they're champions and in your battle line, they can't be shot. So it gets harder and harder to do. Pretty terrible. But it's not as terrible as Pillars of Victory, which is to have the only battle line units left on the battlefield to be friendly Redeemer units. So you have to kill all the enemy battle line, keep at least one of yours alive, and you can't bring any other battle line units. And yeah, typically what Stormcast want to do is we want to throw away our Redeemer units in order to gain position. having to keep alive a Redeemer and kill all the enemy battle line is like, that's too much.
Yeah.
It's just too much,
Way too
man.
much.
Even if you're spamming Redeemers.
I have a feeling someone in the design studio really likes Redeemers and really overestimates them.
Oh yeah, easily. Everyone thought that when the Stormcast book came out that it was going to be Redeemers everywhere, remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, there were people trying to convince us of that. Sacred Charge. Have 2 or more Cities of Sigmar units on the battlefield at the end of the battle, which means you have to bring at least 2 Cities of Sigmar units and have both of them survive.
Is this one Stormkeep only, or is this one just there?
Oh no, it's there. You can use it as scions.
I mean, all right.
So you can bring. This is why I have a gyrocopter or bomber here, because you can just take 2 of these and hide them in the corners and never engage with the battle. Play 100, 200 points down, and score 3 points at the end of the game.
Jeez.
You can do that. That's an option. Not a very good option, though. Looking at our battle tactics, we're looking at the universal ones. These are the ones carried over from the previous season. First up is Gaining Momentum, which requires you to destroy an enemy unit and control more objectives, which we just call playing the game normally, because what you want to always be doing is trading up objectives and destroying units in order to do that. So you will score this in every game you will play this season, or you will fail to score it. Either way, you're going to try to declare it and you're going to try to get it.
Yep.
Sometimes you can't score more objectives, right? If it's like a 4 objective map and you have 2 and your opponent has 2 and it's a stalemate, you might not be able to get this, but at some point during the game you'll get it. Eye for an eye. If a friendly unit was destroyed last turn, you destroy 1 enemy unit this turn, and you don't have to pick the unit, so it's just any unit. Can't score this at the top of round 1. Sometimes you get a double turn, your opponent didn't kill anything on your turn, and you can't score it then. Otherwise, it's a freebie, right? Like, aside from very specific scenarios, it's a gimme. You just get it. It's
like so almost close to S, pretty much.
Yeah, it's just because of those stipulations I noted that sometimes you play a super defensive list and your opponent actually didn't kill anything, and you just can't.
Yeah, that's true.
It happens.
It does. Yeah, you're right.
So just keep that in mind. Desecrate their lands. Control a terrain feature partially or wholly within enemy territory. So Dan, you want to remind everybody what controlling terrain features, in terms of rules, what that is?
Yeah. So controlling terrain features is different from objectives. Objectives are from 6 inches away from objectives, because objectives are just a point on the battlefield. They don't have like a physical manifestation like in 40K where they have an actual like size. Terrain is different. Terrain is from 3 inches away. Apologize. And it's interesting because there's a lot of debate on whether terrain control is sticky or not. So that's something to kind of clear up. Make sure you ask questions and all that. Generally, this is still very easy to do within 3 inches of terrain, including being like wholly on it. Otherwise, you could deep strike onto it. It's a very easy one to get. Even last season when we had Against the Odds, I tried to do this early just so I could have something easy for later. This is actually one that ironically now takes Against the Odds place. I would try to save this as much as you can for a saving turn, right? Like you have a poverty turn where you need to kind of hunker down and you're not sure if you can get something else.
Yeah, or you just want to play slow. You don't want to overcommit resources. Yeah, I actually think all 3 of these that we talked about so far are in that camp where the later you score them, the better. Like if you can score some of these next harder ones early on, you're going to be in a better position to max score by the end of the game. This next one, this one's mine. Your general has to destroy a unit with attacks, and that is specifically attacks, not spells or abilities, which is hard for Stormcast because we don't really use damaging generals. We might have like a Knight Judicator or a Krondus or, sometimes...
Yeah, we don't even have War Masters. Like, we don't have... Yeah. If we have War Masters, this would be doable. Like if Krondus counted as a War Master or something.
But it's another reason to try Drakesworn Templar with Karazai.
Shut up.
I'll bring a Nitroconus before I do that.
But he can't take Menagerie.
Yeah,
Nobody cares.
I know. Scintillating trail.
Even if you have a general that can fight and kill stuff, sometimes your general just dies, and then you can't score this. So, really not ideal. This is not a great tactic for Stormcast, and it's like a B tier tactic for most armies, I'd say. Some armies it's like A or S. Like you have a General Mock Russia. Oh yeah, he's stomping something.
Mm-hmm.
These are the 4 new seasonal battle tactics. They all involve using Galatian Champion. So this whole review, we've been talking about how important Galatian Champion is. All 4 of these battle tactics require using them. Some of them require using 2 or more. So let's go over them. The first one here is a Matter of Honor, which is to destroy an enemy champion or sworn bodyguard unit with your champion or sworn bodyguard unit. And it doesn't specify melee attacks, which means you can have 6 long strikes as a sworn bodyguard, just for the purpose of being able to shoot other sworn bodyguards or champions that are left exposed from key to victory, because of course you can't be a sharpshooter and a sworn bodyguard at the same time. This, it seems pretty straightforward. I think we can use sworn bodyguards pretty effectively compared to other armies. This is one of the reasons you want to push for that, because our battle tactics, as you'll see very shortly, the Stormcast battle tactics are at best situational. So being able to have another situational battle tactic can push you into that, maybe I'll consider it. Especially because you can use a shooting unit in this slot. Like 10 crossbow adjudicators or 15 crossbow adjudicators are pretty good as a sworn bodyguard if you're not taking advantage of the extra combat from the hero phase or the Quicksilver Drop combo. So seems pretty good. I've been able to score it a couple. Usually I've played like 5 games so far with this new season, and I've scored it, I think, in 4 of those. Yeah,
it can happen.
Sometimes you have protectors just club a hero to death. It happens.
Jeez, I hope you're not doing that till like the very end of the game.
Oh yeah, this is like a round 4, round 5 pick. Lead the assault. You have to control 2 or more objectives in enemy territory, and each one of them has to have a champion contesting it. So control, not contest, and then the champion has to be included there. This is why we are ranking the Zephyros so high, as high as we are, let's say. Because you can translocate one hero, but you can't translocate another, and you don't want to keep your heroes in reserve all the time, especially because this is not the tactic you want to score at the top of round 1. This is the round 3, round 4, round 5 tactic. But if you have a Zephyros and you have translocation, you just pretty reliably get this, right? 2+ rerollable translocation is pretty much what you're doing to get this tactic.
Yeah, Tunnel Master, like you've noted, helps a lot. Stubbornness of Rhinox helps actually control, which is really important. It's going to be tough to actually control sometimes. This one's going to be a end of the game tactic for sure, especially if there's like nothing left on the board. This is definitely one of those, like, you're talking the game out at that point. You got this from, teleporting and such.
Mm-hmm. The next one here is seemingly also very difficult because it requires 2 or more champions, but thinking about the way Stormcast approached the game, it's quite doable. You have to control an objective with 2 or more champions contesting it, and it has to be an objective your opponent controlled at the start of the turn. But it doesn't specify any territory anywhere. So this is any objective on the table that your opponent controlled, you stick 2 champions on it, and you get this battle tactic. So a way we commonly will see people playing against Stormcast is they will pile bodies onto our home objectives right off the bat. Like there's that one battle plan where you're, I think, only 11 inches away from your opponent's territory and their objective, and we literally can't stop people from just taking our objective. We can't get enough bodies onto it. So in that scenario, boom, United Offense. We just have our support heroes near it. You walk on, you kill the units on it. Easy, right? Like our support units tend to stick with our hammer units, especially now that we have Tunnel Master as an option. And that's why, maybe Tunnel Master as a C was underrating it. But yeah, this one is more doable than you think. This is a good reason to bring 2 or more champions to your list. And finally, I think Cunning Maneuver is the winner of all these new champion battle tactics. A champion controls an objective wholly outside your territory, which wholly outside kind of sucks, but there's enough time there's usually an objective that qualifies for that. This champion must be more than 3 inches from enemies at the start of the turn and must be more than 3 inches away at the end of the turn. But at any point in between, they can run and charge and do all kinds of stuff. As long as they end more than 3 inches away, it's fine. So perfect for this is, of course, Translocation and Zephyros. You're going to clear out an objective and just teleport a hero onto it. Pretty easy to do. And let's look at the terrible Stormcast objectives. Pioneers of the Realms, you have to contest all objectives wholly within enemy territory with cities units. And many battle plans have no objectives wholly within enemy territory. Sometimes they're just split along the middle. And the fact that you have to use cities units for it, yeah, that's pretty awful. Don't like it.
Yep. I hope this is a sign that Dawnbringers is supposed to be amazing, but we can only hope.
Nope. The only time I could ever see this happening is if your battle mage somehow walked up the middle of the board uncontested and just tapped on an objective that you were going to score anyway.
The one objective that's outside their territory.
Yeah, the one objective in their territory, right? So it's not great.
It could happen.
It'll happen less often than this next one. No challenge too great. You have to slay a hero with a Redeemer melee attack. You don't have to pick the hero, which means they can't, counter it with their finest hour and fancy stuff like that. But based on how slow Redeemer units are, it's going to be pretty obvious which hero you're going after. Also, Redeemers aren't very good at fighting in general, but especially not good against heroes. So maybe if you have a lot of Sequitors or a lot of Vindictors, you might score this one. I don't see it being a common pick, even in those scenarios, because there's just other ones that are more reliable. And frankly, killing a hero isn't always the best choice. You don't want to necessarily be stabbing heroes to death. Maybe if it's like a Maw Crusher in your face and you have 15 Vindictors, in that niche scenario, you can maybe get this one. Hammerstrike Assault. You have to slay a hero with 10 or more wounds, and it has no wounds currently allocated on it. So thankfully, this is determined before you do anything else. Before you even do heroic actions, you can do this. So if you see a hero in the opposing army that has 10 or more wounds, don't hurt it at all until you're ready to score this battle tactic, right? Because this can be completed with any kind of damage, with any unit, any combination of melee, shooting, spells, anything. As long as that 10 wound hero is destroyed, you score this battle tactic. So this is, as soon as you see a 10 wound hero, you're like, that's 2 points right there. I need to score 2 points off that.
Yeah, I mean it's also going to be tougher because we're incentivized to take less than 10 wound heroes this season, so that'll be interesting.
Mm-hmm. This might not come up, but you'll sometimes see a Cauldron of Blood. That's a good target for this. You'll see Maw Crushes. That's a good target for this. There's all kinds of targets that you can find. Lightning Shattered Morale. You have to make an enemy unit with Bravery 10 flee. This was somewhat doable last season when Horrorghast was only 40 points, because everybody's just going to counter this by picking Inspiring Presence, and that's it. Yeah, Horrorghast nerf makes this really, really difficult to pull off. Yep. You're going to be using less of it. Your opponent will always save command points, and you're not even guaranteed to get the Horrorghast off. So it's almost an F tier. It's almost as bad as Pioneers of the Realms. And lastly, these next two can be scored with Draconith or Stardrakes, and this one in particular can also use Dracoths, which is our Fulminators, which are great. Destroy one unit with 10 or more models using a dragon. Sweet. Tempestors, Fulminators, Stormdrakes, they're all great choices for this one. So that's actually a reason to build into these units that we previously didn't look at before, because we didn't need the battle tactics as much. This season, the tactics are much harder, so being able to scrounge up 2 points like this is actually really useful. And you will see units with 10 or more models. I can guarantee it. Unless you're playing against Gargants, most armies will be using big units. A Matter of Honor, which is the same name as the Universal Tactic, not to be confused with that one. You have to destroy a monster using a Draconith or a Stardrake. So if you're playing Stormdrakes, or if you're playing Karazai, or if you're playing a Stardrake, this is a very good tactic. Otherwise, it doesn't exist.
Yep. See some cows? Boom, let's go.
Yeah, now it might always be the best choice to try to waste your time trying to kill a cow, one of those big Alarith mountain cows with your Stormdrakes. But it's a dice game. Anything can happen, right?
Hey, they only have to deal the final blow. You can soften them up with Raptors.
Very true. Okay, and that covers our updated Stormcast tier list. If you guys feel like we missed anything with the new seasonal rules, feel free to leave us a comment. We are reading those comments every day. We love engaging with you guys down there. If you feel like we got something wrong, also leave a comment. It feeds the algorithm all the same.
Yeah, and definitely if you want to interact with us more, join our Discord. We talk all the time with our community, and I love to interact with you guys. I learn so much. So many things, especially from Met with all the lore. But no, sometimes it's definitely, we like to see your battle reports, and it's good to see other people's battle reports and see what their experience is, because sometimes, talking theory is cool, but putting it into practice and seeing other people putting it into practice really helps a lot. It's so nice.
Yep, we also host regular contests. We have painting contests pretty much every month, and every now and then we have like list building contests. We have an episode of our list building series coming up, so jump in the Discord and you'll never miss out on these opportunities. And that's it for us for today. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.
See y'all.